This episode of How To Wrestling was requested by one of our lovely backers over at patreon.com/HowToWrestling, where hey, if you like the show and you want to get access to a lot of extra audio, you can get access to all of our pay-per-view review episodes going all the way back to SummerSlam 2016, all the way up to the most recent WrestleMania 41 Double Bill Big episode, and the Total Diva series and the pay-per-view Classic series as chosen by our lovely listeners. All of that is available patreon.com/HowToWrestling for as little as $5 a month and keeps this show ad-free and fan and listener supported. Get access to that entire back catalogue now and enjoy all that content for as little as $5 a month. Until then though, let's get settled in, let's get ready to a moonsault and brace yourselves, because it's How To Lita. Greetings, friend, and welcome to another episode of How To Wrestling, the world's first podcast detailing how to wrestling, how to get into wrestling, how to understand wrestling, and goodness knows, how to enjoy wrestling. And today we're doing one of the all-time greats in the world of women's wrestling. Today, it's all about Lita. Hello, once again, it's me, your old pal, Captain Kevin, joined as I'm always by my better half, the angelic Diablo, Joe Graham.
Hello.
And this has been a wild ride for us in terms of viewing, researching. Lita's a big one, Joe.
Lita's a big one. I have to quickly, though. Angelic Diablo? Really? Me?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
What did I do to deserve that?
I'm sorry,
huh?
I always use myself as the Lita in this relationship. You're kind of like
Yeah.
more like kind of the angelic Diablo.
I guess out of the two of us, who's more likely to wave around a fake gun? It's me.
It's you. You have actually done that.
I have actually
on
done
several
that.
occasions. It's been a deep dive into the world of Lita, Team Extreme, and all things WWE women's wrestling from the time that she came in onwards. She has always been, it feels like, a lot of people's favourite wrestler, and I've been kind of taken a bit aback by how many people are kind of like, I said hallowed at the start because like people are like, okay, now, whoa, I'm going to send my tweet in, but you just so you know, I fucking love this lady, alright?
You look after her, okay?
You treat her right,
Yeah.
okay? What were you aware of Lita before we settled down for this episode? Because she has come up a few times, and she has even been on some of the pay-per-views we've covered on Patreon.
Well, going into this episode, I feel I knew quite a lot about Lita, because as you say, like, she's come up on a lot of episodes in a big way, like the Edge episode that we did.
Ah, yes.
Because obviously she had a very infamous relationship with Edge. And because of when she wrestled, because she came up kind of through the Attitude Era, when wrestling was in general more mainstream.
Yeah.
So a lot of wrestlers from that time period, I was kind of familiar with growing up.
So did Lita kind of appear as a name on the playground? Is she one of those rare few, like?
Yeah, she definitely is, although not in a way that I was able to, like, think back and go, oh yeah, they're all talking about Lita and that makes sense now. It was more just like, I was aware of her because, like, she was one of the Hardy Boys and she was a really cool alternative girl. Like, she genuinely, I do believe this, like, started a cultural fashion trend among a certain type of young woman.
Or even still, like, not that she started it, she certainly, like, rode and popularized the wave, I
Yeah.
would say. I mean, I certainly was, as a stupid teenage boy, was a lot more aware of, like, cool girl shit vicariously through Lita.
And I think as well, because she did cool moves, she's one of the women that would get shown in, like, cool move compilation videos
Yes.
that would get passed around and stuff. Whereas, like, Trish, she's a bigger name. And if you're a boy, I think, of course, you know who Trish is because she's in all the sexy mags. But, like, Lita, she just was, like, she was the noticeable girl in all of the wrestling videos that you'd see.
Lita was very interesting because she was the first wrestler, like, of any, like, not just female wrestlers, she was the first wrestler I ever heard girls talking about. Like, when Channel 4 started showing, like, Sunday Night Heat and stuff like that in the year 2000, suddenly it went from being like, hey, there's the 4 or 5 boys who see wrestling on Sky, to, like, loads of people are watching it. But the girls, like, they came in on board as much because they saw Team Extreme, the Hardy Boys, etc.
Yeah.
And they were a cool gang, and they were an intergender gang, but it wasn't like they were ever presented, and Lita was presented as being like this just straight up sex object, like a lot of the women were at the time.
No, not at all. That's what's so cool about her, is like, obviously she's fucking smoking hot. But it's not really about that with her character. Like,
Yeah.
that's just like part of it. Like,
It's kind of incidental.
yeah,
almost,
exactly. It's besides
you know?
the point, because like the really point is that she's fucking cool. She's really badass. She wrestles a really scary style, and I feel like it's hard to say this now because like it has become a bit of a feminist talking point of like, you know, internalized misogyny and stuff. But she's like one of the boys.
Right, yeah, that's interesting what you say, because you mentioned the old, they're talking about internalized misogyny, and they are
6
minutes in. Welcome to How to Wrestle. But I did hear the point. Leah made it in her. I read her book for this, but I did see other people making this point in the tweets, which was it felt like she was the first female character in wrestling that like women kind of adored widespread, and it was seemingly prior to that a lot of the female characters that were presented by the then WWF, like women who were wrestling fans, weren't really drawn to them. Of course, there were like iconic women in WWF beforehand, like Sable and Sunny and Chyna and whatnot.
But I think fundamentally those women aren't marketed to women.
They were mainly marketed to men. Like, yeah, even though Chyna's obviously like she's an icon in her own right.
I feel Chyna is like.
But she wasn't for the girlies type of thing,
That's it.
you know?
She's like transcends gender marketing.
Yeah, it was more of the spectacle of her. Whereas Leah was the first time I think they had a female character on screen. And you say one of the boys, like, it felt like more like someone you would know, if that makes sense.
I get that.
She feels like a real person.
Yeah.
Now, I always thought that was because I hung around, like, you know, my brother's band and his band friends and whatnot. Like, my brother and all of his friends all seem to have had an ex-girlfriend who was quite like Leah at some point in their life. But it feels like she is that girl next door in many ways, without making that too kind of creepy sounding, I guess.
No, I totally see what you mean, though. Because, like, she comes off as very cool girl. Like, you know, that whole rant in Gone Girl where it's like, oh, girls have to be the cool girl. They have to eat burgers and stay thin and blah, 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 blah.
Salts,
yeah,
you know.
Look hot, but don't put any time into your appearance. Lita is kind of like all those things. And she's done very well from the image of that, despite the fact that it's like, yes, she is a cool girl and she likes all these male-interested things and stuff, but I find it funny how, like, as a society, we look at someone like Lita and go, oh, yeah, she's so cool. She's one of the boys. You know, she's not like other women like Trish, who are like high maintenance and have to spend loads of time doing
that
their
witch,
hair
Trish Stratus.
and makeup and stuff. And it's like, you've been fooled. Because she's just as much of a girl's girl as she is one of the boys.
Even though I will always take WWE-produced wrestling autobiographies with a massive pinch of salt, it was very funny reading through her book these past couple of weeks, and to be like a chapter on her, you know, beating up men in the ring for the first time, and like, you know, she's like gets to take the high road and be like, thanks guys, you have let me beat your ass, because otherwise I would have, you know, probably not gotten over as strong as I did. And like, wow, what a unique thing for her to talk about. And then the next page is like, top 10 makeup tips. I read them all out to Joe, considering this book came out in like 2002 or 3 or thereabouts. She was ahead of the curve.
It was wild hearing these tips, because like it was all stuff I know now as a woman in my mid-30s, but like knowledge of makeup and skincare has come really far. I think especially in the last 10 years, it's like completely accelerated. When I was a teenager learning makeup, I would get my makeup tips from like girls' magazines and stuff, and it would give you kind of shit makeup tips and recommend brands and stuff. It was all crap. I never learned shit from that stuff. It wasn't until like YouTube came along that I learned how to do my makeup properly. But in her book, everything she talks about with her makeup is absolutely on point and like really far ahead of anything I would have heard about at that time. Like contouring your jawbone, like not going out in the sun too much and instead using bronzer, cutting false eyelashes so that they're just used at the corner of your eyes so it doesn't look as intensely full makeup, but it still accentuates your features. And these are all things that like I think the average boy at the time would be like really shocked to know that she cared about that stuff.
Could it be that she's one of the boys and also one of the girls?
Because
that's what it feels like. That's her popularity in a nutshell.
And I think that's why so many people get on board with Lita, is because like she just takes an interest in everything. Like there is no, like she gets on with boys, she gets on with girls, it's not an issue, and like yeah, it shouldn't be an issue. We should all just get on, right?
She feels like one of those rare characters in wrestling where like I don't think the idea of her is almost a bigger deal than like seeing her in the ring and stuff like that.
I think you're right because of how WWE presented her then versus how they present her now.
Well, how would you say they present her now in the year of our Lord 2025? Because she has come back a few times, you know, for big money matches, etc.
Well, she's like a legend now. So she comes back and she, you know, she's really cool. She gets to do a cool move.
Elder stateswoman of wrestling.
So she's not like winning matches all the time, but she always is presented in a very protected way.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of folks, and I did notice this is kind of like, not like people are like trying to like rag on her or like negging her or anything like that, but I did notice that there were a lot of people who wanted to like let us know in the tweets that like she wasn't in their mind a quote unquote good wrestler.
Oh yes, yeah, I see lots of people say that, yeah.
And a little peek behind the curtain, like when we were recording the Honky Tonk Man episode and we announced obviously Lita was next, and I just did a thread like at the end, like as I usually do, like kind of what you know about her, and you just like had this wistful look in your eyes and you said nobody moves like her. And I remember at the time thinking like, yeah, and then listening back when we were editing it going, is Jo about to have her heart broken when she sees her wrestle? Because it's not as if she is the most gracious, perfect athlete of all time. So I ended up cutting that line out.
Oh no, did you?
Because I was like, I didn't want a million people to be like, oh, you're going to be in for such a rude way. I was like, well, let's just see for
I
her.
stand by it.
But the thing is like, the comparisons you could draw from her and other people we've done episodes on.
I mean, there's one in particular that really comes to mind, who also people say isn't a good wrestler, and I would also disagree.
And you have opinions on this. Who is it then, Jo?
It's Sabu. Her style is so similar to Sabu's style, I think, in that it's like this really high-flying fucking daredevil style.
Borderline dangerous.
Not even borderline, outright dangerous. Like really fucking, like, good God, these two must have like angels on their shoulders looking out for them, because the fact that they can still walk is a miracle.
So the idea of there being this cool person who comes into wrestling and like, immediately people are like, she's fucking hot, she's cool, she starts doing all these like kind of cool moves and stuff like that. Then you find out after the fact, yeah, like, you know, when she did leg drop for the first time, it was on TV. Or when she moonsaulted onto a person for the first time, it was on TV. This is all stuff she was working out on the fly. And there's a lot of amazing women in like NXT and WWE's developmental right now. And I love, like, say, Tiffany Stratton's a fave in our household. But I think everything that they've done has been like very meticulously polished and rehearsed.
It's crazy, isn't it?
I think it feels like the real deal, even though it's slightly less refined.
Yeah, and for me personally, I find a lot of the polished, inverted commas, stars that come up now, they can't do I sound like Stone Cold. They can't do the fundamentals.
But what are the fundamentals? Because we've seen Lita do some janky punches and slip here and there and whatnot.
She struggles with some of the fundamentals too. But like, at least with Lita, she is doing it for the first time, and she always puts her all into it. It always looks sick. Even if it looks shit, it looks scary. Yeah. Which I think that's important in wrestling.
That all or nothing thing that if you've not listened to the Sabu episode, there was a big kind of talking point in it where, somewhat tongue-in-cheek, in his book that Sabu now claims that it was all a lie and he didn't actually have anything to do with. But he claimed that a lot of the mistakes that happened in his matches, it's like, well, that's intentional, isn't it? Because I was going for high-risk stuff, there has to be moments where I crash and burn.
He said that on Twitter as well.
And he has said on Twitter, he wanted to fuck with Dave Meltzer.
I think it's partly true.
Yeah.
But that's it. Like, a lot of people think Sabu is a sloppy wrestler, and you can definitely argue that. But I don't think that makes him... I don't think because his style looks sloppy that means it's a bad wrestler.
This is why I'm always interested in looking at people like Leah and hearing from folks. It's kind of the nature of this podcast of getting kind of input from folks is there are wrestlers who you can look and kind of, if you just watch Belle, like a lot of the stuff we watched today, we did watch a lot of matches, but like a lot of it was kind of like just seeing her and feeling the audience and what the show was like at the time.
Yeah.
Because if you just watch bell to bell Leah matches, you mightn't think that much of her overall.
No.
But she's one of those wrestlers who her aura and her place in the fans' hearts makes her kind of transcend above just judging her based on match quality. Like, I've never been like that as a fan. I don't know about you though.
I imagine for WWE, she's like the ideal wrestler because like she is perfect for like video compilation, like 6 spots. Like taken out of context, like a lot of her moves look really, really, really objectively cool.
She was in like all the opening video packages and pay-per-view packages, hype videos. She would always be used there. It was like that's what you can see on this show.
Even if some of the landings are a bit scary, the moonsaults and stuff, the height she gets is always spectacular. So it's always going to be in those videos, and she looks so cool. And I feel like WWE now is so much about the moments and the branding, and she is like so much those two things.
It's funny, but like you want, and it's a thing that comes up often, like when she's talked about her career, is creating these moments and then living in fans' minds forever. But then the WWE machine and product just like trying to be a moment machine, be like, right, like make it happen again, and it's like it's easier said than done. And I think, yeah, people are drawn to her more now, it feels, over the years, because those types of wrestlers are so rare now, where it feels like, hey, they are more of a, just like this real strong personality that you're kind of drawn to in an intangible way. There are loads of wrestlers currently in wrestling who have that like X factor that's like, I don't know what is about you that makes me like really want to see more of you. But they have that, and then they also have spectacular matches.
Yeah, I know. The standard is very high.
So it's kind of difficult to tease those two apart. But like Lita has maxed out in every way, whatever that aura is, that intangible factor that makes wrestlers super cool. Were you under any impressions about how she like made her way into wrestling? Because she's cited by Bayley, Becky Lynch, and Naomi as like the primary reason why they got into wrestling.
Yeah, well, that figures, because, yeah, obviously.
That's rarefied air right there. Oh my God, like.
I always assumed with Lita that she either came from, like, nothing, like trailer park type thing, where she, like, you know, maybe didn't have a stable home environment and had to leave home very young, and that's, like, kind of how she got involved in wrestling, or the other end of the spectrum, I thought maybe she had, like, a very, you know, loving middle-class family who gave her every opportunity and supported her whole journey. I kind of figured it would be one end or the other, just because this is wrestling, and that's how a lot of our subjects on this podcast come from one of those two kind of backgrounds.
Yeah, it is very interesting to see the different routes that people take in, and the kind of the overlap, or in some cases when it's like, hey, I think you have like a truly unique entryway. I think her entryway into wrestling is definitely one of those capturing lightning in a bottle, you know, you couldn't plan it type of moments. But in terms of her upbringing, it was somewhere between the two. She wasn't dirt poor. She wasn't like super well off. They were middle class, but later on in her like teen years, their parents divorced. They had to kind of downsize. They kind of had slightly harder times the older that she got, and she had to move around loads.
Why did she have to move around so much?
It's because of her dad's job, basically. Like, he got, you know, promotions at his place of work, so they had to move all across different parts of Florida, different parts of Atlanta and stuff like that.
I see.
So yeah, I think that when she describes herself as being one of those kids that has kind of wanderlust, or whatever you want to call it, I think that often happens when you've moved around a lot as a youngster. I mean, I spent most of my time as a youngster living in a school, so I don't have that wanderlust. But is that something that appeals to you, the idea of like, hey, I'll go where the wind takes me and I'll move wherever and do whatever?
No, not at all. When I was younger, definitely.
Really?
Yeah, but I think, nah. I think as you get older, you want the home comforts.
Yeah, it's funny looking at like stuff that I'm sure if I heard it when I was in my early 20s, I'd be like, that's cool, I want to do that. And now I'm like, what's she doing? What's her plan? Is she not...
I know.
Oh, Jesus.
Imagine being her parents. I'd be so worried, some of the stuff she's gotten up to.
I mean, she, very early doors, it's like, I know so many people whose relationship with music started this way, which is, they felt like kind of a slightly alternative kid. They didn't fit into like a lot of the molds. Then they met some cool person at school who's like, you should listen to this. Oh. And then before you know it, they're going to see cool bands, and they're going to, you know, hit up all the happening punk rock spots. And this is like, you know, as early as like being 13 years old, she's talking about like seeing, you know, cutting edge punk bands. She saw like Green Day, one of their first ever gigs and stuff like that. So this would have been like kind of mid 90s. What a time to do it.
Of course, she's an OG Green Day girl. I know she's from Florida originally.
Yes.
You were saying that she moved around a lot.
Moved around a bunch, yeah.
Outside of Florida then?
Yeah, Georgia was like the main place that she had moved to. And
really?
Georgia's got a huge punk scene, so that's kind of where she fell in that. Now, not to spoil everyone's good time reading autobiography from 2002 or whatever it is, but obviously what is cool and normal and not scary has maybe changed in public eyes over the years, but there's a lot of stories she tells with great pride about, like, I was 15 years old and I meet the lead singer from this big cool band, and they're like, they're so cool and down to earth, they let us hang out in the van. I'm like, you're 15. You shouldn't be in my safeguarding training, folks. It's a problem. I ended up reporting all the members of 7 Seconds to Prevent. They're not even from the country.
She's such a Gen Xer, though.
In that kind of, yeah. Well, like, the attitudes have changed over the years.
That's what I mean, though. She's a Gen Xer in terms of, she was obviously a latchkey kid. That's just like what most children, especially like middle-class suburban kids were. Like, their parents worked, so they didn't see them very often, so the kids were left to...
off you do kind of
do. Look after yourself. Like,
the idea of that to me is so wild, where if I wanted to go buy a can of Coke in the village beside my school, I had to get a special blue piece of paper signed by 2 men. You know what I mean? Like, and if I don't have that piece of paper, you can't go home next week.
The police will be coming to your parents' house and knocking on their door like, excuse me.
And like Leah telling this story about like, oh yeah, I met the cool band and they were so awesome. They're like, let's go to Six Flags tomorrow. Do you want to drive us? And she's like, yeah. And she's fucking 15.
What?
Yeah. And she's
Did she have a license?
No, she didn't have a car. So then she's like, yeah, I'll give you my number. And of course, she's a fucking teenage girl in the mid-90s. 3 a.m. in the morning, the house phone rings. Is this punk band be like, hey, Amy, we still on for tomorrow? And she's like, yeah. And then her mom's on the phone be like, who are these men? Mom!
Sorry, she's 15. How old are they?
I didn't have the heart to check it out, but they were adults, is all I'll say.
Hey, wow.
But, you know, she's layering... We watched some of her interviews she's done over the years, and she talks about having, like, kid power in those early days. What's your understanding of the term of kid power, I guess?
I get what she's kind of saying with kid power. So kid power is, like, when you're young and you think you'll never die. So you just do everything. You do anything you can. You just I think it's a good thing. Yeah,
my kid power was generalized anxiety disorder, so that
really?
That was unfortunately like, I'd be like, you'd think you could do anything and then you get sick and not. So like I find her experience extremely like alien, but also at the same time really cool.
I find it very relatable. I was definitely like not to the same extreme that she was, because she's like fucking hardcore with some of the stuff she got up to as a young adult, but like, yeah, I definitely was that type of young person who was like, I want to do everything.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, I had friends in university, I remember, like, they'd be on a night out and you text them, like, what are you up to now? Are you going to come to the pub as we arranged? They're like, no, I'm in the backseat of a fucking police van. I'm like, did you get arrested? No, I just got in. Or what? Yay! Yeah. Did you have much experience with kind of like bands and people in bands and stuff like that? I don't know if I'm the crafty veteran between the two. As a man who had a radio show and a brother who played lots of music in Galway and Dublin back in the day.
Definitely was involved in bands, but like in that Cambridge way where it was like the bands were all like children my age, or they were like bands my parents' age because they were friends of my parents. I've never been in part of like the cool band scene the way that you have been.
I mean, I was very much like I was just the fortunate man where it's like this guy's got a brother who's doing a gig and he also has a Marantz, so he might interview you for his radio show later on. That's the extent of my kind of like, ooh, in with the cool bands.
Were you a roadie like Lita?
No, that was it. I didn't have to do shit like that, like, you know, because I had entry for other reasons. I was whatever the brother equivalent of a nepo baby is.
Oh, a hanger-on.
A hanger-on, yeah. But again, I did get some great content out of that on that Marantz, and if I didn't do that, Joe, I wouldn't be podcasting here today. So
I think it's very cool that Lita is a roadie, because all the roadies I've ever known have been kind of like burly men.
Yeah, I that's pretty like.
Because it's you do have to be really strong.
You do. I've you know, I've not been a quote unquote roadie, but I've helped move stuff into the van and out of the van for sure. And
as well, it's not just that you have to be physically strong to like carry gear all the time, but also I do feel as a roadie, like you have to be kind of like the guardian of the gear.
Yes, you're in charge of things.
Yeah, because like if it gets robbed, it's like on you. So you have to be able to kind of like stand up for like, I don't know, if someone tries to steal shit as well. You have to be kind of tough as well as strong.
It's cool to see how this entry point provides, like, if this is a kind of your character builder in a wrestling RPG, be like, oh, there's a lot of transferable skills here.
Definitely, yeah.
You know, because she talks about things over the years about how she fell in love with the physicality of like being in a mosh pit and that kind of moment of feeling like something unsafe is about to happen, but then everyone's like, picking you up, making sure you don't fall, all that stuff. Which, if you think about with wrestling, there's a lot of that kind of, here's the adrenaline and the high and the kind of the general feeling of I'm giving my body up to the safety of the others around me or whatnot. But I related with her when she talks about like feeling like kind of that bond that you get traveling, which that's what wrestling is. A lot of it is a kind of road trips punctuated by wrestling shows, I guess, you know?
So I know she's big into music and was in the music scene as a roadie. Is she musical at all? Does she play any instruments?
She did play bass, and she like had a band of sorts at the time then.
God, of course she played bass.
But all through her teens into her early adulthood, it's like her social circle, all of that, it's like bands, stuff around the bands. You know, she is in a relationship with some guys who are in these bands, friends of friends, etc. She did have a band of her own where she played bass guitar, yeah. But it was kind of more, I think, primarily, I think when you are around a lot of bands like that, you end up kind of getting involved in a project of your own or whatever it may be. She did do like musical stuff many years later after her wrestling career.
Yeah, I know about that because that's actually how I met Lita.
Really?
Well, I say how I met her. When I met her, the only really thing I knew about her other than that she was a wrestler was at Comic-Con before we did How To Wrestling, and I saw Lita there doing a signing.
That was very, very shortly after you and I first met, I think. Because I was really jealous because Joe didn't know who Lita was, so the picture of her with Lita is kind of like...
Oh no, I didn't get a picture with Lita.
Sorry.
Because I asked her for a picture, because I'm very comfortable asking... like talking to celebrities and stuff I've never really had an issue with. So I just like went over to kind of chat to her and I was like, hey, I've never really seen any wrestling before, but I'm thinking about starting watching. However, I have listened to your band, the Luchagors, and I think they're really cool. And I just want to say I'm a big fan. Can I take a picture with you? And she was like, 25 quid.
That's a wrestler, Joe.
That was it. But I never met one before.
Musician. You don't know, like.
I've never met a wrestler before and I was offended. And it was only like years later I was like, oh no, that was completely just her being a professional wrestler.
Joke's on Joe Graham. She didn't know there was no film in that camera. I take that fucking money, man. I go away.
So she ends up in a relationship with a guy from this band called Bo. And Bo, she moves in with kind of quite quick. Like how she moves around is like so quick and whatnot. Like she's 17 sharing a bedroom with her mother, and it's like, well, you're only doing this because, like, you know, in 2 months' time, you'll be 18 and you'll be moving out of the house then, right? She's like, yeah, I guess so. So she's living with this other guy who is into wrestling. She'd never seen any wrestling before.
Really?
Not a sausage of wrestling. So here she is in 1997 watching...
Wait, what?
Yeah, what a time to get in.
Are you fucking serious? Sorry, just knowing when she came into wrestling.
Yeah.
Like, when she came to WBE.
First time, 97.
That must be one of the fastest turnarounds from first watching wrestling to becoming an actual icon I've ever heard, ever in the history of the business.
It is, again, very much that kid power feeling. Like, it's well earned because it is a rocket ship, I think, when it comes in terms of her from like starting to where she gets.
Yeah.
She never seems to have really kind of forgotten that in many respects, you know, because I think a lot of wrestlers, once they make it, it's very much like kind of, I made it, and ergo, my road to the top was the hard road, and everyone should feel kind of, you know, sympathy for me and judge everything against me.
Yeah, I don't get that feeling with her because it seems she had a lot of fun doing the stuff she did before wrestling.
For sure, yeah.
And also, like, even now, like, she's a very interesting, multifaceted person.
She'll do all sorts of whatever, and that is like that's the really cool thing I think about her. Like, had it not been wrestling that like found her,
it would have been something else.
Something else. She would have gotten into like skating, or she would have gotten into like a band that maybe picked up her. Like, there was no way it felt like that just because. Like, there's all these stories she tells, like, where she just, like, shows up at places and then, like, someone who's important comes over with a clipboard and be like, do you want to be in ECW? Like, literally, shit like that happens to her all the time.
Yeah, because she's really hot.
Is that, like, I don't want to ask, like, with stuff like that.
Yeah, it is.
You know.
Definitely.
You don't have to self-identify. I'll ascribe you the term of a hot girl. Like, do you get that?
Thank you. No, I don't think I'm quite that hot.
You know, do you get, like, special treatment, like?
I mean... I would say no, but I think as well it's one of those things that
you maybe don't notice.
That's it. I only know my experience. I don't know anyone else's experience, so I don't know.
Yeah, we've got. I will say, if you go to a buffet with this lady, you get fantastic treatment and service. Is all I'll say.
I guess I like to think that's because I'm polite and friendly, but maybe you're right. You know, I think there is a hot privilege to a point for sure. But yeah, no, Lita's though, it's like I don't think it's just that she's hot; it's that she's got aura.
I hear the young use that word a lot, and it's a word that we've used it as well over the years, but it absolutely applies to her.
Yeah,
like, I think so. I think
she's got star presence.
Yeah, like she's one of those people where, like, if she's on her own, like I think case in point, you like coming up to her like at a Comic-Con or whatever it is, but like I think she's one of the people that if she's on her own, people come over to them being like, I think you're like famous or something like that.
But that's it, because like Al Snow was literally at the table like two tables down. I didn't really notice him. Yeah. DDP didn't really notice him either.
Oh!
But Lita...
That's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. But what a time to start watching wrestling.
Yeah, seriously.
1987.
So, who were her boys?
Well, this is the thing. Her boyfriend, Bo, was a diehard WCW fan.
Oh, nice.
So when Lita first started watching wrestling, she was watching height of WCW versus NWO, with all the luchadors, Sting, Hogan, Savage, Eric Bischoff running things, Bret Hart not yet in there, Ric Flair, the Four Horsemen, Steve Mongo McMichael, the Rise of Goldberg. We're fans of WCW 97 in this household. We've always gotten well with it, but it was Rey Mysterio that drew her into wrestling.
Really? In WCW specifically?
Yeah. Wow. So WCW, which would, stuff its Nitro show with, kick-ass luchadors.
Yeah.
Which was probably, obviously ECW credited with bringing them in for the first time, but mainstream exposure on national TV, it was very much a WCW innovation, I guess. And the one thing that I thought was really funny was that she didn't realize, she says, that all of the luchadors were Mexican. She just saw them and thought, that's like the character they're playing. Like, your character is, I'm a Mexican guy. And again, times have changed, I guess, where that would be a thought that you'd have.
Oh my God. Wait, but I don't understand how you could think that, because, so what, does she think Lucha is a character? Did she think that they were all, some part of a family or something?
I think she just thought that it was kind of it's a character. These guys are like the Mexican wrestlers or whatever it may be.
Like a faction?
Not even a faction, just kind of like, this is who they were. The idea that they were all Mexican and that they came from Mexico, where there's this cool style of wrestling and this tradition of masks and all that wasn't the immediate thing. But then again, if you've never seen wrestling, why would you necessarily think that? Well, put one in the mindset of the mid-90s,
I guess, but I can't speak from the mid-90s, but I can speak for someone who didn't watch wrestling. Luchador, I think, is more famous than pro wrestling.
I think it transcends it.
It does, yeah. It's
sure.
Instantly
it's a cultural thing,
recognizable. Even though I knew nothing about wrestling, I couldn't tell you a single thing about it before the podcast. I could have described probably a lucha wrestler.
That is what Triple H said in the press conference when they bought Triple H. I've never seen a luchador before I did this.
But I could describe one if I had to.
And that's why it's best for business that we're doing this, quite honestly.
Mask, it's kind of all there is to it, to do flips.
So when you've got the kid power, when I was a teacher, we would refer to what Leah has as a growth mindset, Joe.
Oh, that's a very think tank term.
It is, because the think tank says, I'm going to watch wrestling, I'm going to see all these guys, find out they're all Mexican, so what are you going to do? Obviously, you're going to go to Mexico on a one-way trip and become a wrestler.
Wow. I have to ask at this point, because often, when we do episodes about wrestlers, they have an athletic background of some kind, which then lends itself to naturally transitioning into wrestling.
Yes.
But she's at what age is she when she kind of decides to become a wrestler?
19, 20, she heads down to Mexico.
And had she done anything like this before?
She did swimming all throughout her time in school.
Swimming?
She was
that explains her
the
big
shoulders,
yeah.
And then later on, this would have been after she went to Mexico, she got into judo. Which, funnily enough, maybe I've just been Taz-pilled after watching him call stuff for all these years, but watching her matches and seeing her, why is she doing a monkey flip or an STO or an armbar? It's those are all judo moves. Yeah. She's incorporating her judo, but she credits judo with making her very comfortable with, being physical with someone else.
Touching someone, yeah.
And also, that was when she realized, oh, right, this wrestling thing is for me. It was more in the judo because, she got such a thrill out of doing stuff in judo that she thought that wrestling was obviously the best way to do it because you can be a big star and loads of cool stuff can happen. One-way plane ticket, that's a phrase that makes me, me just saying one-way plane ticket, I'm ugh.
Yeah.
If I've got an open-ended return on my ticket if I go to London, I'm but what if there's not a train at 3?
Or if they, for some reason, cancel every plane out of the country as soon as I get into the country?
What if I go to Mexico and anything bad happens? And that's kind of what happens to her. She goes to Mexico, she knows fucking nothing. She knows Arena Mexico is where it happens.
I cannot imagine how scared her parents must have been.
Yeah.
I'm feeling protective of her. She's 15 years older than me.
Can you just check? She is okay. She didn't die in Mexico in 1998 or anything. She is fine.
She's thriving.
So she finds out right, Arena Mexico is where it's at. I'm gonna go there.
Yeah.
I'll just go there. And she's well, obviously this is the place because there's people selling lucha masks outside. Easy peasy, in we pop. And she went in and there were 3 rings, not 1, because it was a circus that she went to.
Cool.
She happened to go to Mexico on the only 2 weeks of the year where the Mexican wrestling in Arena Mexico is preempted by the circus.
Oh.
So she then had to go to the other side of town and find the show.
A one-way ticket, I guess, because if you'd just gone over for a quick holiday, you'd be screwed.
Look, do you want to know how you get into wrestling, Joe? It's this. You find your way to the show, you sit in the front row of the show, and then a man in a clipboard and a suit comes over and is like,
Yeah.
"Hey, do you want to like go backstage and do you want to like meet the wrestlers? Do you want to be like do you want to work here?"
Yeah.
And that's kind of like literally it. And her telling the story of like the guy coming over, like offering her all these opportunities, and she's like, Can I go back to my seat though? Because she had a front row ticket.
I really want to see
And
the
she really
show.
want to see the show. Now we saw Lucha, the greatest spectacle of Lucha Libre past November.
Genuinely the greatest wrestling show I have ever seen in my life.
It's not even close, I think.
Not
Yeah.
even close. And it's not even just that, like, I don't say that because, like, the wrestling itself, like, the in-ring work was particularly impressive, although it was really good. It's just like, my God, a lucha show is like a whole event. It feels like, it doesn't just feel like, oh, well, we put on some matches and you got to kind of follow along the story and stuff. It's just like, it's more like a kind of self-encompassing story.
Yeah,
or
because it's so clear who the Rudos, the bad guys, and the Technicos, the good guys are, you feel instantly a part of the show.
Yeah.
And you get that very rare, beautiful vibe of like, I've been watching wrestling my whole life. You've been watching wrestling a decade. Person beside us has probably seen wrestling for the first time.
Yeah.
She's loving it. You're loving it. I'm loving it.
That's
you know,
it,
that
like-
that I love the great unifying feel of a lucha show.
Yeah, because that's the thing. I feel with like European and American wrestling, unintentionally is very kind of, it rejects outsiders. Like that's part of the reason why we're doing this podcast
Yeah.
is because it was really fucking hard to get into as a fan.
There is a shifting barrier to entry to a
Definitely.
lot of wrestling shows, for
and
sure.
there's just like this automatic kind of begrudgingness from some long-term fans who are like, oh, you haven't earned your place as a fan yet because you don't know the full lore and everything, which I kind of get because there is a lot of
There's a depth.
rich stories
Yeah.
and lineages and things. But Mexico has all that. And yet a lot of their kind of general lucha shows that kind of travel around and stuff, it's like the opposite to that
Yeah.
attitude. It's literally like, you don't know anything, perfect.
Yeah, the more
you
the
are,
merrier.
Please
You
come in. You know, this is who you boo, this is who you cheer. Now great, have a good time.
I mean, yeah, me in my late 30s, even that lucha show, being like, I think I want to be a wrestler. Like,
Yeah.
literally thinking for the first time in my life, if you're front row in Mexico and you have that burning urge to do, quote unquote, something as she did, you can see, like, she's like, immediately like, that's what I want to do.
Yeah.
I know, I came down here knowing I want to do this, now I'm certain I want to do this. So she ends up, like, going back and forth down to Mexico a few more times. She gets used a few points on camera as, like, a Corona girl because they had all the sponsors for the beer. So she'd be, like, a babe with a bottle or whatever it was. She did, in fact, take a little bit of training while she was down there as well. You know, they had guys who were, like, on standby who were like, yeah, well, we'll do a few bumps and stuff like that with you. She did meet the guy who would go on to be S.A. Rios, Papi Chulo,
Oh, really?
down there as well. So, like, when they got paired together in WWF, it felt like kind of a very wholesome
that's nice.
moment. But, like, I think there's something really sweet, and I know I really don't want to feel condescending because I'm talking about someone's, like, naivety leading to greatness. But, like, literally being like, I'm going to go down there where there's wrestling. Like, I remember hearing about Bubba Ray Dudley, like, ringing up WWF as a child and be like, I want to be a wrestler. How do I do it? Just, like, going down to Mexico and seeing where there are lucha masks and being like, can I do this? And then be like, yeah, all right. And
It's one of the few places, though, where, like, one of the few countries I think you could do that. Because, like, I think you would not have a good time. Like, I can just only imagine, like, a young person, let alone a young woman, going to like a random American or UK show and being like, can I become a wrestler? They'd be like, they'd call you a mark and laugh you out the door.
There's a list of things that could potentially happen, and I think most of them are bad.
Yeah, like at best you get like scammed out of like $2,000.
Or you might intimidate them into a way where they don't want to speak to you.
Yeah.
You know, that could happen as well. Like,
Yeah.
you know, our local indie that we go to, there's some big boys in the front row sometimes, and I'm like, I think they're there like to kind of like fucking psych everyone out with their big arms and shit like that. You know, they're going to come in here and take the place over. So she goes back to the USA and does some kind of indies here and there. She makes some kind of contacts in the business. And it's very often just a case of like, she goes to a show and someone's like, hey, you've got a great look. Do you want to be someone's manager tonight? And her original ring name, which is Angelica, she came up with because she needed to be the valet at a moment's notice for the fallen angel Christopher Daniels. This is like 1998. Christopher Daniels had hair and 2 eyes then.
Does he not have 2 eyes anymore?
He's got the weird blackened eye thing that happened to him.
Oh, right, yeah. Forgot about that.
So the doors are kind of flung open for her, but it is very much the case that in the late 90s, even though wrestling was beginning to really boom, the route in for a woman was still kind of fraught with question marks. There's lots of stories
Yeah.
of her doing like training with like 20 other guys and no other women. She meets people like Luda Vachon and Sherry Martel very early in her career because
Yeah.
they're, you know, doing these indie shows as well.
Yeah, and I believe both of them trained with men as well.
Yeah, because that was kind of, I think,
That was it.
That was the
Yeah.
standard for a long, like, I think that even is the standard in a lot of places still, to be honest. Like,
Yeah, I
you
think
know?
probably in high metropolitan areas with a large wrestling fan base, there probably are women-only trainers.
Yeah.
But it's not the majority. I think generally still, as a woman training, you would be mostly with men.
So her kind of early days in wrestling, she ends up like kind of, you know, spending a lot of time with some people like Angel Fife and stuff like that, who she says like later on is like they didn't really get on. They weren't like close friends. Their worlds were completely different. But she was able to learn from folks and build up contacts, and she kind of seemed to realize quite early doors that wrestling is as much about building up contacts and a network as it is about like being great in the ring.
Yeah.
Because by her own admission at that time, she was not great in the ring. There's a story of her meeting Sherry Martel that I told you.
Yeah.
It's kind of sweet. Don't meet your heroes, or maybe do and do things a bit differently, I
Oh,
guess.
it got me thinking though. A match between them. Oh.
Might be a bit dangerous, Joe. What happened when she met Sherry?
So Sherry was actually in the crowd. I think she was in the front row of a show that Lita was in. And so Lita and her opponent saw Sherry in the crowd and like, shit, it's Sherry Martel. Fuck, we got to put on a really fucking good, hard-hitting match to like, you know, show off to her that we can do it, we can keep up. And so they put on this like clobber knocker. They beat the shit out of each other.
That's on my bucket list of like, I have a wrestling bucket list of things I want to do and I want to see. And I want to go to a tiny indie show where two people decide, let's go strong style.
Yeah.
Like two untrained people.
Oh.
And that's on the list that it probably shouldn't be publicly available. It's a very dark list, isn't it? That's there.
And so they beat the hell out of each other and they're all like broken and bruised and bloody. And
Eyes swollen shut.
yeah, Sherry comes round back to say, well done on the match, you know, good job and stuff. And she goes, God, I'm really glad I don't have to wrestle you two.
I think, is that a compliment?
I think you said that it was only like years later.
She was like, wait a minute. Like, hey. The interesting thing about her is that the entryway from, you know, kind of being on the outside of wrestling to becoming into the, you know, interior and like being full-time at wrestling was quite quick. She did go to like some WCW shows, bought front row ticket type of a thing. Again, a man with a clipboard comes over and is like, do you want to come backstage? Do you want to be in WCW? That type of thing.
You know what? It's funny because like that's quite a good investment being a, like, you know, front row tickets, they're expensive. But if you're a mega babe like Lita, that's an investment into your future.
Well, she did describe it, like she was asked about it in an interview and she was like, well, look, I thought like kind of, I've got a unique look. I know that much. You know, heads turn or whatever at wrestling shows, like the big show. And also, primarily, she wanted to see WCW because she was a big fan of it. She wanted to see Rey Mysterio, her hero.
The funny thing is, though, if she'd like just met Eric Bischoff before the show and gone, hey, you see this face? I really would like to sit front row. He'd have given her a ticket for free. Guarantee any promoter would.
We have a new Nitro girl. Her name
Yeah.
is Angelica. The new Nitro. I'm just saying, Joe, it's probably for the best.
Yep.
I don't think her and Kimberly
No.
Page would have gotten on.
No.
Nitro Girls episode. Do, in fact, check it out. She attributes to, like, I think some of it as well, like her people skills, the fact that as she was coming up in wrestling and trying to fund all these trips, you know, abroad and excursions, she was working as a stripper in Atlanta. And the way she tells it, it was like the lowest rent strip club that you could possibly imagine. She tells stories of like they would walk around, like they didn't have a DJ, they would have a jukebox.
Wow.
You know, and like they'd be in the middle of doing your dance and you had to be like, can someone put another quarter in? And then you continue the sexy dance or
What if
whatever
they
it
put
was.
on like a bummer song?
I
What's
don't know, right? Sad strip then, I guess.
Oh.
Talks about wearing high heels for the first time and then like walking along on the floor and the wood is so rotten that their high heels would get caught in the wood and their shoes would come off and stuff like that.
God.
And like, you know, she had to put up with a lot of stuff that, again, is like transferable skills. There's a night when like a pimp shows up and is like, you know, causing trouble essentially, and she has to like stand up for herself and deal with being threatened with and scare people off. And like, you know, she's had to come up kind of and get a very thick skin very quickly.
For sure.
That a lot of people assume if you get into wrestling as a woman at that time that you wouldn't have that. That you're going to be precious and you're going to like not be able to deal with all the colourful characters.
But that's it. I think wrestling has so much in common with sex work in general. Like,
I think there's transferable skills, as we were saying.
definitely.
Yeah.
And it's interesting as well that like all of the coolest like badass wrestlers were strippers. Like, you know, you got like Raven and Sandman, like they were both fucking strippers.
Is it funny then that we next step on our chat is her going to ECW, I
Yeah.
guess? The home of strippers turned wrestlers. How do you think she got into ECW, Joe, if you were to take a wild guess?
Oh, I know how this happened. It's maths. Like, it's easy. Okay, I know this. It's definitely through stripping. Right? Because Paul Heyman always
the pipeline, right?
That's how he got most of his girls, was through stripping.
Yeah, but he got his girls through, it was like the Bada Bing, and like it was kind of in the New Jersey, or the tri-state area, I guess you would call it. But she was all the way over
the stripper
Atlantic.
territory isn't yet been...
She worked the territory down in Atlanta.
Vince managed to come over and kind of nationalize all the strippers.
We made a lot of good money stripping that year. A lot of good money. Paydays were very good.
So how did Heyman find her then?
So Heyman didn't find her.
Oh, let me guess. She just showed up, sat in the front row, and he was like, "Would you like to be an ECW?"
That's a good Heyman that you've got now.
Thank you.
Wow, that's very good. So she knows that ECW are doing a show at like the local... the joke she always uses in her book about ECW is like, they're having a show at the local burnt down roller rink. Because like ECW would always be like the weirdest places, like the second floor of a conference center, or a ballroom in a Hyatt or something like that, or a burnt down roller rink.
That's such a funny joke.
But yeah, she shows up and she's like, right, no one's here yet. The van with the wrestlers will be here soon. So she just waited outside the front door, waiting for the van with the wrestlers to come.
That's that hanging out with bands knowledge.
You know you'll
She gets it.
You'll get the autograph, you'll get the moment,
Yeah.
whatever it is. Tommy Dreamer and the van show up at the ring. She's like, hey, do you mind if I like, you know, she didn't say I want to be on the show.
Yeah.
She didn't say I want to come to the show. She's like, hey, I'm just like I'm working my way up in wrestling. If you've got a ring, do you mind if I work out in it before the show?
That's so fucking smart.
So it was her and there was another girl who was there with her, and they just go in, they start, you know, running the ropes, rolling around spots.
I want to know who the other girl is. Is it her friend or just some wrestler? Or?
Just some wrestler, like, yeah.
Cool.
And before long, you know, a group of men has enveloped the ring, and Tommy Dreamer's coming over with a clipboard.
Yeah.
How would you like to maybe work a little match tonight on the show?
Fucking hell.
I'm telling you, folks, keep your eyes open for them men with clipboards.
Seriously.
Your life could change. I thought I was denying someone a survey. It could have been the opportunity of a lifetime. So she gets on the show then, and she's paired up very quickly with the oddball tag team of Danny Doring and Roadkill, the Amish chicken plucker, as Miss Congeniality. We have, by my count, watched every single Miss Congeniality appearance in ECW, I think.
Well, it's hard to know because... I
ECW
don't know.
is quite scattered to the wind at the moment
That's
because
it.
of the network.
The
and
network's gone.
YouTube hasn't uploaded a lot of stuff like they have with WCW, so yeah.
And it's hard as well because, like, so there's stuff that's online written about her character and stuff that she said about her character at this time that we couldn't find any evidence of. Like, she says, oh, the character they had me doing was, like, she was really gross and she'd, like, eat her toenails and sniff her armpits and stuff. And when we watched the clips, we saw her being kind of gross, I guess. Like, she was cutting her toenails and she was talking about how smelly people were, but like
she did smell her armpits.
But like, it wasn't because she was smelly, it was because the other guy was smelly.
Yeah, and here's the thing about her in ECW. She can't tell you to this day what that character was.
I really liked what we saw.
What would you describe Miss Congeniality as? Because we spent a long time trying to figure out where the name came from, because it preceded, like, the movie came out in 2000 with Sandra Bullock, Miss Congeniality, about the undercover agent who has to go and do a beauty pageant. Miss Congeniality is an award that was typically offered at the likes of Miss Universe and Miss World and Miss America.
Yeah, beauty pageants.
And it was usually kind of like the contestants would vote amongst themselves about who they thought was like the nicest, most friendliest, who was the most congenial. But she said Heyman came over to him and was like, you're going to be Miss Congeniality, and you're going to say, I'm the Miss Congeniality of the new millennium. And she's like, okay, and then she says it, but what does it mean? What does it mean, Joe?
I think I understand the name and the gimmick. I don't know that thing about the new millennium. I don't get. But that could just be a Heymanism, like just a bullshit thing to say.
One week he literally showed up and was like, you're a badass biker chick from New York, and you're gonna come out to the ring on a big fat hog. I'm like, you're gonna literally make her Joy from Shenmue? Cool. Never happened again. Never was developed.
But I figured the Miss Congeniality gimmick was, like, ironic, because the whole idea is this Miss Congeniality award is, like, this beautiful, you know, elegant, classy lady who does, like, you know, her hair and her makeup, and she's so friendly and kind. Like, that award, as far as I know, is kind of like it's the role model award for young children.
So the hot babe for the new millennium, the role model is she's like a gross,
she's really
smelly
gross
layabout.
and really rude.
Yes, very rude.
Because like all of the stuff we saw was like guys coming up and trying to talk to her, and she like doesn't even like talk to them or look at them.
There's a lot of eye rolls and hair flips and whatnot.
Snubbing her nose or like, cutting her toenails instead. I loved it. I thought it was really funny. As well as being like gross and rude, she doesn't look like you'd expect a character like that to look. I
remember when I found out, it would have been like 2001, maybe 2. I read, I think it was like in the Divas magazine. I was like, oh yeah, and she was an ECW. And I was like, excuse me, what?
Because in your mind, you're like, oh, that kind of makes sense. She looks like she would be.
Extreme Lisa, who does cool, extreme alternative stuff. I remember like finding it was like some wrestling magazine where they had like pictures of her, and it was like in it was like, wait, there she's an ECW.
Who's that?
Who's that in like the pink 2-piece?
She looks like a member of the Spice Girls or something. Like she's dressed in like this shimmer pink.
She dresses like Trish used to dress in like 2000 a little bit, like, yeah.
But like I'd say like even more kind of girly pop. Like it's very pink, very shimmery. She's got like the 2 high ponytails on the top of her head. It's like it's proper 90s.
Yeah, it's very like of the time, I think.
Yeah, but it's a really cool juxtaposition, I think, of having this kind of like cutesy preppy outfit with like a really horrid, rude, gross girl.
Trust you to make sense of Paul Heyman's weird fetish.
No, don't ruin it for me.
Because like that's the thing about most of the time when she's at ECW watching this, I'm like, look, I consider you and I, with our combined knowledge of being people who've been on the internet since we were youngsters, that we have a kind of a broad understanding of what can be described as various fetishes and whatnot. And yet we were watching this content being like, I know someone is getting off on this, on some of the very minute, very specific parts of this.
Yeah.
But I was struggling to figure out why. Is Tommy Dreamer the toenail guy? Is it Paul Heyman? Who's into armpits? Because I know. That's why she did all those things.
I think they're both into armpits. I think Tommy and Paul are into really similar stuff, except Tommy's a bit more like sadomasochist, and Paul is more into the cucking.
It's just interesting, isn't it? It doesn't take $1 billion company to live out your sexual fantasies while you're booking wrestlers, does it?
No.
Not that there's not precedent for that or anything along those lines. She had really good chemistry with Danny Doring, actually, because the whole thing was like her and Danny were like kind of the hot bad guy couple, and then they just inexplicably, like often is the case in ECW, there was a completely mismatched dude with them in this big Amish guy called Roadkill.
What? Heyman booking a cock-blocking character?
Fucking love that. And Roadkill, when you see how she's not gonna have sex with you, you're just gonna look in the camera, and you're gonna say chickens, and it's gonna be electrifying. She is one of the lone dissenting voices for the ECW was always cool kind of narrative. The way she talks about it, I think it's like it takes big brass balls or whatever you want to call it, because like I think ECW is cool, warts and all. I know we've had long discussions on this in various episodes, but she could see through a lot of what was labelled as punk rock ethos. And there's no shortage of wrestling companies that have fallen afoul of like, oh no, our punk rock ethos isn't worth the Brewdog manual it's printed on.
No.
So that in a sense is refreshing, and she has called out like the treatment of the wrestlers in ECW, the pay, the way they kind of, were manipulated as like just complete bullshit.
Yeah.
And it kind of was. She, by her reckoning, had to pay to be in ECW.
That sounds about right.
She only was there for 6 months, but she made like fuck all money.
Yeah.
She had to travel around in the van with Roadkill and Danny Doring and like 6 other wrestlers, and that was the van that you got a free ride in because the merch was in that van.
Yeah.
But the crossover then, I guess, with like being a roadie and all that feeling.
Except probably being a roadie, she'd have been paid.
I don't think there is the expectation necessarily when you're a roadie to be paid in the way that there would be when you're a wrestler. Because that's the thing, like, she wasn't wrestling matches and stuff like that, but, every night she was taking a fucking pile driver or going, that was the height of, here's a new hot lady to be up in ECW. That was kind of the brand at the time. So
cool.
She, every night, like, she was like, yeah, I'd slap someone and then get a pile driver, I'd slap someone and get powerbombed, or I'd slap someone and then, like, Jazz might hit me with a chair or whatever it may be. So I don't think it's the most fulfilling role for her early doors, but I think she realizes it as a stepping stone. Could you guess any of the people she didn't get on with at ECW?
I mean, I think broadly, while not the, best wholesome people in the world, I do feel like the ECW locker room at least the stars of the company aren't so bad. Like, I feel Tommy is friendly. I feel like Sabu is a bit standoffish maybe, but more introverted rather than
Same
rude.
with Taz, probably.
Yeah,
you know.
Taz maybe could be a bit brisk, but like, Rob Van Dam, I'm sure he was nice to her, right? I feel like they would have gotten on.
Jimmy mentioned that, but I think it was just... I felt very fucking stupid and naive when I came to this conclusion while you're reading up about her with you, where it's like, oh wow, it's like a refreshingly frank ECW wasn't as nice and wasn't as cool, and we weren't all quote unquote family in that same way.
Yeah, no shit, the women weren't part of the
family.
family.
And I'm like, that goes against all the other narratives I've heard about ECW. I'm like, Kevin, have you ever listened or heard any woman talk about anything in ECW other than their relationship to other women in ECW? And I was like, no. I've definitely listened to like 2 hours of Dawn Marie talking about why she hated Francine and vice versa, but in terms of the general locker room experience, no. And she was, again, like, kind of, because she was lower, perhaps bottom of the card, she was, chucked in with all the other kind of low-level guys, and they were all on the road together and whatnot. But yeah, like, apparently, like, every show they'd be at, Bubba Ray Dudley would give her variants of...
Of course,
you
it was
shouldn't,
Bubba Ray
you shouldn't
Dudley.
be here.
Yeah.
What are you doing here? Or, like, you'll never make it in this business.
He's just like a piece of shit, though. I feel like he's like that to everyone.
I mean, he is the most unpleasant wrestler I've ever met.
Yeah.
But also, it's a heel work, but it's a gimmick, bro.
But I don't think it's a gimmick.
It's my gimmick to be rude.
He's just horrible.
It can be fortuitous that you're naturally rude and you implement that into your character, but that's not an excuse for being rude in real life.
No.
And hey, you know what? I even go as far as to say, is like, hey, Bubba Ray Dudley, be rude to me, the fan. Of course, I'm a stupid mark. But, like, I don't know, like, the woman who's going to get a 3D from you tonight, like, I don't know, maybe don't be so rude to her. Like,
But I feel like, I agree, and I think he should be nicer, especially to, like, someone like her who would have been...
so rude to me, Joe.
Because, like, obviously she would have been ostracized in the locker room being a woman, but I feel like he is a horrible piece of shit to everyone mostly, other than like
Equal
maybe
opportunities
Tommy.
asshole. Yeah, maybe. And there's a lot of stuff with Tommy where she's like, look, Tommy was great because he helped me navigate the waters and the politics and all that. But every time he'd be like, oh, I've gotten an opportunity. And he'd be like,
I have to do my job.
She didn't have a contract. So
Right.
he'd be like, you can do this, but people here are going to be very upset that you're working against ECW. You can go ahead, you can do it. And this idea that like every time she said something it would be reported, like they were all like, Tommy would tell Paul and Paul will tell Bubba and Bubba will tell Tommy, like they were all like kind of hive mind like that. So she very much got that label for the first time then of being like, oh, you're just the girl who wants to come in and get famous, even though like
That's
it was
why
an
you're
opportunity
all
they
here.
gave her.
You're all here to get famous, you fucking liars, hypocrites.
One fun story I found about her from her time in ECW is that because she was on the bottom rung, they used to get the 2-bed bedrooms for like 6 people, so they would take the mattresses off and then push them, 2 people have beds on the floor, 2 people would sleep on the floor, and 2 people would sleep on the boxes from where the mattresses were.
Right.
So they always ended up, because they were so poor, just staying in this room like 6 people in this big pile. So they started having wrestling contests.
Aww.
Shoot wrestling contests.
This is with ECW?
With ECW guys.
Ooh.
Where they would just like wrestle around for a bit. There was like not alcohol or drugs involved. It was
Yeah,
just they would shoot
hang
wrestle.
on, that makes sense, because I was going to say, this seems weirdly wholesome for what I know about ECW. That must be one of the other rooms, because I know we always talk about the ECW locker room as having like different rooms, because there's like the weed room, there's the drugs room.
There's more than one of those.
Okay, that's true. There's the crack
room.
The crack room.
The ketamine
the
room.
coke room. The heroin room.
That's the dildo room.
There's the alcohol room. There's the sex room.
And then there's Taz's room. Do not disturb, you understand?
Yeah, and then there's the wrestling room where seemingly the nicer people hang out.
And wrestle. So in the shoot fighting tournament, I'm happy to note that Lita did defeat in shoot wrestling combat with a Jujikatami, kind of like an armbar takedown.
Yeah.
She defeated Jerry Lynn, who in fits of hysterical laughter had to tap
He's
him
massive,
out.
right?
Jerry Lynn was like, I think you saw him in the Rob Van Dam episode. He was like kind of a counterpoint for Rob Van Dam. He was the new effing show.
Oh, he's not like a muscular guy.
I mean, he is big ass shoulders,
Yeah.
but he would have been maybe slightly smaller stature,
Right.
but a definite beast in the ring for sure. I was shocked when I heard that. She also made Chris Chetty tap out, who was Taz's cousin, who had just been trained at the ECW School of Hardcore, and he was like mortified. I had to like, go up to him afterwards and be like, "Don't tell Taz. Like he'll disown me that I tapped out to a girl."
Wow.
She has to be like the cool older sister and be like, that's
alright.
okay,
I
it's
won't
alright.
tell.
So she has a very chance meeting when she goes down to a place called MCW, would have been Music City Wrestling.
Sorry, what?
Yeah, down in Memphis. So it would have been like one of the small little indies that was down there back in the day.
Music City
Wrestling.
Is it to do with music?
I mean, Music City is what Memphis is known as, so.
Oh, I didn't know that.
You learned. We're
the
doing
honky
groundwork for a Jeff Jarrett episode here, folks. That's what's happening here.
The Honky Tonk Man is the Music City man. Yeah?
Or better known as Mr. Music City himself. So she's there, and a bunch of guys from this Carolina promotion called Omega are there as well. They're called Matt and Jeff Hardy, and they have made their own costumes. They have like their own little federation. They've trained guys. They got, you know, Shane Helms, Joey Abs, the Mean Street Posse. This like really tight knit clique. And she says, basically immediately upon meeting Matt Hardy, it's like, oh, okay, we're attracted to each other.
Really?
And they had just been signed to WWF. They'd been doing loads of kind of, you know, job stuff for them over the years. But
so it's in the Hardys.
The Hardy Boys had just been signed. She makes friends with them, and her book is kind of slightly vague on the details, but it's implied later on that, like, her meeting Matt instigates her breaking up with her other boyfriend, who she was seeing less and less of as she was traveling around the country, and he was in a band and traveling around lots.
Right.
But I just think it's worth bearing in mind. We'll probably be talking about, like, infidelity and all this stuff later on, that there's kind of like a cycle, and I think a lot of people get up to a lot of that type of stuff, more so than the Puritan wrestling crowds of 2006 would have you believe. But anyway, they get her a connection with WWF. Hey, would you like to come in and be a hoe one night?
Wow.
So she was just visiting them backstage as friends, and Godfather's wife came over and said, yeah, they have sent over people from the strip club who aren't going to put my husband over, which is a very nice way of saying the strippers aren't hot enough.
Oh, okay.
Maybe not that nice way of saying the strippers aren't hot enough.
No.
So Leah was like, yeah, I'll do it. I'll put on a dress and clap my hands for the Godfather. But of course, first, a phone call to Tommy Dreamer, who lets her know that she can, of course, be a hoe and be out there with the Godfather. But her being a hoe with the Godfather might reflect badly on ECW. And she can do it, but, you know, you can do it, but it's at your own risk.
Well, I mean, you know, Kevin, he is very protective about the ECW legacy, isn't he? Like, you know, he would never, for instance, drink The Undertaker's spit.
Opportunities come. And I think it's wild that she seems to be kind of, like, on this absolute rocket ascent.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people you would think, like, you'd be happy for them, but I think wrestling is quite cutthroat, but I think more so for the women because there were so few spots back then, you know?
And I think especially ECW wrestlers, because of they've got Paul Heyman in their head. He's like a little parasite in the brain who's like whispering all the time, like, someone else is taking the opportunity.
Well, she says, like, you know, every time a check would bounce, that's when you get the big speech. And she was like, I've heard speeches before from, like, assholes in bands who don't want to pay the crew or whatever it is. So she's like, she saw through all of that stuff, she says. And, you know, she's like, all right, you know, does a bit with WWE for the Godfather's hoe. Then Terry Taylor, who was one of the agents, was like, I think, you know, we might want to sign you. We'll get in touch. Jim Ross calls, you know, they want to set up a meeting. So she goes and just tries to do the right thing. Even though she doesn't have a contract, she goes over to Paul and is like, look, I want to do the right thing, 2 weeks notice. And you can, you know, we can finish up my time and I'll move on to the other company. And he goes, why would you want to do that? There's nothing for you here. Why do you want to stay and fill out your last 2 weeks? We don't need you. We never needed you.
Oh, wait, I thought he was trying to convince her not to go to WWE.
No, go. We've heard that before, though. If you're right to go, go.
That's a very Vince
Go.
thing. Yeah.
Remember the Dudleys asked for $1 more, don't forget.
Oh,
go,
yeah.
Go.
Yeah.
So fucking petty.
Yeah.
I get that with, like, top stars or whatever, but, like, she was so bottom rung.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, I just think it's crazy that, like, that's kind of... The attitude in wrestling is so fucking toxic.
Yeah.
Because she's surrounded by people in WWE then for her run where it's, like, not necessarily like, hey, you made it, and I made it. It's like, oh, you made it, despite me telling you over and over you wouldn't make it. When she shows up to WWF, the first thing she does is she sees Bubba Ray Dudley, who's also been signed. Why'd you leave? You had it made in ECW. You're just tits and ass. That's what they want down there. You could have had an easy ride.
Come off it. Even if all you're expecting from ECW is tits and ass, there's hardly any.
Yeah, I know. I mean, unless you want to see your tits and ass get beat up. Which,
yeah, like maybe like once a month. Like, come on.
Yeah, if you want tits and ass, WWF is the way to do it, man.
Yeah, seriously, tits and ass everywhere.
Come on,
and they're getting beaten up, if that's what you want.
She credits her ability to get into WWF with a brief stint at Dory Funk Jr.'s training camp.
Hell yeah.
Which is the greatest name of any training camp in history, Joe.
It's so funny. The Funking Conservatory.
Fucking A. So he was like, you know, the official trainer for WWE for a while. They moved on. He set up his own gimmick. he would charge you $750 for this like intense 2 weeks at his camp. They'd film a bunch of matches at the end. They'd put on a show with an audience. And he's like, and then I'll send you off to WWF. I'll send a tape with my recommendation. And it actually kind of meant something.
Yeah.
His wife, Dory's wife, didn't realize that she's a photographer. So the whole time you're in the ring training and doing the show and all that, she's taking pictures. And because there were so few girls who would come through, Amy got loads and loads of like, you know, like kind of modeling pictures and bikini photos and all that. So she had this like big like packet of stuff where it's like, look at me, I can wrestle, I can do characters, I'm hot, I can do bikini shoots. So basically for $750
pre-made portfolio,
you're like, you're ready to go.
That's like $700. I feel would like that that's a bargain just for the portfolio.
Yeah.
Like, not even including the training, the contacts, everything else.
She said it was like literally every penny she had at this point,
Yeah.
but it was like she reckoned, it's probably going to be worth it.
Yeah,
you know,
so-
I know wrestling training has evolved over the years, but I would think situations like that where someone who A has genuine contacts, B can help build you up and figure out what's great. And the great thing is, folks, is that all of the footage of her at the training camp we were able to find and watch. It's all on YouTube.
It's on YouTube. It's really cool.
It's fantastic.
With slightly more recently added commentary from Dory Funk.
Yeah, Dory Funk gets to watch an Elite match and be like, I knew she'd be a big star. I knew she'd be big in the business. The business was right for her. She was right for the business. She does extremely well there. Gets a meeting with Jim Ross and talent relations. And again, more stick-to-itiveness. They're like, right, yeah, we'll sign you. You're signed up. We'll figure out something creatively, and then we'll be in touch. And she literally she shows up to an event and just kind of is like, hey, I'm here. And Jim Ross is like, oh, well, we'll get you on the road now then.
Amazing.
So that's just like it kind of, I think there's a lot of people who assume when you have a rocket ship attached to you, and she did, that you don't have to be savvy or finesse things.
I think it's the opposite.
Yeah.
I genuinely think unless
that
you're
rocket ship can go into a bad place.
You have to be the type of person that says yes to every opportunity, but also you have to go out of your way to be in the rocket ship because it's going to go off without you otherwise.
She has spoken about how as soon as she got signed to WWE, she knew she had to do one thing, which was to get a boob job. And look, all I can say is I thought I knew about kind of cosmetic surgery and recovery times and stuff like that.
Yeah.
She's like, went in at 1 o'clock, got new boobs, left at 4 p.m. and I was on my way home. Next day I woke up and, all's okay.
Don't understand that. I mean, I've never had a boob job. But I have had a nose job, and the woman next to me in recovery was a nurse who had just had her boob job revised. And I know it's a quick operation. The procedure itself, I think, now it's even less. I think it's
I would think, because that's getting a boob job in the year 2000 versus now, yeah.
A long way since then. But the recovery is intense. They have to drain pus and stuff out of you. You have to wear a special compression vest.
She does tell the story of a day or two after she got the boob job, WWE were like, we're going to FedEx you your contract. You have to sign it and send it back straight away. And the FedEx guy knocked on the door and she woke up chest on fire, pure agony, literally crawling down the stairs, like, no, I must sign contract.
I also wouldn't be surprised, knowing Lita, if she's kind of underselling it a little bit.
Oh yeah, there's a big amount of that kind of, constantly getting knocked loopy or getting big goose eggs in your head and be like, no, I'm fine, I'm
it's no
fine.
big deal, I'm tough, yeah.
But understanding that early on is that's a huge part of wrestling. There's a girl she mentions that she was training with, and she was doing lots of training with the Hardys at this point in the build up to it as well. And there was a girl she thought was really good. She went to training with them. Matt hit her with a clothesline and she chipped her tooth. And the girl was like, what the fuck? And everyone's like, oh, bad fit for this business then.
Wow.
Yeah, just kind of oh, well, can't take it. It's I understand that aspect of it.
Yeah.
But you can understand that and also be like, you fucking chipped the girl's tooth.
Yeah.
And I don't know, if someone chipped my tooth, I'd be fucking furious. I'm not going out trying to be in a very visual business or whatever it is. So I remember when I was 14 or 15 reading in some article about all the girls who have boob jobs like Trish Stratus and Lita and Tori Wilson. I was like, excuse me, what?
Wait, you didn't know that? Even I knew that and I didn't even watch wrestling.
I was like, excuse me, what? Lita doesn't have a boob job. Lita's a cool girl, one of the guys. She's she wouldn't. And
she doesn't wear makeup or dye her hair or
girl,
care
you don't
about
need
fashion.
Makeup. Girl, you don't. Yeah, so I just had myself just convinced that because a character like Trish Stratus would like, who had a boob job, would like accentuate it and have it pushed up with a big, push-up bra and all that stuff, and there was bits around like where like, oh, people are looking at her boobs and stuff like that. My mind as a teen was just like, well, Amy's cool and she doesn't do that, so obviously she just has a very
Naturally
slim,
massive boobs.
yeah. I mean, for those of you who aren't aware of the phenomenon of having a shredded athletic body and massive breasts are fat. Those things don't usually go together. And she was basically like, the reason she wanted to do it, there was twofold. One, she had boobs before she got in shape. When she got in shape, she lost them, so she wanted them back. That's a common enough, I think, rationale. And then she said, look, I saw everyone who was there where I wanted to be, and they all had this look.
Like on the card, like on the card. The company, yeah.
In WWE and WCW, the women in the position I wanted to be in all had this look, so why go against the grain?
It's really smart. I hate that that's the case, because it shouldn't be. But she was right to recognize that fact.
At what point, though, and this is the thing where, like, and this happens often with Lita, where I'm like, you're this, like, fucking icon, and you've determined this for yourself, and, like, you draw your strength from it and all that, and, like, hey, great, I appreciate that. But someone, if it could very easy just be like, look, Lita, she was forced to do this by the negative, toxic culture of male-dominated WWE and whatnot. So, like, I don't know if it's kind of, is there a line you can draw where it stops being the performer's agency to decide this themselves, and like evil wrestling culture has made this woman have a very scary surgery that, there's complications and stuff like that always happen. It makes it harder to be a wrestler in some respects.
Definitely. I think there are a lot of comparisons to be made between the culture in wrestling that really, I don't even say encourage, because it's too soft a term for things like women having to have
expect.
That's it. It's
might
expectation.
Be more than encourage, yeah.
And I would compare that to the expectation for men to be on steroids or have that steroid body.
It's about the expectation of looking a certain physical way.
Yeah, and although the company is never going to be like, hey, we're not going to give you a job unless you take steroids and get a boob job. However, the people who get those top positions were on steroids and had boob jobs.
It's the unsaid request, so to speak. But I just think it's interesting because the wrestling fans have got like weird kind of relationships with that type of a thing, because I would have said, positive thing about wrestling in the last 10 years is that there's been a lot of changing expectations for body shapes, more diversity.
Yeah.
But I do remember like when it was Billy Kay and the Iconics, like they went off and they were going to go get boob jobs, and everyone straight away was screaming bloody murder like it was forced upon them. And it's like, I think those two ladies really just wanted to have bazig bazoobs, as they say in the business.
Yeah, definitely. But I do think that culture and that expectation still exists. Like, I'm not going to like run through the roster and be like, boob job, boob job, boob job,
but
boob
you
job.
could,
like
90%
of the women's roster do have them, I would say. Whether or not they would feel comfortable, because again, I think culturally we've changed a lot. Like in the 2000s and the 90s, having a boob job was seen as like empowering.
Yeah.
Whereas now,
particularly for the men.
Whereas now it's like, it's a private thing.
Yeah.
If you ever do hear about it, it's well, not really normal to hear about the surgeries like that as often as it would have been.
I just think going straight from that into like, hey, I'm on the road now.
Yep.
It's incredible. So she gets paired very early on. They're like, right, she's got a look. She has this cool tattoo. She has this kind of like slight like kind of Latina heritage vibe to her that I think they were somewhat embellishing. So they paired her with S.A. Rios. And the idea was going to be they were going to be this exciting couple, or possibly brother and sister.
Are you fucking serious?
Or possibly friends. What? We never really found out what their deal was.
Possibly couple, possibly brother and sister.
I love this era of wrestling where it's like they're firing on all cylinders, they are knocking it out of the park, record, all this, that, and the other, and yet so much it feels like, fuck it, go out there and, we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Whereas now, like, everything that that you're seeing, they're firing on all cylinders, but that's been in the oven for like 6 months or whatever it is, overthought, overwrought.
Yeah.
There's something very natural about seeing somewhere it's like, they're just here, wah!
Yeah.
And I remember seeing Lita and S.A. Rios on TV for the first time, and I was like, wah! Look at that. Yeah, because they were cool. They came out, they had cool music that sounded like Ricky Martin. He did a moonsault, she did a moonsault. And that was enough for me, because all the women I had seen in wrestling up until that point were very, very one note.
Yeah, it was like one type of woman.
You were like Ivory and you were a bitch for no like discernible reason. Or you were...
Which means you had to have brown hair.
Yeah.
It's like the rule.
Or there was Jackie and her gimmick is that she's tough.
Right, yeah.
Or there was China, whose whole thing was like she's not involved with women, she's involved with the men.
Yeah.
And then there was Miss Kitty, who was like, she's, hot. And then there was Terry, who was like, she's hot.
Yeah.
And they did like, angles and stuff like that, but it's easy to overlook how important it was that Lita's character was doing moves like this on men, and it wasn't a low blow or a slap or some sort of a I love when Sherry beats up Macho Man after WrestleMania, but like it's very much like a men's idea of how a woman should beat up a man in a wrestling ring, which is like throwing
Kicks
a shoe at him, kicks and
stuff,
slaps and scratches and all that. But like I remember seeing Lita do a fucking moonsault and being like, shit, wow, this is different, this is cool. And the crowds reacted to them really strongly, really quickly.
They look really cool. They're very visually striking with their matching red hair. And she, at this time as well, would wear this kind of like prototypical Brie Bella kind of outfit. Which,
a lot of the kind of catsuit stuff.
Red
and
catsuits.
The cords,
very shiny cords and things. And yeah, it's just really cool seeing a man and a woman together in wrestling kind of in synchronicity, and like rather than now where it's like it feels kind of forced. Like, the closest we get these days is like Liv and Dominic, who are in a relationship, or Rhea and Damien, I guess, who it's literally just like, oh well, they're both kind of alternative, I guess we'll put them together. And it's funny because like this is even more stupid than that, really, which is just
they went like
red.
What's the thing that combines them is red and moonsaults.
But yeah, that works better.
I'm often the case when we're like putting together the stuff to watch. I'm like, I want to find right matches, I want to find right moments, blah, blah, blah. But like as I was saying at the start, I wanted just Joe to kind of feel that vibe or whatever it was of the kind of the electricity. Because you've been a fan of some of that 2000s SmackDown and whatnot when you've seen.
I love 2001 SmackDown, yeah.
How would you like describe, why is it different? Like, because I can't see the forest in the trees. I've covered that stuff so much for the Out Here podcast over the years. But for you, the outsider, like, why is that period, like, what is the secret sauce for you?
I feel like at this time it was just very fun, and the crowd were very... Is it fair to say, like, forgiving?
I think more open, I think.
They're just kind of there to have a good time.
Yeah, and also very much a kind of, hey, you've given us lots of cool stuff, give us more new cool stuff.
Yeah.
It felt like the most receptive audience that they've ever had, because even now they're extremely hot in 2025. There's a lot of fans, as you can tell from the most recent WrestleMania, which we reviewed on our Patreon, there's a lot of fans who were kind of at odds, it felt, with like whatever the story is they're trying to tell at any given moment, because they have a preconceived notion of where it should go or what it should be.
Yeah, and I feel now WB is very much, this is what WWE is like. It's like this very strict, narrow definition, whereas like back then it was a lot more broad. There was a lot more for everyone, like lots of different wrestling styles, lots of different types of characters, a rich mid-card.
Yeah, and like honestly, seeing that we had a new woman was like, that in itself was exciting. Like I remember watching TV at the time, like, okay, there's a new girl.
A new woman and a new type of woman.
Yeah,
as well.
and that was it. She didn't remind me of anyone else.
No.
And this is even before Lita is...
Lita,
as you know her, with the cool outfits and the kind of the millennial culture and all that jazz. This is like a red lady doing a moonsault. And even that on its own is like, awesome, cool. I want to see that every single week.
Yeah.
And they would come up with cool spots for her to do. Most of the time, she was just emulating what Essay was doing. So the idea was that Essay would do a Hurricane Rana, so she'd do a Hurricane Rana. He'd do a moonsault, she'd do a moonsault. He'd dive to the outside, she'd dive to the outside. And Essay Rios, is fair to say, made such a strong impression on Joe early on. I was like, uh-oh, this might accidentally become an Essay Rios episode.
Aww.
Because he was spectacular.
Oh yeah, he's great.
And like, hey, tough first couple of weeks on the job. Go out and emulate the spectacular man in a way that no woman has ever had to do before. And she's doing fucking crazy shit.
Yes, she is.
And like, she gets into the deep water very quickly. Like, one week it's like, okay, you're going to do a moonsault on a guy. The next week it's like, you're going to run off the apron and do a Hurricane Rana to Eddie Guerrero, but he's going to twist you around into a powerbomb on the ringside area. So it was very much a trial by fire. I think there was a lot of expectations when they bring in any new woman at that point in time that they might flame out. And as she got quite popular quite quickly, she realized that people like Bruce Pritchard and Jim Ross would come over and be like, hey, how you getting on? You're not like big-headed or anything now, are you? You're not like going to do a Sable or a sort of Sunny on us. Like, they had this really strong sense that if a woman got too popular in WWF at the time, that would be the end of them. So you had to be like, again, more the perfect lady thing from Gone Girl. You have to be super over, but not popular, or not recognize your popularity.
Yeah, you have to want the top spot, but you have to pretend to not want it.
Yes. So she spends a lot of this time as well making sure she's very distant from Matt and Jeff Hardy, even though they're her like super best friends who she trains with on the weekends and does all that stuff.
Smart.
Because she didn't want to be given the illusion that she was their boy or that there was any sort of a bias.
No, I think
savvy, man.
I think that's really smart and a good piece of advice for any situation like that. I think, like, if you're starting a new job and there's someone there you already know, don't just hang out with them, because you are blocking yourself off to meeting other people if you just surround yourself with the same people all the time.
You never want to be in the position where people can kind of assume who you are based on the relationships that they have seen you have, as opposed to know anything about you or whatever. But like, for all the talk of her like being like, oh, kid power and there's a rocket strapped to me and I'm just kind of on this big crazy ride, it's like, that's all well and good to have that attitude, but I would say a necessary thing is to be like immensely savvy at all points, which she seems to be by all accounts, you know? The breakup with S.A. Rios comes when when she sees S.A. Rios with a bunch of the Godfather's hoes, which led to us watching a segment where Lita attempted to speak Spanish.
Oh, yeah.
And let's just say it was probably for the better they didn't do a whole lot of this. Yo, ese, copasa, hable, no, that's cool. And she starts speaking English then.
¿Dónde está la biblioteca?
She literally said that they didn't know if her character was Spanish or Mexican, if she spoke English, if she spoke Spanish. But she'd be upset that Essay was with hoes. That much was known.
Yeah, she's like, I guess, jealous of the hoes or something. So I guess they are in a relationship.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I don't like that though.
No.
The idea of like a couple looking the same, unless that's like a heel thing and it's like intentional. I kind of prefer the idea that they're like friends.
Yeah, or brother and sister.
Or brother and sister,
maybe,
but then
Joe.
don't get threatened by the hoes.
So, unfortunately for S.A. Rios, he splits from Lita and then, starts attacking her in the ring, which leads to her being saved by the Hardy Boys, who think it's the right thing to do. And everyone's like, oh, that's nice. And then the next week, when Trish Stratus and her boys, TNA, are beating up on the Hardy Boys, Lita comes out and saves them. And this time, she's dressed in cool clothes.
Nice.
Now, the Lita wear, Joe. Give me a rundown, some of the fashion here.
Iconic. I think it is. I know people will probably disagree with me, and that's fine because they're wrong. She is, I think, the most iconic looking, recognizable, not in terms of household being recognizable in that way, but I think in terms of if you were to line up all the wrestlers and be like, okay, which one's got the most memorable look, she would come up on top.
You couldn't have anyone else try and do what she did because you'd be like, that's just Lita. That's
exactly.
How set in stone it is as being an iconic look.
Well, and the fact that I can't think of anyone even outside of wrestling that would look like Lita. I can think of the fashion that came after her that she inspired, because it was the stuff kind of I was wearing at the time. But there's so much about the specifics, the little details she does that is just her.
Are we going to talk about the thong now?
We're going to talk about the thong, because I mean, yeah, that came out of nowhere. That wasn't I know thongs were big at that time, and I say that with experience. I was 12 and my email address was addicted to thongs with a Z.
Yes, we were talking the other day about how quite easy it was for children to get their hands on thongs back in the 2000s.
Very weird time. But it wasn't if you wore a thong and it was visible, it was because you were wearing low-rise jeans and you were doing it to kind of be kind of sexy. You'd wear it with kind of tight jeans, and it was kind of, I would say it's mainstream sex appeal.
Right, yeah.
But the way she did it wasn't, and I don't want to say because it's not sexy, because it is, obviously, but that's not the point.
Yeah, that's kind of her view on it. It was the idea of it was to look kind of, to stand out, or to capture a certain kind of vibe or whatnot. But it wasn't overtly oh, men find visible underwear sexy, so this will be super sexy. Although she's not going to deny that people did, in fact, find it very sexy.
But she's not wearing it in the way that people wore them at the time to be sexy, because that's it. At the time, if you wore a thong to be sexy, you wear it in a very different way. Because
the thongs that she would wear, it wasn't they were kind of G-stringy type things and stuff like that.
They were proper thongs, and she'd wear them so high you wouldn't see her ass. That's it. When I was growing up,
that's true, actually.
It was to bring attention to the ass, and she wears baggy cargo pants and trip pants and stuff. You never see her ass in that outfit. It's just the thong is very visible, and she wears it with these cute crop tops tops and stuff, and then these like
The match the top to the thong, hell yes.
yeah,
Fashion.
bright neon string tops and things like that, and gummy bands. She wears gummy bands.
What?
Gummy bands. They were big in the 90s and the noughties.
Yeah.
They're like plastic. Actually, you've seen mine. I've still got mine. Plastic bracelets.
Oh yeah.
Made of kind of gummy see-through material, and they had rules, and it was a big culture around it, and the different colors had different meanings, and then you could intertwine, like when you would like go out with a boy, the idea was you'd thread your gummy bands together
Oh wow.
to bring the colors together, and that would be like a sign that you're in a
Can
relationship.
you tell me there's Hardy's lore that I could have missed on her gummy bands, perhaps?
Did Matt ever wear gummy bands?
No, that's for girls.
Yeah,
Lita.
exactly.
Nah, don't do that.
Yeah, that came later, I
That's
think.
not for me, actually. Yeah, apparently the way she discovered it was she had went shopping and she was hanging out with some friends, one of which was Edge, which makes the story immediately have a 5-star wanted level for some people. Excuse me, sir, have you been committing adultery tonight?
No, just some underwear shopping.
No, after...
Extramarital.
But yeah, she was trying on like new trousers that she had gotten, and she was like, hey, what do you think of these? And then she's like, oh, obviously not like this, because the thong was up. And he was like, straight away, that's something. You got something there. Like, you should go out wearing that exact look. Which she did. Like, they debuted her, as this, new Lita Hardy Boys version of the character in a battle royale on SmackDown. And she had the new look. And afterwards, she said that Jerry Lawler came over and was like, wow, great match. That was really good. Did you know your underwear was hanging out like the whole time though?
Oh man.
And she's like, damn, Jerry, like, no way.
Oh, how embarrassing.
Honestly, those pants gave you like 10 years to your career, Jerry. Good lord.
I think you could make an argument that Lita's thong was a feminist symbol because of how it kind of reclaimed how you'd wear them. Like,
Yeah.
no, this is a fashion accessory now.
Yeah,
It may
yeah.
as well be like a handbag or something. Like, it's not for you, this is for me.
I think it's a very, very, like, I don't know, it's timeless in some respects, even though, like, I look at that and I kind of go, that's the year 2000, like, as a look for a woman.
I agree, though. I think it's like, it's timeless in that I think it always looks cool.
And also, just in this era of, like, you see on TikTok all the time, just, like, anything you thought was a passing trend now has a full-blown subculture behind it.
Yeah.
Just the aesthetics of it or whatever it is. And, like, you could pick, like, any year from the 2000s and it's like, there's a fucking legion of people in their teens and 20s who are, like, holding the candle up for this look, this vibe, whatever it is. So I think, like, that is... in itself is mind-blowing, I think, you know, the enduring nature of it, I guess. But them as a group, I don't know if you believe this is the same way, because obviously there's a point in their story where you find out that Matt and Lee are going out, but beforehand it's just like, hey, it's the Hardy Boys and their friend. I think, like, it was the most successful, like, intergender group ever. Because, like, we play wrestling and, like, one of the girls is like, I want to be Lita.
Yeah,
like, you know, that's kind of it. Like,
That's
and
it.
that's the secret sauce right there. And I think as kids, there was so many times where I would watch, like, I remember being, like, 10 and seeing, like, PMS, where it's like Terry Reynolds and Jacqueline have Sean Stasiak as a sex slave, and he can't wrestle any of his matches because he's too shagged out all the time. And, like, as a kid, it was just kind of like, I'd watch it on TV and be like, it just bounced off me. It's not like I'm kind of like, oh, this is sexy. I'm like, no, I didn't understand what it was. It was like one of those things where there was no complicated feelings necessarily of like why I like Lita. Because like I didn't have a crush on Lita as a kid. Like I'm probably one of the few people you'll hear who grew up during the Attitude Era who didn't have a crush on her. But I fucking loved her. But I loved her like a sister. You know,
But that's
she
it,
felt like
and
she
I
was
feel-
this cool older lady. Like.
That's the sad thing about wrestling at this time is like that there was only really one character like that. Because like really in a healthy environment of wrestling, there should be loads
Yeah.
of characters that you're not sexually into. And that just shows that like how fucking narrow-minded Vince and the WWE were at that time. They were like, oh no, the only female characters we can have to be marketed to horny men.
Yeah.
And it's like they actually have in their hands just like a character who actually markets herself, like putting the company aside for a second, like just her look, she markets herself to women.
I think that's why the Trish Stratus, Lita, TNA Hardy Boys
Yeah.
feud was so electric.
Yeah.
Because you had all these pockets of the audience. There's people who were cheering because Trish was hot. There's people who cheering because they love the Hardy Boys. There's people who cheer because they think Lita's hot. There's people who cheer because they love Lita as a wrestler.
Yeah.
And that was just like, what like a perfect synergy. I think it's like one of those things you look back on and it's like you've two basically mostly untrained women and they steal the show with these guys as backup who don't become an afterthought. That's like so much easier said than done, I think.
I think part of the reason as well it worked so well is that it's this cultural story that was very hot at the time of like the idea of like an ultra feminine, high maintenance, bleach blonde hair babe.
But then there's like the
versus,
tomboy,
the tomboy, cool
the skater girl,
and the idea of like, of course they hate each other. But part of the reason it really worked so well is that Trish and Lita were like best friends, and they still are. Like
they claimed they had telepathy in the ring, like that they just kind of knew what the other one was doing. I think that happens when you have two wrestlers who are put in a similar, I'm slightly uncomfortable in this spot, but they have the similar level of, not one of them is going to be like, hey kid, follow me. They're both working through it together.
Yeah.
And I think when you do that, you end up having that kind of super strong bond in the ring. And I guess beyond that as well, you know?
Yeah.
I think that some of the things they got them to do are bananas when you think back in retrospect, like Trish throwing Lee off a ladder through a table. You know, I think every other night it felt like they were like whipping each other with belts. There was a story she told in the book where it was like, oh, it was my time in the storyline to get my revenge because Trish had whipped me a few times with a leather strap. And they have like a gimmicked leather strap that they use for it. It sounds really loud. It makes a noise. It hurts for sure, but it's gimmicked. And then they're like, oh no, we forgot the strap. We didn't bring it today. What are we going to do? So helpful road agent Terry Taylor's like, hang on a second, just takes off his belt. There you go. Oh. And she's like, okay, here comes like, and it's like the big Lita finally gets her hands on Trish and she starts whipping her with the belt. She's like, straight away, she could tell she was bleeding. And Trish is like, please stop. And they're like, we have to go all the way up the ramp. And I meant to whip you the whole way. Sorry. So, you know, Leah's... A lot of times we saw Leah in these early days, she had like fucking your black eyes and like scuffed up.
But like, I think that's again like, it's really cool. It's so cool.
So we come to then our first match today, which was, some may argue maybe a peak, or at least one of the many peaks of the momentum of her career. She takes on Stephanie McMahon Helmsley for the women's title in the first ever Raw main event that featured just women. And Leah's got a few of these to her name. She also main evented Raw with Trish many years in like 2004 as well. And this was kind of unprecedented, unheard of. JR said in his podcast that like loads of the men were come up to him and be like, no, you, like this, you can't do this. Like this is going to like cause an uprising amongst the men or whatever.
You little babies. I love that The Rock is the special guest referee because that like really elevates. This is 2000s, you know, literally the year 2000. The Rock is extremely fucking big right now, and he's like a referee.
I know he's there to like
a women's match. It just really elevates it. And it makes it feel really important.
Yeah, The Rock being there makes it feel important. Stephanie having like Triple H and Kurt Angle as the henchmen, like fabulous.
Massive ego Triple H having like nothing to do here, just standing around at ringside that was kind of healing for me.
Well, Leah said this match was very, very difficult to put together because obviously, you know, she had never been in a main event before. Her wrestling time had still been somewhat limited and mostly in multi-person matches. And Stephanie had done spots, but like the gimmick of her being the women's champion, the whole point of that gimmick was that she never wrestled and she held the belt for like 150 days. Kind of like holding it hostage. Yes, Stephanie McMahon Helmsley was the Death Riders of her day. Does that make Kurt Angle, Marina Shafir? We'll never know. But she said it was really hard to put together because Vince legitimately did not want Stephanie to wrestle.
I don't understand that.
And that I don't understand. Because they'd be down in tracks, run through the matches, and Stephanie like, look, Dad, look what I've learned.
Because that's it. Stephanie definitely wanted to learn.
I don't care. I don't want to know.
Would you not want to, like, protect your daughter? Like, she'll look better on screen if she knows what she's doing, and she'll wrestle safer if she knows what she's doing. What an odd man he is.
There's something so cool about when this match starts that the fans are like, they're literally rumbling like they're about to see one of the biggest fucking things in the world. That I fucking love, considering like the time point where it was, you know, for women's wrestling. And seeing all the people come over to Lita at the start, like Triple H and Kurt Angle, they get in her face, they try to intimidate her. I remember when I was watching, I could actually tell Triple H comes over to her and you can literally see, he goes, just breathe, relax. Aww. It's okay. And she has to look at him like, you bastard.
Shit.
It's like big fucking spot to be put in, but like rising to the occasion. But like just everything when Lita comes out, the pants, the pose, the look, the way the audience react to her, the fact that Jerry Lawler going, look at that underwear, is somehow adds to the entire electricity of the event.
No, it doesn't, Kevin. Do you really mean that?
I think, like, there's something about the fact that Jerry loses the run of himself adds to the Lita character. I say this because as you're saying, she is a hot babe, right? That much is undeniable. But the fact that like Jerry Lawler reacts that way makes it kind of go like, yes, she is a hot babe, but she still acts this way and is kind of above this kind of rhetoric, even if Jerry Lawler and all the people out there are being like, wah! So I guess it's kind of an acknowledgement of her status amongst the male fans or whatever it is.
So what's your answer to my question? Do you think he added to this match?
Nah,
Because if you say yes, I've got a follow-up question.
well, that depends on what your definition of match is. Yeah, I'm going to go. Yes.
Okay, so do you think we should be doing that sort of commentary today? Maybe in AEW, maybe with Chris Statlander?
No, that is for JR's Twitter feed and Twitter feed. No, I think it's changing times.
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
honestly.
I think it never worked. I think it's always been shit. I think it's never been funny either. Because, like, it's one thing to be, like, a weird, horny creep. But, like, get some proper jokes. Don't fucking read it out of a shitty joke book from, like, the 50s. It's lame as hell. It's just lame. That's it. It's lazy and lame.
The real bad material's coming in a later match, folks. That's all I'll say. Well, there they are. Triple H, Kurt Angle, and Stephanie McMahon Helmsley. The world's most dysfunctional polycule.
I like the idea of them being a polycule. I ship Stephanie and Kurt Angle a little bit. In character, I mean.
I fucking love that the second this match starts, Triple H tries to, like, interfere, tries to trip up Lita, and then the Hardy Boys are like a bullet out of a gun, like, bleh, leave her alone.
I love that, but we didn't really see it because the camera missed it. Yeah, the camera was on Kurt Angle, like, distracting The Rock or something.
The perils of live
we
television.
missed the sick move from Triple H.
Stephanie McMahon on offense is quite a thing to see. She is
Her father's daughter.
her father's daughter. I don't think there's an athletic bone in her body, but
Nope.
she's also her brother's sister. So
Yeah.
she's an extreme tryhard, and there's big, look at me, I can do the DDT and all that. Seeing two people in the ring who are definitely in over their heads, but managing to like not lose the crowd and keep it going all the way. That kind of it's like my secret sauce that I love in wrestling so much. It's like, yeah, great wrestlers and all that. I love great wrestlers. I love great matches. I don't see in 2025, man. I see great wrestling all the time. And there's something to be said for like those electric magic moments where two genuinely not great wrestlers come in the ring, they touch, and the crowd are like, ah!
Yeah.
And boy, they want to see Stephanie get beat up by Lita in the best way possible.
Yeah, these two are both so over.
The moonsault is attempted by Lita, but Kurt Angle just knocks her straight off the rope. He gives Stephanie the belt, but The Rock makes himself known and starts beating up on Kurt Angle. Stephanie then tries to hit The Rock in the head with the women's title. He spinebusts her, and then in the best moment of the match, he turns to Lita and goes, "You go up there and do your thing." And Stephanie's really far away, but I think if The Rock points at you and says, "Do it," you'll do anything.
Yeah, you do it.
Like if The Rock pointed at you and goes, "The Rock says turn inside out," I'd be like, "Sure." Like spazzing on the floor. She flies across the ring. Watching Lita do those early moonsaults where I don't think she should be able to do it, she like puts her hands on her knees and you can see her push off with all of her might and weight. Like later years she just kind of stands and just flips back and it's all cool, but man, I don't know. Up there with Terry Funk, I love seeing the struggle with the moonsault. And almost all of her moonsaults are like, "Huh?"
Yeah, they're real near misses. Like every time, it's like she barely gets her head back underneath her in time. Like really scary moves.
A lot of knees to the fucking eye, a lot of feet to the head, a lot of knees to the dick.
Yeah.
Like a lot of guys eat those fucking moves. And yeah, Lita picks up the win. The crowd goes crazy. Seeing Lita and The Rock together is great, but the one downside, and they got in trouble for this apparently afterwards, is that Matt and Jeff in their mind, they're like, oh, obviously we have to get Lita out of the ring because the heels are there, so we have to all run out of the ring together. But then Vince McMahon freaked out because he wanted the shot of The Rock raising Lita's hand and be like, look at the two super mega stars or whatever.
Well, you should have told them that then, shouldn't you, Vince? Because they can't read your mind, you fucking moron.
If I'm going to read your mind, I think you enjoyed this match when we watched it. What are your thoughts on Steph and Lita? Two of the all-time in over their head greats.
I think it's a bit much to say that I enjoyed this match. It was interesting to see. I'm always interested to see wrestlers at the start of their careers.
Yeah.
I think you can tell a lot about a wrestler from their first few matches, like first proper matches. And this is so obviously like, because as we said before, like we go to a local wrestling show that's actually also a training school.
Yeah.
And I feel once you've seen a number of matches from new wrestlers, you start to recognize the moves that they teach you in wrestling school on the first week.
What are those, Joe?
It's just like, well, I don't even know them. I can recognize them, but I wouldn't know to name them. But like, this is very much like Baby's first match, especially for Stephanie, the move she's doing.
Yeah.
It's like, there's the safe punches, which I think Stephanie does an okay, like, punch in a way. She pulls the arm back, which is good.
Yeah.
And it's just the contact. She's
That's
not
it.
quite
That's the problem there,
yeah. And then there's obviously the Irish whip, the gentle clothesline.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a whole bunch of others that are kind of safe, easier to do. And as a result, this match is very slow and it has, zero psychology. But it's interesting. I gave it 2 stars.
Yeah, very nice.
Very nice.
I think what I like most about the match is that we've heard from a lot of people who are tweeting and being like, Lita got as big a pop as like The Rock or Stone Cold or whoever it may be, the stars of the day.
Definitely. Massive, massive pops. Yeah.
And I think we've went on record this podcast, there's loads of times where there's like been someone where it's like, did you know that like fucking Crash Holly or like Tajiri, like these random people will get these nuclear pops during very specific periods of time, but you can always kind of go, yeah, but that's like earlier in the show or wherever it is. Lita getting the pop that she did while The Rock is there, while the Hardys are there, while Kurt Angle and Triple H, all the top stars are all there, and she still gets the Lita chance, the pop that's directed directly at her. I think that's like fucking wow. And she's only been in WWF for like 6 months at this point,
Really?
if even, maybe like a little bit less.
It was wild to me seeing a match that, like, aside from Jerry Lawler's commentary, wasn't about the women being hot.
No, it was about like reclaiming the women's title and stopping someone's stranglehold who doesn't deserve a belt.
Like, again, it's actually quite feminist. Like,
It's
it's very empowering, this match.
Did this match pass the Bechdel test? Is that what you're saying?
Oh, yeah. I think probably it would have done, yeah.
Oh, except for that spot where Lita and Stephanie had to break up their hold and then turn around and go, what does Triple H think about this bit? Damn that one spot. Her reign with the Women's Championship was only like 3 months or there. It was fairly short, like. And, don't want to be the guy who sits here and be like, oh, and then she revolutionized women's wrestling and everything turned out okay.
Yeah.
It's like, she was a really interesting champion and she was a really compelling character on the show, but very apparent quite quickly that she was a bigger star than that women's title or necessarily the women's division was in its own right. They start playing around with more storylines with Team Extreme as a whole, Matt and Jeff and Lita, who get involved in a feud with a group called the Radicals. They had Eddie Guerrero, Perry Saturn, Chris Benoit, and Dean Malenko, who, being the shortest man in the group, I'm assuming, they decided, hey, wouldn't it be great if we paired Dean and Lita up for some intergender wrestling? And a long storyline, quite a long storyline actually, about Dean Malenko's unwanted advances on Lita.
What I find quite funny about stuff like this with intergender within WWE is because the company is run by Vince McMahon, who is sick in the head, he always makes the male wrestlers who do intergender stuff.
They have to be perverts.
Well, that too. I was going to say, like, they always have to be, like, physically small, like short, literally, quite short.
Most of the men at those times who did those intergender matches, like Spike Dudley did some as well, as did Crash Holly, as did Dean Malenko. You must be this tall for you not to be in intergender matches, pal.
But in order to be a professional wrestler in WWE, and as a short man, you have to be fucking good at wrestling.
You be better than the best.
You
right?
do.
Yeah.
You really have to be really good. And that means that often when you get these intergender matches at this time, they fucking own. They're really good. Because, like, thank God you put in a safe pair of hands, like someone really good like Dean Malenko, instead of, like, I don't know, just some random guy who, like, has the right look but can't pull off a good match.
Dean Malenko's appeared here and there on the podcast. On the Eddie Guerrero episode, he showed up for Definite and showed up some ECW stuff.
He's, like, a guy who I used to forget all the time because he's very boring. He's, like Lance Storm, like very like dry, serious, boring man. Could have been an accountant in another life.
Your favorite wrestler's favorite wrestler.
Yeah.
Like, maybe a bit too highbrow for us, the fans.
Well, I think it's like they're the type of wrestlers that you kind of, they grow on you as you watch more and more wrestling and you kind of learn what you like and what you don't like. Because they're the type of guys often who are like perfect in ring.
Yeah, I just funny, like, when you're talking about Dean Malenko, you got a big massive smile on your face.
I love him. He's really grown on me.
He'd had a standout performance on AEW as well. Yeah. That always helps matters. Like, even though the Dean Malenko apparently has a reputation for various things in the wrestling ring. Constant knock-knock jokes.
Oh, really?
Yeah, some funny guy this guy is. And B, I only know this because I watch Stevie Richards' podcast all the time, particularly if there's a clip where it's like him complaining about some great injustice that's happened to him.
That's the whole show, isn't it?
That's why I fucking love it, Joe. But Dean was so disrespectful when he was my agent, and he would come over to me and he wouldn't even tell me the finish of the match, and I'd be like, Dean, who's going over? And he'd roll his eyes at me. That's so disrespectful. Can you imagine if like that's the egos that are involved in wrestling? And I bring up the fact of egos because like Stevie Richards, I love Stevie. He's one of my faves. He's always been one of my faves in all of his various guises. But like, you shouldn't be asking who's going over in a match, man.
I don't even know much about Stevie, and I know he's a joke character in every company. Like even in ECW, where it's mostly joke characters. Like anyway,
but he
was
the clueless putz. I think that was very much underscored in the Raven episode.
And even here with like Lita, like a lot of the intergender stuff that happens, like he's one of the schmucks who ends up having to,
getting his ass kicked or whatever. Dean Malenko, though, like, you know, you all know, like, if you're approaching these wrestlers, there's the way to do it, which I found out from Stevie, which is Arn Anderson, a long-time fan of his on the podcast.
I love Arn Anderson.
If he was your agent and you were a jobber, he'd come over and be like, hey there, got a little match here on the format sheet, we're going to look it over right now. And he'd adjust his glasses and be like, hang on a second.
There's something wrong here.
That ain't right. Huh.
Like do a double take, like you're looking at the bill at the end of the restaurant. Like,
I know I've had a little bit of touch of the Alzheimer's, but I almost forgot who went over in the match. What, Stevie, do you mind putting Val Venus over tonight?
I'm so sorry.
I'm so sorry. They're asking me to do this for you. Do you really mind doing it? Like, no, that's okay. I don't mind, Arn.
I'll do it for you, Arn.
I'll do it for you, Arn. I respect the Horsemen and everything you've done in the business. I just say that.
Gentle Arn Anderson. Tucking you into bed and giving you a kiss on the forehead.
And Arn's there like, I've got my gun if you need anything else. Thank you, Arn. I'm all tucked in bed now. But like, you know, I just seeing that clip randomly this week kind of put in perspective a lot of it, because, you know, wrestlers, even the ones who you might consider like a battle-hardened jobber, I would think is a wrestler who has to have zero ego.
Yeah.
That the only way to be a battle-hardened, like, bottom-of-the-card guy or girl is that you do not care if you win or lose, you're there, you do the job, you do it really well, and people can rely on you as a safe pair of hands. Hence why Scotty 2 Hotty was there for as long as he was.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's actually, even the lowest tier wrestler has got an ego, for sure. And they've got pride in what that should and shouldn't be done to them. That's why it's so awesome that a wrestler like Dean Malenko, who by his peers would be considered one of the best on the roster at the time, like in ring, is like selling for Lita, taking big bumps, taking moves, coming on the short end of the stick quite often. You know, that's pretty fucking magnanimous, I guess, in some respects.
Yeah, he's very generous performer, I think. I always have mad respect for the men at this time who are willing to have matches against women and put them over, because I just think like, you have to have such a frail ego to not do that.
But like Test and Albert, like those matches, we watch a bunch of the intergender matches with TNA and Trish versus the Hardys and Lita, and like Test, who's like 6'7" and is like, you know, meant to be perhaps a top guy in waiting, and like big top prospect Albert, these guys like fucking 6'7", 6'8", and they're twirling around, taking huge bumps for her, like getting knocked on their ass. Like, I always thought it was very cool that she was very gracious and like kind of goes out of her way to be like, part of the reason I got over was because, you know,
she
doing cool moves on men, like
for their inverted commas sacrifice, rather than working under the assumption of like, I fucking owed this shit.
There's a lot of stuff with the Dean and Lita angle. I think the first match that they have, which ends in her like tapping her out, and the rule is like, hey, if you win this match, you get to go on a hot date with the babe you've been stalking.
Oh, that's it. They have to ruin it, don't they?
But you say ruin it. The sequence of vignettes where they go to, it's actually the steakhouse beside Madison Square Garden that they went to.
It's always that. Either that or Tim's Bar. That's it. Those are the two locations they go to.
I got free steaks there, sway.
Dean Malenko rocks up for his hot date with Lita, and it's like, this is some of my favorite skits that they have ever done, because Lita, like, it's one of the first times you get to see her out of a wrestling ring, talking, being a character.
It's the first time I think I've ever seen her in a dress and heels.
Yeah, the idea as well, like him showing up like for the date, she's like wearing this dress and heels, kind of like, you know, this isn't Lita as you know her.
No, she's like looking uncomfortable in it.
And Matt and Jeff are like, are you sure you want to go through with this? I'll go on the date with Dean instead if you won't.
She goes on the date because she lost a match.
Yes.
To Dean. Was that the stipulation?
That was the stipulation.
Why? Why would you, I don't understand why she'd agree to that.
her story is unfortunately, and a lot of the times the stories they would give her, it's like people remember these cool moments, but like the beats along the way,
yeah.
I swear to God, it's like they were actively working against her. There's a bit I'll tell you now in a second that'll fucking blow your mind.
No.
But yeah, they have this like this taste.
She orders the whole menu.
That's the best thing. He's
love
like,
that,
order
'cause
what you
she's-
like, baby.
yeah.
And then she comes back and she's got like fucking lobster,
That's it.
2 steaks.
Because, as Gone Girl said it so eloquently, if you're a cool girl, you have to eat the whole menu, but be extremely thin.
She did it!
She did it.
But yes, this large appetite extends to the bedroom. She invites Dean back up.
Why? That doesn't make any sense.
Because it's a classic Hardy Boys Team Extreme setup,
Oh,
Joe. The
that
lights
makes
go
sense.
on. Dean's like, I like it with the lights off. And she's like,
What?
I like it with the lights on. Turns the lights on. Champagne, Dean. Bam! They beat him up and it's like awesome. The cool friends bandy together to beat up this pervert and humiliate him.
Yeah.
Great stuff.
I feel like she's giving Dean mixed messages there.
Well, you want to talk about mixed messages?
Yeah.
Like literally a week or two later, they had her appear in WWF New York, and like I this is so funny. I randomly on the Out Here podcast when Lita first appeared, Adam mentioned this as being like seeing it as a kid and being like, that's not what Lita does. Because he would have been, a couple of years younger than me, so a proper little babby at this time.
Yeah.
But in WWF New York, the restaurant that they have, they would broadcast from there, during the show and be like, hey, what's happening at WWF New York? Someone's there. Lita showed up for 3 segments in, like, red lingerie, being like, oh, Dean Malenko doesn't know what he's missing. And the idea being that she's teasing him. And she, like, in many interviews since, she's been like, why would I be teasing him?
Yeah.
And why would, like, after he beat me up in a ring, like, he did so many moves to her. In random matches, they would contrive a way that Dean Malenko would, like, tiger bomb her or put her in the clover leaf or whatever it is. Like, and it's stuff like, Dean's a fucking snappy wrestler. Everything looks devastating.
Yeah.
So she's like, he's been, like, trying to decapitate me. Like, he's fucking knocked me loopy. He, like, nearly broke me in half and I got my revenge on him. So, like, why am I, like, now trying to get more revenge on him in a way that I
it makes
never would?
no sense. And it's so frustrating because they've never learned their lesson with that. They still do
They
that
don't
shit
get it.
to this day. It's because I think it's literally just when you've got a company ran by, like, horny men.
That's it. And, like, it feels now so often when these, like, great beats of the story, it's like Leah's so lucky that people managed to kind of forget some of the bits along the way because... God, there's a creepy bit in her book where she was like, she was clearly really nervous doing it and like uncomfortable, and like the fans who were there, they all felt really uncomfortable as well because you weren't expecting them to be like woo and catcalls and whistling, but because she was Lita and cool and they were all super fans, they all felt mad. Like they could tell she was not wanting to do it, so they're all kind of like yay. Like, and when you're making horny Azure fans feel like this is awkward and disrespectful, you've done your sexy bit wrong.
Yeah.
Stephanie McMahon came up to her afterwards, though, to give her praise about what a great performance she did.
What, in her lingerie?
Yeah, when you looked nervous when you were taking off your robe, we all thought that was such an amazing touch. And she was like, nah, I looked nervous because I was nervous. And I was uncomfortable because I was uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But again, like, as soon as they hit gold with like, hey, you've managed to find a girl who doesn't fit into a normal box.
Yeah, she's not
different.
overly sexualized. How can we, like, cash in on that? Let's overly sexualize her.
Put her back in the box.
Yeah.
We taped it shut really tight and she couldn't get out.
Then they're confused as to why it's not working anymore. What's wrong? What's
The box isn't moving anymore.
What if we put some air holes in it, Dad?
That could possibly work. I'm not really sure though.
So the end of this angle comes with Lita challenging Dean once again for a one-on-one match. This time she manages to win, but only because Matt Hardy comes in and lays out Dean with a chair. But we got to this point for perhaps, in my mind, even with all the dark-sided stuff that's happened afterwards, the greatest kiss, perhaps, in wrestling history. Perhaps.
you gotta keep that. That's a new term you've just coined.
History.
History.
I'm going to get a cease and desist from Gene Simmons. That's what they were going to call the segment when WCW brought in Kiss, and now that's history as well. Oh no, I said it again!
This kiss is very sweet.
Yes, I was very happy to find early doors in my relationship with Joe what constitutes a good hot kiss. Because I'm like, kiss is a hot kiss, what, with like lots of tongue or whatever it is?
I think there's a difference as well between a hot on-screen kiss and a hot
passionate
kiss that you're in like part of.
Yes, if you're...
'Cause
Yeah.
I'm sure like there's a lot of kisses that feel very nice, but probably don't look very nice.
Yeah, I'd say if I was to rank my top 5 kisses with you and anyone saw them, they'd be like, you're fucking disgusting. How dare you? How, like... Not fit for you. They'd be heel kisses. Most people who think they're a nice, passionate kiss, it's a heel kiss that edgingly it would be doing, isn't it?
Yeah.
But you showed me. I think it was it New Girl?
Yep,
it was
New
in.
Girl, my
Joe's like,
favourite
look,
kiss.
this is how you do the hot kiss, and it's a simple. She gets twirled around and pulled in.
No, it's not
Bam!
simple. Kevin, you're oversimplifying it. Jess and Nick, they're roommates. They've known each other for years. He's kind of like a gross, smelly boy, and she's like, a primary school age teacher, so she's like quite, high functioning and stuff. And they're always arguing and things, but in a kind of playful way. And
But when you say smelly boy, what do you mean by that?
when they have like this big argument in the hallway, and it's like really tense, and you're like, oh, this is weird. There's like something in the air. And then as she storms off, he grabs her by the arm, pulls her back in, and like, look, it's
takes
just,
charge,
you just
man.
have to see it. It's the best kiss ever. And I found a detail about it the other day. The actor who plays Nick, he was apparently given direction from the director. I'm like, this is how I want you to kind of do this kiss, because this is the big, this whole show has been building to this relationship moment. He was like, I know how to kiss a woman. Trust me. And then he pulls out the fucking best kiss on television. It's
Goddamn.
oh, it's so passionate. And yeah, this is not that kiss, but not in a bad way. This is a gentle kiss.
I fucking loved. I remember being so happy when this happened.
Yeah.
Like there was 2 moments in wrestling I remember where I'm like, I'm happy and this is sweet and nice as a kid. There was like when Tess and Stephanie were like, we're getting married, and I was like, yay, Mom, Andrew and Stephanie, that's his shoot name. They're getting married. But when Matt and Lita kiss finally, oh my god! So like he helps her win the match, she wins the match. Big celebration afterwards. They
They're
have
just
a
like,
hug, celebrating
smiling at each
and
other.
then Matt's like, "Wah," and he gives her a kiss, and then immediately he's like, "Oh my god, that was wrong," aka disrespectful.
And it's not the type of kiss you see in wrestling normally, which is the heel kiss, which is the slobbery making out.
No, this
with
is like
tongues.
kind of electric.
It's a quick peck on the
Yeah.
lips, like they'd done it 100 times before, but forgotten that moment that they were in public.
Yes, and he walks away. He's like, "Oh, I'm stupid. The great thing about it is, like, if you're a smart mark and you're like, I know they're going out already, you can view it as like, we agreed to keep our relationship secret.
Yes.
Or if you're like me at the time, it's just a super mark, just being like, they've always been close together, and I figured, like part of the appeal of them was that they weren't romantic, but as you've been on the journey with them, and they'd had all the crazy moments and all that, them falling in love, as it felt like, and this moment of like, both have adrenaline. She walks back up the ramp where he's his head in his hands going, oh no, I fucked it, I really like this girl. And she spins him around, and then they have
That's
this big
when
fucking
They
make out.
have the fucking, passionate kiss of
Hell
like,
yes.
no, I'm not angry, you haven't ruined everything, I'm really glad you feel this way.
It's not that, it's the opposite of that.
It's
Yes.
so sweet. It's really nice.
The fans pop like they've seen the world title change at WrestleMania. Like, that's something I love about wrestling, that I wish we as wrestling fans could kind of like collectively acknowledge that like some of the best moments, like wrestling in the ring is an art form and fabulous and all that, but like when you can contrive a moment of pure emotion like that, kind of out of thin air, it's not because everyone in the audience were like, oh, I know those two are together, or they were like like it was like, oh, when is he finally going to kiss her? That was it. It was not that at all. It was just, here's a great little bam out of the blue moment.
Yeah.
Which when you hear it, you go, man, them folks at WWE just know how to tell a story. They make dreams. They make movies. 2 weeks later, they come over. They're like, you're against the Hollies in a 6-person tag match tonight afterwards. Can you make out with Matt like you did before? And they're like, why? They go, because it'll be like before. I'm like, very often you get reminded that the writer's room is full of people who maybe weren't routinely kissing folks. No. That the reason why everyone popped and thought it was spectacular wasn't because, hey, look at the tongues go. It was because it was a romantic spur of the moment.
Yeah.
And they're like, if you do this, we'll become heel. Because, like, hey, atta girl, you kissed her. That's 1 week. Week 2, it's like, it's the heel couple making out in front of everyone.
Yeah, that's it.
That's why we have a strict no making out in front of our friends policy. And look. We all love the Hardy Boys. And we all love fan-made videos back in the day. We all like the ships that were not, as it were. And boy, oh boy, was I having some hard times here at Podcrabs HQ when my wife was insisting that she shipped Jeff Hardy with Lita more than anything.
It's true. I do.
okay, this is clearly as like a just as the characters on screen. We're not talking about the top down perspective of Jeff Hardy. What is
A
it?
little bit in real life, but not an educated ship because I don't really know much about Jeff. So this is more like my ship is based on purely how good they look together.
Okay.
Rather than I think they'd actually be a good match. Because what I know about Lita and the tiny bit I know about Jeff makes me think they would never work.
Yeah, so they did actually tease that happening at one point.
That's awful.
Where, like, you know, and this is the problem, is like, when WWE are like, hey, you've got a relationship, and the fans react to it, let's make drama. They kind of usually go to the similar well over and over again, which is like, okay, no one wants to see a happy couple all the time, so we have tension.
I hate that so much. I think there's so much ripe, fertile ground to have happy couple storylines.
Yeah, without them being heels.
Yeah.
There's very few happy couples who aren't heels. If they are, you don't hear about them. They're not on screen together.
And even if they are heels, I don't think that the heel thing has to be necessarily that they're like in conflict with each other. Like one of my favorite ongoing stories is Triple H and Stephanie, and my favorite part of their story is actually
that they're not married anymore. Is that
I was gonna say is when they're a team.
Yeah.
And it's them against the world.
Yes.
Even when they're bad guys. I love that so much. It's just nice.
I think the reality of it is that, you know, when you have storylines that are based around things like, oh, there's tension in the group, and, you know, oh, maybe like they don't like each other as much anymore. I always wonder, is it the chicken and the egg? Do writers, because they got put together because the writers were like, oh, we saw you together, you look cool together, so we're going to put you on screen together, you know, and then it's like, well, we saw you that you're in a relationship together, you look nice together, so we put you on screen together in a relationship. And I think very much then it's like, oh, maybe a writer saw that Jeff is showing up late all the time, or there's a bit of tension between you guys, or you're not getting on as well as you did like 3 months ago. So we do that as a storyline. And I think once then you're into that weird thing in wrestling where you're kind of like role-playing your own ongoing kind of struggles and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like, it made for some weird vibes. They did, like, during one of these many, like, teasing the Hardy Boys are going to break up moments, they, like, wanted Jeff and Lita to kiss. Like, you know, Matt had, like, you know, yelled at Lita and be like, oh, I hate, you know, I don't like you anymore, we're going to break up. And then, like, the next scene, they're like, and then Jeff comes in and kisses her. And they think that's going to get a face reaction.
From who?
And
like,
Jeff
for
is
who?
like, I stole my brother's girlfriend. I'll be a villain if I did that.
Fucking shit. And she'd be fucking.
Oh yeah, that's it.
my
He'd
God.
be no villain.
He'd
She'd be the villain.
Just destroy. It would absolutely ruin. That's the thing I don't understand about.
Hey, look at this golden egg I've got. Whoa!
Yeah.
Hey, throw it over here. Go along. Hey, I bet I could throw that golden egg over a pub roof. Fucking idiots.
That's it. You've got such a profitable woman here, such a brilliant gimmick icon.
Hook you straight up to the mainstream. Like, she was one of those characters, like those people where it's like, oh, WWE must be clued in and in on the mainstream. Look at her.
Yeah.
She's cool. And it's like, no, it's full of a bunch of lads in their 60s and 70s
You don't get why she's cool.
Leave It to Beaver references
Yeah.
and shit like that in their promos.
But that's it. I feel like they're so wrapped up with, like, you know, they're probably working like 60-hour weeks or whatever, so they don't have time to like really enjoy wrestling or actually think about it at all. Instead, they're just like, oh, what's the next beat of the story? How can we make the next moment? Like, they don't care about consistency or a good story at all, because like it makes no sense. It would be so worthless.
And that's why Joe didn't like the main event of WrestleMania 41. You can hear all that on our Patreon page.
But it's wild. Like, they'd never do anything like that with The Rock. It's never like, oh, like, The Rock is so over. Let's ruin everything he stands for.
As popular as the women are, like, I think their position was always much more precarious. And the same with tag teams. And like a lot of the times, like, where Team Extreme were so over, it's in a time where Vince McMahon notably doesn't like women on his show, and he doesn't like want to push the women, and he doesn't want to push the tag teams, and they are like a combination of a woman and a tag team. So there was a bit of a sense once they came into like 2001, like post WrestleMania, that they were maybe floundering a little bit, because they'd done all their, you know, epic feuds with the Hardys and Edge and Christian and all that. They weren't like expanding the women's division that much. So Lita and them were kind of left spinning their wheels somewhat. And I think that's probably why they inevitably were like, what if we tease them breaking up? They're one of the few teams that had like two massive teases that they were going to break up, and then they just kind of, they left it. They didn't address it. She went on Fear Factor during this time, and they were like, because on storyline, you are having a falling out with Matt and might be interested in Jeff. You can't be together on screen.
Her and Matt?
Yeah.
Oh.
So, like, anytime they'd be doing a stunt on Fear Factor, Joe Rogan's like, hang on a second, Matt, you have to move like 3 spaces down. Lita, 3 spaces up. The people, like, WWE were like, had a producer being like, no, they can't be together.
Wow.
It's like,
old school.
Yeah, but like, no one wants that. Like,
No,
it's
no one
so
cares.
weird. Like, they got really angry with her because like she did her stunt. She climbed up a ladder into a helicopter and she jumped into his arms because she was proud she did it.
Aw.
And they're like, no, you can't do that. Like, remember, he hates you. You might want to kiss his brother instead. If you were a girl watching this and you were a fan of Lita this time, you'd be fucking fuming, right? I think they would have lost a lot of fans with shit like that, being like, I don't know, just kind of flippant with it, you know?
Well, yeah, because as a girl, and especially as the cool girl in a bunch of boys, part of like that process is you have to have really thick skin because it's like it's basically an in-joke and a meme among like culturally that if you are that role, that means you like sleep around.
Yeah.
It's just like you have to put up with jokes like that as like the girl or whatever. And so then having a character that is that and then might then go on to betray her partner.
Well, as we
or
see
whatever.
later on, like, people react very strongly to that notion, don't they? Yeah.
Because, like, you know, it's not her fault that she represents, like, an entire type of girl.
Yeah.
But she does, and that type of girl is going to take something like that very personally because it affects them in real life.
So she is given, you know, superstar status at this point. A big part of it was because China was leaving. And all of a sudden, the top dog in terms of women, the most marketable woman, the woman who would start appearing on all the posters, the woman who would be like, you know, sent out to do loads of appearances and whatnot, it's Lita. So she ends up being kind of top girl in the company, so to speak. Not that that was kind of like necessarily her goal or anything like that, but she did get offers for things like, oh, do you want to do Playboy? Oh, do you want to, you know, do this, that, and the other? There is a chapter in the book where she talks about how much she hated being on the Big Breakfast in the UK.
Yeah, she said it was really mean.
Yeah, Johnny Vaughan was rude to her, like, who'd have thought, like, and they got in trouble because he made her push someone into a pool and they had, like, all mic equipment on them and stuff like that.
That's dangerous,
Isn't it?
right?
But one of the many opportunities that came her way, and she said in the book, it's like, sometimes you get opportunities where they're like, do you want to do this? Like Playboy. And other times there's opportunities where it's like, you're going to do this.
Right.
Nod, nod. So when you find out that the James Cameron is moving from movies to TV to make a TV show called Dark Angel, and he wants you, Lita. He's seen your stuff on TV. He wants you to be like the main villain in one of the main episodes of season 1 with Jessica Alba.
Now, forgive me because Avatar hadn't been released at this point. It hadn't even been, well, maybe had been conceived. I know he worked on it for like 1 billion years. What had he done before this?
Titanic, Terminator 2, Aliens, you know,
Big
name.
movies.
Oscar name.
Like most profitable movies of all time at that point type thing.
Yes, and, you know, household name as a director.
Right.
And, hey, what a surefire way to strap a rocket to make mainstream appeal. One of our WWE superstars is handpicked by the James Cameron to be in a TV show.
Wow.
Amazing. How cool is that? Playing a super-powered warrior, head of a group of warriors in the post-apocalyptic world who want to kill Jessica Alba's character by any means necessary. She possesses the strength of 2.5 women. Fantastic. Stunt day is, you know, going to involve her doing one of her moves. James Cameron rings her on the phone to be like, hey, we love your character, we want to incorporate your moves, what could we do? And she's like, I don't know, I could do like a Hurricanrana or a moonsault. He's like, yes, we can make crates and boxes be like the ring post. As soon as he said that, I'm like, uh-oh.
Oh, no.
Uh-oh. So she heads down to Canada for like a week of shooting on this Angel set, meets the stunt coordinator and meets Jessica Alba's stunt double.
Right.
Who, you know, Jessica Alba, small, teeny lady.
Yeah, she's like 5 foot.
Small lady, yeah. Not saying Alita is particularly tall or anything like that. I mean,
No, just Jessica Alba is tiny.
yeah. So they walk through what they want to do. The crash mat comes out, and they're like, right, we're going to do a bit here in the episode where you jump off the table. You're going to do the Hurricanrana, and you're going to knock it down to the ground nicely into the crash mat and all that.
Right.
Stunt woman's never done any wrestling before, so Lita's like, right, you know, obviously.
Never done any wrestling?
Well, why would she? She's a stunt woman. Like,
I guess I just always assumed, given wrestling's impact on action movies, because like it's hard to watch an action movie.
Closed worlds, yeah.
I guess, but like in most action movies, there's a sequence of events which involves wrestling moves. I just kind of assumed that there would have been a bit of training in that in stunt school, where you do kind of like hands-on.
I mean, certainly as the years have went on, like for
But
sure.
not then.
But I guess it's like kind of, you know, you're talking about big Hollywood productions. This is kind of, you know, this is a TV series that's being made in Canada, so perhaps maybe there's not, like, I wouldn't expect anyone to know anything about wrestling, even if they were in something you could kind of draw parallels with or whatnot.
Yeah.
Hey, they can't all be Terry Funk on the set of Rocky V, can they?
Seriously.
So she is told, Lita's going to be coming down on you. I'm going to feel all my weight on your shoulders. You need to twist your body, and then we'll roll together. That's how you do the Hurricane Rana, apparently.
Oh my god, it's so scary that she was doing this with someone who'd never done it before.
And we've seen a lot of very fucking cool Lita Conradas, let's just say, in watching for this. She goes up to do it immediately. Like, as soon as like Lita's legs hit this woman's shoulders, she drops her. Like, her legs buckle. It's not like, oh, I don't want you. It's just kind of like, I can't take you.
Yeah.
Slips. Bam, Lita's head doesn't even come near the crash mat because they don't pivot. They're meant to pivot and spin. So she gets dropped right on the concrete floor. She breaks her neck in 3 places, ruptures 2 discs. Not that she knew that for, I think, like 3 months or thereabouts until she actually finally got the answer to that. So this, like, oh boy. We made the mistake of watching, there's a WWE Confidential episode that catches up on her when she has her neck broken. She's out for a year and 15 months or thereabouts with the broken neck.
And they talk to kind of her surgeon, and they talk a bit about the neck fusion and the surgery and everything. And you get to see, they ask Lita about, like, how's her recovery going? How's she feeling about things? And she looks unrecognizable.
She is so sad. Both Joe and I literally had tears in our eyes watching this bit because we'd spent like a bunch of weeks watching all this cool shit this cool lady did. And we know she's fine and all that now, and she came out the other end of this, but just seeing how broken she was to go from like the full non-stop freight train of like a year and a half on the top of WWF and then be like, by the way, you're going to spend more than that time on the shelf with a broken neck. You may never walk again. You could be paralyzed. And hearing her like break down and trying to fight back tears when she's like, the highlight of my week is waiting for like Matt Hardy to come home. And it's like, and she's like, that's so pathetic because like the highlight of my week shouldn't be like waiting for someone. And he feels weird that, you know, there's all that expectation put on him and all that.
Yeah, because I imagine for her, a massive part of this injury being really difficult is that she can't wrestle. But I think more than that, it's that she just can't go out and live her life because she's such a voracious like, she likes to experience life to the full. She's always doing like a bajillion things. I mean, we'll talk about like what she's up to now. Like, even still to this day, she's doing crazy stuff constantly. So being like homebound for like a year and a half or whatever, that must have been so hard.
And particularly because, you know, she had said a lot of those interests that she had, like, she kind of had forgotten who she was before wrestling.
Yes, the thing.
She'd be like sitting around going, like, what did I do before I was a wrestler? I can't remember.
I think that's really common in wrestling. I know it's come up a lot in the podcast of wrestlers feeling very lonely, like getting very isolated when they are injured at home because all of their friends are on the road. They haven't got time for them now, and they don't really have any friends outside.
She'd watch wrestling, but it would obviously make her upset because she's seeing the things she can't do, and she's seeing all the people she misses and all that. Yeah. So that on its own was like sad, depressing. Again, like we were very affected by it. It was really, really like really fucking. Probably some of the most gut-wrenching content WWE has ever actually captured. Because you've seen people talk about injuries before, but I've never seen someone like so scared and just like miserable about it and kind of worried and whatnot about what's going to happen. It's always like kind of, hey, I broke my neck, but like I'll be back, I'll be better, don't you worry.
Yeah.
But it's seeing the vulnerability on this fearless character.
I think part of that, it comes from the road she had to go on to get to even getting that operation.
Yeah.
Because like for what I found most upsetting about this whole series of events here is just like how she was treated immediately after, like in the aftermath of the accident. Oh my God. And then how the doctors treated her as well. It's just like, oh my God.
It's shocking in so many ways. Like if you've not been a woman or haven't accompanied one to a doctor's appointment or had any female friends who have been to doctor's appointments, the whole kind of thing about not being taken seriously.
It's true. It's real.
It's true. It's endemic. It's widespread. Yeah. But like, how she told their reaction on this big fucking production about her breaking her neck. I don't know if I've told the story, but when I was 10 years old, we went on a school trip, went to like a bunch of different places, one of which was like, oh, it's an adventure center. And there was like, it was like a Paul Heyman run adventure center. Oh. It wasn't the safest thing in the world. At one point, we were literally climbing up slippery rocks beside a waterfall, and I slipped. Wow. And I fell, and bam, landed. And I remember at the time thinking, if Mick Foley was falling, remember he turned in the Hell in the Cell. Mm-hmm. And I'd just seen the Hell in the Cell, like, not that long prior. So I turned, I landed on my arm, and I could hear the crack. I literally broke my arm straight away. Mm-hmm. And instead of like all the teachers being like, oh my God, what's happening? Quickly get him home. We were on stop 2 of a 5-stop trip. So instead what happened was I landed, went, ah! And like, clearly everyone could hear my arm break.
What does a kid know?
No, you don't say it that evening. You kind of go, oh! You all right? Yeah.
Yeah, you're all right, though, aren't you? Yep.
Because
yep.
if you
You're
say
big and strong.
if you say, oh no, it's not. Like, if you tell me not to worry, or if you tell me like, you know, even you saying it, what I think is a big deal is not a big deal, would acknowledge that there is a big deal to talk about. It was no solds on like one of like to the point where I remember like later on we were like in some like crazy golf course and my arm was like I couldn't move my arm. It was so swollen. It hurt my neck. It was so fucking sore. I remember being like, no, I think I'm okay actually.
Yeah.
I think I'm all right. I think, you know, many weeks later, there was serious discussions. I remember like the school being like, "Can you like be sorry the day we did that?" But like, you know, I charred that up to like teachers being over their heads, the lax laws around child safety, perhaps in the year 1998 in rural Ireland, and you know, whatever. I don't hold ill will for it, but like she's on a set full with James Cameron and loads of people who probably have a lot of insurance and whatnot, and they when she falls, they just wait for her to get up. They don't even go, ooh. They just wait and they're like, okay, we're going to go, we'll back to your trailer, we're going to go, and then that's it, you know.
As soon as she broke her neck, she could feel something was terribly, terribly wrong.
Yeah, she couldn't move. She needed
couldn't move,
people
that was
like,
it,
to stand her up.
And
she
couldn't pull herself up, so she just lay on the floor basically for, I think it was like half an hour or something, while apparently just everyone
moved around her,
Everyone just kind of stood around chatting like, oh, well, she'll be okay, until eventually she had to be like, please, I can't sit up. Can someone please help me up?
They literally have to pry her off the ground.
And like position her like against a wall because she couldn't keep herself upright.
And because she's a super tough wrestler and you got to respect the business and, you know, you're in character and all that stuff, you're representing the brand, so she has to have a stiff upper lip.
Well, you know what?
5 more days on set with a broken neck.
What immediately came to my mind with that was that thing you were telling me earlier about the wrestler who chipped her tooth.
Yeah.
And how she immediately was like, out, weak. No, can't take her seriously because she's too weak. And I think the attitude that Lita had comes as a direct result of working in industries like that, where
There's got to be a middle ground, right?
That's it. You got to look after yourself.
So like she's literally laying down, like can't move in her trailer, and like the stunt woman who broke her neck comes in, is like, "Do you want to do some more stunts, or do you want to read
Should I break
through?
your neck again? Maybe 4 places.
Do you want to like kind of go through the script or anything like that?"
Didn't say sorry. Apparently,
No, never said sorry.
Never said sorry.
She contacts like, is there the stunt coordinator? She's like, I need to see it, like straight, like at least, you know, and you might hear what we're saying, thinking like, well, it's another wrestler stung by their own bravado.
No,
and
that's
trying to be
not
tough.
it. No.
Because in her defense, immediately when she found the stunt coordinator, she's like, I need to see a doctor right now. And the stunt coordinator goes, what's a doctor going to do but pill you up? You'll be no good to anyone. We've got a bunch of local masseuses and stuff that we use around here, and that'll really be the job for us.
Yeah, because it's not a case of her doing this for bravado. She's doing it because she wants to be a reliable pair of hands.
And
she
she's
wants
representing WWF and all this jazz.
She wants to get the work and stuff like that. So, yeah, I think she's just trying to be easy.
Hey, don't worry. Let's send in Jessica Alba to smooth everything over, where she's like, are you okay? Is everything fine? You all right? Look, one time I did a stunt in the show, and I thought that there was something wrong as well. I've got my own kind of chiropractor that I use, and like honestly, he made me better than ever. So like, I know you're worried right now, but like honestly, and then I'm like thinking she's just saying that to make her feel better. Cut to, here comes the chiropractor.
No, are you serious?
And the lady with a broken neck.
By a ghost.
And he cracks her neck, and she drops to the floor screaming in pain. You know it's bad when you're screaming in pain for someone to help you up, and the chiropractor and everyone, like, they walk away because they're like, uh-oh, we've done something wrong. If we do anything more, it's a big problem. Then the first aid coordinator from the set comes on, who didn't even know what was going on because some people were working in their own kind of section.
He has a go at doing chiropractor as well.
And he starts freaking out with her, going, oh my God, oh no. I'm going to get in such big trouble because I should have known about this firsthand. And Leah's literally there with a broken neck, be like, it's okay, don't worry, it's fine, it's all that.
What's so scary to me about the chiropractor think is that, because there are people who've like been paralyzed by chiropractor. It's really risky.
It's
I don't
not
think
usually in an emergency situation what you will
Definitely
touch to.
not.
It's a consultation-led process. Yes.
And as well, it seems to be, depending on the experience of the chiropractor, depends on the type of chiropractic they do. What's so scary to me, though, is the fact that she didn't have any scans done before that.
No.
So, for all we know, she could have just had like a minor fracture.
Mm-hmm. And that could have made it worse.
And he could have made it far worse.
Probably did. I mean, she was in extreme pain. She couldn't move. She goes home that day, takes a bath, the whole time thinking like, a bath will set me right. Then after the bath, it's like, well, maybe a shower will set me right.
Because that's it. If you've been told by experts, you're fine. Just buckle up. Get on with it. Oh, well, okay, I will.
You're inclined to hope that anyway. Then you're So she shows up on set the next day. No one is like kind of even says anything to her that like, hey, you may have actually hurt yourself. No one checked to see if she was okay. The second day, her fingers start turning blue and curling up into her hands. And they're literally doing a scene where it's like, we need you have to shoot this pistol. And they're like, these fingers are like, can you do something about this? And they're like, oh, I'm really sorry that my fingers are like blue and like curled in and I have nerve damage
I'm really
or whatever.
sorry, I'm slowly becoming paralyzed.
Yeah, and they're like, oh, this is ridiculous. They're like, can you just move those fingers so we can get the gun in your hand? Like, we really...
Jesus Christ.
So, like a trooper, she does all 5 days. At one point, James Cameron comes over and just slaps her in the back and goes, ha ha, you are human after all, eh? Implying that, well, I heard you got hurt. And that's funny because I thought you were meant to be this Daredevil Invincible
Which
lady.
again, knowing it's a neck injury, a slap on the back is fucking dangerous.
So, yeah, that's Leah's experience of the set of Angel.
But that's not even like...
No, it gets worse.
It gets worse. It's the doctors and stuff like that. It's like just a fucking shitty icing on the shit cake.
I'm scared that I'm going to have problems with my neck, and I think I've broken my neck. So obviously I'm going to get on a plane and go right down to Texas, where WWE are doing house shows this weekend. Flight from Canada down to Texas. She's talking about it the whole time, like she's not wearing a neck brace or anything like
carrying
that.
heavy bags.
Carrying bags. Airplane landing if you've got traction, like literally every movement of the plane she was like screaming and like going, and the people beside her on the plane were like, what's wrong with this lady? Is she possessed by a demon or something like that? Anyway, shows up to the house show, everything's going to be fine and all that, and like literally like WWE like, hey, you're back, hey. So she's like booked in segments and doing stuff. Now I swore to God it would have been like caught quite quickly, where it's like, oh, you've hurt your neck, oh damn, we'll figure that out.
Yeah, you'd think in wrestling,
with WWE
being a
as
wrestler,
well,
yeah, it's like, well, that happens all the time. But I guess this is
a lot of top stars by 2001, a lot of top stars including Austin, Rhino, Chris Benoit, Edge, like all these guys that had neck surgeries and stuff. I guess Edge was coming slightly later, but like, neck surgery and neck problems were a big prominent issue in WWE.
Yeah,
they were the concussions of their day, in that they were taken very fucking seriously. So the idea then that they were like, yeah, we'll do a couple more segments. She came out on Raw, like she said that like, there's a Raw where she's out in the ring and she has to like she put her hand in her belt loop, because otherwise her arm just like she had no move, like her arm would just float around, like she had no control over it.
God.
They had her do a segment where Paul Heyman is going through her underwear and she has to slap him, and she's like got a broken fucking neck, and she's like, if I don't do a good slap on him, everyone's going to say it's so she has to slap him really hard and makes it fucking worse. So during all of this, she finally is given a scan. She has to go down the same time Kane's getting a scan. You'll go down, you both get a scan. She goes to get a scan. They're like, yeah, looks like it's just swollen. You're all right. They gave her some anti-inflammatories. Off you go. And she's still feeling bad, really bad. And she said she took like 17 planes between getting the neck break and actually getting the proper help she needed.
Yeah.
17 planes.
And it's all that stuff that I find really, really, really frightening to think about, because like you just don't know what damage you're doing to your body in that time period when you've been told, no, it's not a really bad injury, it's fine, I just need to work through it.
I will never forget when I came home from the hospital after I got my cast from that experience I was telling you about. And my brother and his friend Paddy were there, and I remember my brother being like, oh man, you're a hardcore legend, you walk around with a broken bone. And then Paddy Hanna began to tell me about like, oh, of course, do you remember that Taz, he had a broken neck and he walked to the hospital with a broken neck. It's kind of like, oh, cool, rarefied air. I'm like, God, you know what, me and Taz can go fuck ourselves. 17 flights, 3 months with a broken goddamn neck. So yeah, she gets a kind ear at this point when it's found out that she's struggling and she's not really happy with the diagnosis that she's been given.
Because she's been given a CT scan.
She's given a CT scan,
and it looks fine.
Looks fine. Stone Cold Steve Austin's point, his ears break up and they're like, well, I'll take a look at the old CT scan there. And he's
I feel like Stone Cold is like those cats that can smell cancer, except he's a wrestler that can smell neck injuries.
Yes,
because it's like he just knows.
Yeah, he's had a few and he's caused a few in his day, like, so he's got a sixth sense for this, and he's like, look, I'm not a doctor, but like looking at your scans here, it all looks okay to me, but I figured if you're not happy, you should probably go start looking to get some more help. They set her to go to orthopedic person to kind of like see like, hey, maybe we want to do some kind of physio on you or whatever it is. It's actually the orthopedic surgeons there who saw her scans. They're like, something's wrong here. I think this might be way worse than you and us have been led to believe.
Right.
So she gets an MRI.
Right.
And then once she gets the MRI, doctor comes in and goes, oh my God, you're about to be fucking paralyzed.
Like,
stay,
now.
Yeah, stay there. Like, you're not allowed to pee in the toilet. You pee in the bedpan. If you leave if you sneeze, you could be paralyzed.
Yeah, get in this bed and stay there for however long it takes until the surgery is done.
Yeah, and the surgery will happen in 3 hours, otherwise you'll be paralyzed, and you need to have, from the front, I'm going to drill through your neck, and I'm going to drill through your neck from the back as well.
What?
I'm going to put in a metal plate in the front and a metal plate in the back. Your neck will be fused. You'll no longer be able to wrestle.
Oh my God.
But at least you won't be paralyzed. And, Matt Hardy's like, I've not had any food. And like, Matt was still in his ring gear. He came from a fucking SmackDown or whatever it was. And she was in the hospital with her. So what the fuck do you do in this situation? They're told, like, basically you're a prisoner in the hospital if you don't.
That's it, because as a patient, you'd feel stupid to not listen to the surgeon's advice.
Surgeon tells me something, I'm listening. Unless I have somehow very specific prior knowledge.
But it's the fact that when she recalls this experience, she mentions specifically how rude the surgeon is and how dismissive he is of her when she has questions and worries.
Well, the reason he is like this is that he's outraged at her absolutely idiotic behaviour in his mind, that she has had this neck injury and she's travelled on planes, trains and automobiles since it's happened.
Yeah.
Which I understand.
Yeah, but I think that's misdirected.
It is misdirected.
You need to be angry at the fucking doctors who missed this, not her for doing
or
what
her
she was
employers
told. Yeah, exactly.
Like or James Cameron for that.
Yeah, exactly.
Or
Fucking James Cameron.
Fucking Jessica Alba.
Well, I don't.
It's her fault. She did this. If she wasn't such a fucking pussy and she could take the move like she was meant to, then you wouldn't even had that stunt double in. Oh no, what's happened? The full moon have become the honky tonk man again.
I just remembered another detail about the Jessica Alba James Cameron shit with Lita's neck that we didn't even mention. When they tried after the chiropractic stuff. And they were like, oh, well, we've tried chiropractic, we've given you a massage, and it's just making everything worse, I guess. What else could we possibly try? What could we try?
Isn't there like, ring the hotel? Maybe they have a doctor.
Yeah. Oh, send out the holistic aromatherapy.
Oh, no! That was it. She was lying on her back with a broken neck. They sent in a PA to spray aromatherapy mist in the air.
That'll help the broken neck, sure.
Obviously, they fused my spinal column, C4, C6 vertebrae, and there was a lot of aromatherapy involved in that procedure. Dr. Youngblood, obviously one of the preeminent aromatherapists in the game.
He's in the army, Kevin. They love that shit.
So you're here with your partner. You're told that you're going to be paralyzed. You have to have this scary surgery. Oh, and by the way, your career's over as well. And by the way, you're never able to turn your head ever again.
Yeah, and you have to make the decision right now.
So they get on the phone to the one person who they think might be able to help us out in this situation. Matt Hardy has the bright idea, passes the phone to Leah to ring Stone Cold Steve Austin. Who's at, this is their TV at this point in time.
Yeah.
And oh man, I feel like I'm gonna fucking cry talking about this.
Goosebumps again.
So she's on the phone and Steve's like, hey kid, what's up? And she's like, yeah, and he's gonna drill in my fucking neck. She bursts into tears straight away and he's like, whoa, hang on, we're just two people talking here. Just two people talking. Crying ain't gonna fix this now. Come on, you just tell me what you need to know. And she's like, explains that the guy wants her to do this surgery, what the surgery will entail. And straight away Austin's like, put me on the phone with this guy. So this asshole surgeon gets the phone call, expecting it to be like it's her mom or her brother or whatever.
Fucking Stone Cold
This is Stone Cold Steve Austin. Who the hell is this? Well, basically, I think your diagnosis is a bunch of BS. But quite frankly, I think she should get a second opinion. Haven't you been hearing about the advances made in spinal cord surgery? Vis-a-vis going through the back with a hip graft to replace the compressed discs on the vertebrae? And the guy's like, well, look, if you think you're a fucking expert, you go and do it. You can leave the hospital if you want to, but, sign all the waivers. Yeah. Nonplussed by it. Steve Austin says, right, I'm going to Houston tomorrow, which is where the doctor is based. Get on that flight with WWE. If you can't, me and Deborah have first class tickets. You and Matt can have them. We'll go on a later flight or whatever it was. WWE get them all on the same flight together. Austin takes Lee up in the first class. They sit together and they just, every problem worry you have, talk to me. And the scariest man in wrestling. Who is, by the way, the most recent interaction they had on TV was him brutalizing her with a steel chair and giving her the stunner and all this heinous shit that he did in 2001. And he's like, they go on the flight. He talks her through everything that's going to happen. They go to dinner beforehand. He drives her to the hospital. He goes with her once she has her consultation. And
with his surgeon.
His
trusted surgeon. Dr. Youngblood, who I did look up, because he's pretty amazing.
Pretty prolific in the world of wrestling.
Yeah, he's done a lot of wrestlers. He did Test's neck. He did Rhino's neck. He's done Austin.
Benoit.
Bob
Holly. Jesus.
And that's just just off the top of my head. There's loads he's done.
So yeah, it's like a surgery that is a lot more with the viewpoint of you can be a wrestler still. So the reason is that you have to go through the front and not the back. If you go through the back, you have to cut through a lot of muscle to get to the neck. And if you cut through that muscle, it never grows back kind of the same way. And then if you have the metal plate at the back, it means any back bump that you're taking, you're basically hitting the danger zone times 10.
Right.
So he went in all the way through the front, pulled all the way back here and then went around the back through the front.
Right.
Like, there's footage of her surgery out there because WWE fucking film everything.
Yeah.
And they're literally there with like a
Massive screwdriver. Yeah.
like drilling into her. Take a bit of her hip bone to make new discs for her vertebrae. It's
Wild.
like, it seems space age then, and it's like, that's 2001 or whatever it is.
Yeah, that's probably old fashioned now.
And
Old
in like
hat.
the nicest thing possible, she has the surgery. You know, she wakes up really loopy from the anesthesia and all that. And Scotty Too Hottie, who has also recently had neck problems, he's going in the following week for his neck surgery, and he's really scared and all that. And Leah gets the phone. Matt was talking to him on the phone. She's like, "Give me the phone." She's like, you know, loopy as hell. And she's like, "Don't worry, kid, you're gonna be okay." So the idea of like, look, I know it's obviously horrible that all these wrestlers were having like fucking neck breaks and all that, but like, talk about paying it back or whatever.
That's the thing, because like, one of my favorite things about this whole series of events is that when she's going through that period with WWE where she's got the broken neck but she doesn't know it yet, and they're still booking her on shows, there's a time when she comes in with like her numb arm and she's just like, she's in so much pain, she's like just disassociating basically. And Stone Cold Steve Austin, you know, they're ready to do a match and everything. He sees her from like across the room and it's like he can smell
Yeah, no, something's wrong.
that
Like,
something's,
yeah.
he beelines for her, and the first words out of his mouth are, "What is wrong with you?
Yeah.
What's going on?"
It's crazy,
When
isn't it?
everyone else, like even
I
doctors,
would assume you're fine, yeah.
say, "No, you're fine. All evidence says you're fine." Stone Cold Steve Austin is like, "No, there's something really wrong, and we need to get this fixed."
And Dr. Austin has lots of aftercare as well. He was like ringing her up, being like, "Are you doing your breathing exercises?
Yeah.
Are you making sure you're walking up the stairs so that you don't get blood clots?"
It's cute because it's not just like Steve as well. It seems to be there is this really lovely fraternity of sorts among wrestlers with broken necks. They all have this special relationship and like group chats and stuff. And
It's a pretty unique situation to
It
be in,
is.
to have a neck fusion. Yeah.
but it's wild to me that that's the closest thing wrestling has to a union. It's like the broken neck club.
Oh, check out Taz. He doesn't want to be part of our club. What's the matter? You want to get your neck fused like the rest of us?
Yeah,
Fine.
all right.
Standoffish.
Thinks he's better than
Like,
us.
he's better than us.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is 15 months off, and this happens again later in her career. A comparison to Batista, I guess, where you have reached probably the peak of your notoriety, and we're raring to go here, and then you get a really bad injury and whatnot. It's easy to kind of think that, oh yeah, that's not that long in wrestling, but like, you know, in that time as well, like, you know, I know I speak from someone who was younger then, but WWF like moved.
That time period.
Yeah,
Very
you
fast.
could, like, you hear wrestlers talk about, like, oh, what if they forget about me? And I was like, this is ludicrous here. Like Mick Foley be like, what if someone forgot about me? Like, come on, man.
You're
After-
Mick Foley.
Yeah, after that podcast, we'll never forget you, man. You're a legend. But like, Lita was kind of worried about that, and she was sent out because they were also worried. Oh well, broken neck. She was out doing, you know, autograph sessions, all that stuff, like multiple times a week. Signing autographs with a broken neck, I assume, is just like not a good idea. Like bending over and all that jazz.
Yeah,
I would think not good.
I don't know.
But when Leah comes back, it comes back in 2002. A new Leah, new look. Not the low-rise pants, the thong pulled up and all that. This is new era Leah with the shorts, the big boots, and cool new music and all.
I fucking hate this look so much. Look how they massacred my girl.
You didn't care for this Lita look?
She looks like a brownie leader.
Well, because she's wearing a lot of brown. A lot of the time we saw her, she
No.
was wearing brown.
She was wearing a lot of brown. No, because she's wearing these kind of like boots and like stripy knee-length socks and short brown shorts. Very like, oh, she's a nice girl, isn't she? She's like, you know.
It's not the same look as
not.
yonder.
It's not even in the same subculture.
I love the looks when she's come back in, like, since 2018, stuff like that, where she's kind of like riffed off of her old costume and stuff like that, kind of incorporating
Yeah.
the thong pattern and all that
She's
jazz.
managed to make it kind of a maturer version
Yes.
of that, where it's not just like, oh, this is trendy. It's like, no, this is kind of a more long-term look.
There's definitely frustrations for her, I think, in some respects, because she comes back to a roster that has a lot more women on it. We did actually get to see her in the first ever cage match for women, her and Victoria, who, let's just say Victoria's endeavoured herself so much in this podcast and impressed Joe so much, she'll probably be the next woman we do an episode on, one would think. So in terms of like Leah around this time, she was given a lot more in terms of like storyline and prominence, and there was a lot more characters who had been added to the women's division. Like, you know, you look at 2001 where it's like China's gone and there's no women. I was trying to explain to Joe why there was no women's championship for a lot of Lita's run. It's like, well, because I don't know. I guess they didn't really know what to do with they didn't really know what to do once China left with the belt. They didn't want to kind of put a focus on her or the fact that she left with the belt, so there was no women's title. When Lita comes back, there was. You had Molly and Gail Kim and Jazz and Victoria, who's someone who's impressed an awful lot in this household recently. And we did catch the first ever women's steel cage match as Lita took on fantastic Victoria. And nothing on the line other than the notoriety of being in the first ever cage match for women. They don't do, like, a lot of the women have gotten like all the other kind of gimmicks. We've done Hell in a Cell, we've done TLC. I feel like women rarely get a cage match.
But they have done cage matches?
They have done. I mean, Trish and Becky had one at Payback year before that. That was really good. But it's generally speaking like one of the less opted for. I've grown to love cage matches in my old age, Joe, after hating them forever. I don't know how about you.
I don't think I've seen enough of them. I don't think I particularly love them though. But this is wild to me because it's the first ever women's steel cage match and it's just on Raw.
Yeah.
Is it the main event?
Nope. It's on a Raw that has the roulette wheel with it, so it's random matches, you see.
Okay. I was going to maybe ask that question again. This time you can lie to me.
Okay.
This is the first ever women's steel cage match and it's on Raw. It's in the main event, right?
Well, you see, Joe, we like to think that all the matches in wrestling are the main event.
Thank you,
especially
McFoley.
the opening matches, and especially the matches that have the girls.
Wait, this was the opening match?
No, it's not.
Okay,
it's not. Don't worry.
God.
Don't worry. It's okay. Don't do it dirty like that. Although I will say, Lita's back for 1 week at this point.
Really?
And she's like feuding with the owner of the brand, Eric Bischoff, and she's putting a fucking steel cage match against the cool new wrestler Victoria. Like, that's pretty fucking cool. Like, it is definitely... It was so noticeable as we did or watching as we went for like 98, 99, 00, 01, 02, 03 that like by hook or by crook, even if they didn't get it all right all the time, the women's wrestling was getting better and more a part of the show, I guess. I do like the cage descending around Lita as the crowd chant Lita. Like they're a lot more excited than she seemed to be put into a cage match. Joe screamed out very early doors at Victoria for ripping off Lita's gimmick because we did in fact have a visible thong.
Yeah, it was a G-string actually.
Okay, maybe it's not gimmick infringement.
No, it is
then.
gimmick infringement, I think. Especially because Lita's not doing that look anymore. At this point.
Yeah, I know. It's. I remember like struggling with her new look at this time.
Yeah.
It felt different, and there was a lot of things that were different about her. Like she didn't do the moonsault at this point in time. I remember me and a lot of fans were like, "Oh, because she broke her neck, she can't do this." And then seeing her in 22, like doing it, kick-ass moonsaults. It's like, well, what happened then? And in her, this is again like you're working harder than perhaps they want you to. She was like, well, I've just come back from neck surgery. It should be a journey. Like, Lita, the character, would just come back and start doing moonsaults straight away. Lita, the character, has had her neck broken, as has Amy in real life. So we have to build up to it.
I actually think she's right there.
She is, yeah.
But I think, unfortunately, the combination of doing that with her new look makes it just seem like it's an entirely
new
new
Coke,
character.
like new Lita, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I would have felt like if you had a story where it's like she wants to do the moonsault and you have JR being like, oh, don't go up there. Don't do it, Lita. I don't want to outshine this kid. Don't do it.
And then she does it.
And then she does it. Or then she opts not to do it.
coolest.
It would be very, very cool, yeah. Tell you what, though, the scaling up of the in-ring skills... and Victoria doing a standing moonsault in the ring, not to deny you your moonsault in your women's cage match. There were like moments in this where I was on tender hooks because we were 1 week after her return from injury, and she was doing a lot of the Bryan Danielson like, oh, I'm gonna pretend my neck is extra sore, and I was like, don't do that. I don't know if you're playing or not.
Yeah.
At one point when she was climbing up the cage, she in fact just slipped. That made my fucking heart go into my mouth.
Oh, I missed that.
Yeah, she was climbing up and literally it wasn't like kind of a big whoa. It's just like her hands went and she went straight down. A lot of her getting sandwiched in the cage and all that. Honestly, I came out of this thinking like there should be more women's cage matches because I feel like the smaller stature of some of the women works really well in this environment, particularly when you have like a bully character like Victoria. Lita gets the drop on Victoria and it looks like she's about to head out of that cage when her boyfriend, Matt Hardy, comes in and slams the door in her face. And Victoria picks up the win as we witness another relationship booked to break up on WWF television shortly before they start to decide to break up for real. It's almost like a pattern, this is. I mentioned Macho Man earlier. I was in an angle with my wife and I ain't got no wife no more. But this is different because we're not married, so Amy and I will be okay.
Yeah.
AKA, I will throw a cage door in her face. Yeah. So Joe, first ever cage match, and also a nice glimpse of Victoria and the new Lita here. What was your thought on this one?
It was pretty damn good, I thought, considering it was a cage match and considering it was women's wrestling from this time when I know there were a lot of rules in place about what they can and can't do.
Yeah, definitely. Like, they're trying to shoot for the stars with a lot of asterisks beside how and when you're allowed to do that.
Yeah. There were some really sick moves because Victoria is a great wrestler and she's really fucking... Oh, she's vicious in this match.
Yeah. Her power with Lita's kind of, I don't know, flexibility, what you want to call it.
That's it, because, like, Lita is really... Like, one of, I think, her greatest skills is just, like... And maybe it's to do with her kid power, I don't know, but she can just fling herself around.
It's funny, we watched some shoot interviews with people talking about working with Lita, and Ivory, who's a very respected women's wrestler from that time, she was like, oh, I mean, she was great because she was so over, but like, she was like Gumby, like, if you went to throw her, she'd like flail her, like, she was too light, she was too malleable, or whatever it was. Though. Like wrestling a gas. Yeah.
I felt they made a really good pairing for that reason, because they're so different. But the match was too short, especially
for a cage match.
Yeah. But then that's again, like, why would you put the cage match on Raw, not on a main event? Naturally, it's going to be under 10 minutes. It's just stupid bad booking.
Peculiar.
So, yeah, I gave it like 3.5 stars because it's a solid match.
And obviously you wanted to see a lot of Matt Hardy feuding with Lita. They do a lot of this like backwards and forwards with Matt and Lita.
Yep.
And it seems to be diminishing returns from the audience. Like, they did literally a bit at one point we saw where Matt came out on one knee. He's like, I've got a question for you, Amy. And everyone's like, oh my God. And then he gets interrupted. And then everyone's like, oh, she's going to marry him finally. And then later on, he's like, yeah, I did have a question. How could you be so selfish, you bitch, with your broken fucking neck? And I'm like, okay, me as a fan of these two crazy kids falling in love, I don't like that. It's odd that they didn't seem to be able to understand Lita outside of the context of her being in a relationship with someone.
Yeah.
Even when like originally she got over for exactly the opposite of that reason. They did do a storyline that, oh boy, sometimes we watch things where I'm like, uh-oh, I've ruined the episode. Sorry, everyone.
This one backfired.
Fucking hell.
This will be a fun match for Joe.
Up bright and early, pot of coffee on. Got a long day of watching ahead of us, honey. Let's watch the story of the battle of the sexes between Chris Jericho, Christian, Trish, and Lita. I'm sorry I showed you that.
Yeah, it was bad. It was really bad. It was not fun for me. Not fun for me.
Not fun for me. Not very fun for them either, I would imagine.
Sure, it was not fun for them. No, I think maybe the only person who had any fun that day was Chris Jericho.
Perhaps. But yeah, it's... The idea of like, what do you do with these characters? They want to try and like elevate them. They want them to be involved in stories. But when it comes to women, the only stories, as you were saying, it felt like... I mean, that happens very often in... Like I remember, I forget who it was like Alexa Bliss or someone like that, being like, why are none of the characters like on our TV show like friends?
Yeah,
like,
that's it. They're always dating.
They're always dating. Like, that's
Weird.
the way it is. And I don't think that's ever going away, because I think that's what wrestling...
It's not going away while Paul Heyman's around.
Or Triple H or Shawn Michaels. He likes to play Instagram matchmaker over that NXT brand. But look, maybe her and Christian on a horrible bet-fueled date was not the way to go. Obviously, you know, creepy pairing with creepy bastard Christian notwithstanding in the battle of the sexes, surely there's someone on this roster, other than Matt Hardy, we can get her romantically involved with. And what we watched next was equal parts disturbing, oddly gripping. I was laughing my head off at some points, and my head was in my hands at other points. All I can say is, Joe, Lita marrying Kane was one hell of a time, and the road to get there especially so. We want to see, obviously, more of our female characters doing other things, but this thing is her being pursued by Kane?
That's it, because it's like, oh, how do we, elevate these women? We want to give them more screen time, but we don't really know how to do that, because women don't really exist outside of the presence of men, and also all women hate each other. So I guess the only way we can really do this is by having her romantically involved with one of our male stars.
In my headcanon, when I was watching this age 16 or whatever, it was like, well, it tracks. Kane is red, Lita is red. Sure, you know yourself. That'll be it then. Sure, they'll always end up together, won't they? They're both red-themed wrestlers. So, Kane basically declared that he wanted to sacrifice. He wanted someone in his life.
I have to mention at this point, because in case there's anyone listening who's not familiar with the steps of Kane, this is worst Kane. It's ugliest Kane. It's when he's not got a mask and he's not really Kane anymore.
This is ugly, smelly breath Kane.
Ruined Kane. I prefer to think of this as not actually Kane, but someone else.
This is Kane.
No.
This is? I have it on authority from a noted Kane expert.
Well,
Joe.
no, because Kane has horrible disfiguration on his face. He's got burns, and also he never speaks, and he never takes off the mask. It's
This is
the
Glenn,
three main things you know about Kane.
This is Glenn Calloway is what it is.
Yeah, exactly.
So Matt Hardy was kind of brought into the mix of this story. They made him a good guy again after like hating on Lita, but he came back to be kind of the gallant, spurned ex-lover who's like, I know that we fell out in hard times, but I will protect you from this monster. And basically the story is Matt gets beaten up by Kane. Week on week, like decimated, one-sided beatdowns, and then Kane, like I'd say a good 60% of the footage we watched from all the clips is Kane putting Lita in the corner and touching her chin and being like, yeah, and you stand there, you lady. He did kidnap her at one point.
Yeah.
Obviously, I love in wrestling. Some of my favourite moments have involved kidnappings. Stephanie McMahon, when she got kidnapped and saved by Ken Shamrock.
Yeah, Kane technically kidnaps Lita, but then it turns out that actually, no, he didn't kidnap her. She led him along. Like, it's weird.
Like, if Kane is kidnapping Lita, the idea of Matt Hardy being like, hey, I'm going to save you, and they get her out of the room and they run away together. Like, okay, that's good. He comes and saves her. The first thing he does is, did he touch you? Did he touch you? And she's like, I don't want to talk about it.
Yep.
Like, that's not fun. That's not a fun wrestling
really
angle.
Not fun.
So the idea comes then that Lita, in a misguided attempt to save Matt from being decimated by Kane, as a good guy, elects to sleep with Kane,
Right.
with the idea being that Kane will leave Matt Hardy alone afterwards.
Now again, girl, you're sending mixed messages to Kane here because you're saying one thing and then you're having sex with him.
Yes, and
He's going to think that you're into that and
Probably.
want to do more of that.
and he keeps beating up Matt Hardy afterwards, and then
Yeah,
Lita
probably because he's like,
reveals-
stop being with my girl that I'm having sex with.
Lita reveals that she's pregnant and she doesn't know who the father is because it's 2004, and you know we gotta keep up with the parlance of the times and all that.
Again, at this point in the storyline, heavily implied that Kane raped Lita.
Yes, that's what it was. It was only like we had to like sift through to actually get to like they want you to think that's what's happened.
Yeah.
But then they do the whole thing where she reveals to Matt what he's done, and of course Matt hates her now.
Yeah.
How could you?
Well, yeah, no fucking shit. Because, like, now it turns out that actually she wasn't, like, in danger and she just, like, chose to have sex with Kane. It makes her character seem fucking rubbish.
Yeah, it's very much again like, do you not know why this character is popular?
Yeah.
And also, even if you don't know that, how do you think this is going to make her as or more popular?
Yeah.
Like, it can only take away from her
Like,
star,
out
you know?
of all three of them, she comes off as the bad guy.
Oh, yeah. But the one little wrinkle I did like was that when she reveals that she's pregnant to Kane, she's like, I'm pregnant. That means I'm fucking crazy. I'm loco. I'll do anything now. And she's like, if you fucking touch me, I'll fuck this baby up. You know, and that was like, okay, that's an interesting wrinkle. Now, I don't want to be the man who talks about my wedding and my marriage and all that too much. It could be a bit much, a bit over the top. But I will say, I also married Joe because I defeated Kane in a Death Do Us Part match at SummerSlam.
And I wore black.
It's
A black wedding dress.
A black wedding dress for it. So Lita has to marry Kane because of this matchup that Matt lost.
And again, I don't really understand now. If we strip back all the bullshit layers, what we have is Kane fancied Lita.
Yeah.
Matt got in the way, so they had a feud.
Mm-hmm.
Lita has sex with Kane.
To stop Kane dominating Matt.
Makes zero sense because she's not communicated that to anyone. That's not been the agreement. And then she marries Kane. Sorry, what's that got to do with...
Leah, I'm going to call this out now. That's toxic behaviour is what that is.
You're giving Kane mixed messages here. Do you understand why he is reacting
When you
the
didn't
way
tell
he
Matt,
is?
that's a red flag, is what that is. And then Kane's like, I only did it because I'm a demon. Like, no, that's bullshit. I'm a demon. I call bullshit on that. That's no excuse, is what that is. I will say, if it got us to the point where we got to watch Kane and Lita's wedding, I was a happy man because I fucking love this segment so much.
Why?
Oh, there's so many things about it. The fact that Kane is inexplicably really into his wedding and he has loads of really specific... Like, it's an all-white wedding. He has a beautiful string quartet play his theme song when he comes out.
That is a gorgeous rendition.
It's so
am
good.
Obsessed. Yeah, a wonderful arrangement. Congratulations to all involved. I am fond of the fact that Kane dreamed of a white wedding ever since he was a little boy.
Yeah, Pinterest board, yeah.
A little romantic man. And that actually does make sense for his character, given how many times in his story he ends up with women as like a romantic angle.
Look, Kane, like, I'm glad Kane retired before he died drowning in pussy, because he was always getting himself some, is what I'm saying. When we did the Kane episode, we listed all of his lovers, and it's fucking hell, like, you know, that's something. Why don't we get fucking jibes about him having an odometer on him and stuff like that, eh?
Exactly.
Everyone's fucking Kane, like, Jesus Christ. But yeah, to go on about other things I love about this, I love that the guy they have who's the minister, at the start he's like, hey, it's just a wedding, here I am. And like as the wedding goes on, he becomes more perturbed and he realizes like, what am I privy to here? I love that Lita comes out in all black and gets a huge fucking pop for it.
It's a great wedding dress. It's really goth.
So good. Kane's vows that begin with, you are now going to be married to me, which means there is no escape. So funny. And then Lita's vows be like, Kane, I hate you. I just love it. I love it so much. I love that Matt tries to save them and Kane stops him with magic. He makes a wall of fire appear. I love that Matt gets fucking thrown off, and it's my perfect Empire Strikes Back wrestling wedding. It's dark-sided and nasty, but I love it. Why didn't you? You didn't like it? You didn't like them?
No, it's not I didn't like it. I'm just not into it like you are. It's like it's a funny schlocky little. I mean, I guess I don't like it in the sense that I think it ruins the characters of, like, I think Lita comes off really badly in this angle, and I hate this version of Kane, and I would have done this whole thing differently. I really like the idea, because what year is this?
This is 2004.
Perfect.
It's very, because you were telling me it was a series of unfortunate events coded.
Exactly. That's what it reminded me of. The other thing that kind of reminded me of was The Corpse Bride. And actually, I feel, because that came out around the same time, they could have done an angle here where Lita actually ends up manipulating Kane into using him to advance her, like, power. Because if he's like this, super powerful, like, kind of demon guy, and he's like, marry me and, I will make you powerful and stuff, you could kind of, there's a lot of classical literature you can draw from, like Frankenstein and things like that. There's a lot of goth imagery associated with weddings, especially to do with, like, if the woman has a bit of agency and she's like, actually, I'm part of this and I want to use this to my advantage. That would have been really cool, and it would have suited Lita because that's kind of fits with her vibe anyway.
My goth friend at the time who didn't like wrestling thought that her in a black wedding dress with this demon was like that. He thought it was really cool,
and I think they could have been a really cool power couple, Kane and Lita.
They did have a little bit. You mentioned that though, like they did a little bit because after they get married, the twist then becomes that, like, Lita being Kane's bride and also the mother of his soon-to-be-born child.
Right, hang on.
She starts kind of pointing him in directions of people. She says, like, go after Trish Stratus, go after, like, these people who've bullied me or been horrible to me. And she does that as a face, and Kane becomes, like, an unwitting enforcer for her.
Yeah, but I don't really like her using him as, like, a weapon rather than them as a team. Like, it should be them as a power couple rather than just go off and do that for me. Also, sorry, she is pregnant with Kane's baby then, because that's again something they kind of flip-flop.
Oh no, yeah, no, they definitely say it because they're like, it's not Matt's, it's Kane's.
Right, no fucking wonder Matt's upset because not only did she voluntarily have sex with Kane, she's letting Kane hit it raw. No, never let Kane hit it raw. Kane's a fucking. Have you seen how many girls he's had sex with?
Yeah, I know,
Wear
right?
protection.
You might contract a JID if that happens. It's very, very dangerous business indeed. And of course, after the wedding and the pregnancy comes the Snitsky and the miscarriage. Joe, I'm going to let you describe, because this guy here, I've fucking blathered my gums about Gene Snitsky till the cows come home. And Snitsky watches right here, right now, because Joe got to see Snitsky not only at the GCW WrestleMania weekend clusterfuck battle royale, where he appeared and made reference to this, and I don't think you knew what the fuck was going on. And then we got to see the segment in situ. So what happened? What happened with Snitsky, Joe? What's his problem?
Well, hang on, we're rushing ahead. Lita's pregnant.
Yeah.
And to show that she's pregnant, she has to wear a shawl, Kevin, like a little old woman. Oh, that's like another thing I hate about this, because
Okay, my babushka.
they like make out like now she's pregnant, like even though you were saying like, oh, she's like so reckless now she's pregnant, which I think would have been kind of cool, but
Pregnant doing moonsaults.
but like she kind of makes out so she's reckless, but then also like is dressed like a fucking like mammy. Like it's so uncool, the stuff she's wearing, this like knitted blue shawl. It's really cringe. And all of a sudden, she's not like badass Lita anymore. She's like, oh, wayfish Lita, who's cold all the time, has to wear a shawl. I think it would have been really cool to have her like be a kind of like goth pregnant like bitch kind of thing.
Well, we had
like,
goth bride, so goth pregnant lady. That's obviously the next step,
that's
right?
what I mean. Like it would have been cool, and like she could have had like Kane's demon baby, and like maybe Kane's demon baby could have like eaten her from the inside, like in Twilight. That would have been goth, and then she could have like become more powerful as a result.
Can you stop disrespecting Gene Snitsky and actually, you know, because you got set up for a Snitsky Watch segment, and that's kind of like, you know, that's hallowed ground there, and that's disrespectful. That's disrespectful to the business.
I think this is disrespectful to Lita.
What happened with Snitsky, Joe?
Right, okay, fine. So she's in the ring with Kane, looking all frail, and then Snitsky like punches Kane, and Kane like falls on Lita, kind of, a little bit. And then immediately, despite being only 10 weeks pregnant, immediately miscarries. And then, this is fucking bullshit. While she's miscarrying, bearing in mind,
they're at the hospital, right?
10 weeks, is it? So it's
Yeah.
crazy. It's like the fetus would be like smaller than a strawberry, but she's having to be rushed to the hospital to try and save the baby.
And
the
Todd
baby
Grisham is
that's
there,
like the
like,
size of a toenail.
Lita's baby is going to be saved.
Yeah.
Join us now on
And the
Raw.
surgeons like operate on the tiny fetus to give it CPR.
Kane is like, is it
resuscitate
viable?
Yeah. And no, unfortunately, obviously, she loses the baby, and then we have this horrible scene where Kane's in the hospital, like cutting this like really emotional, harrowing promo about how he's lost his baby and stuff, and it's like sad.
Yeah, and he starts screaming,
He starts
crying.
screaming and wailing, and he does a wonderful performance. Well done,
To the
Glenn.
point where I was like, should I get Adam to do a fun jid bit for this? And we were like, hey Adam, hit him up on Slack. Like, do you want to like crack out a fun Journey into Darkness inspired bit about a miscarriage? The miscarriage, the very miscarriage. That wasn't going to fly, was it?
No. And Lita's just there in hospital in her bed, like just like vacant expression, like she's not even there. And then later on, there's a segment in the ring after she's like back out of the hospital and she's fine, where she's talking about what her and Kane have lost.
Jun, jun,
And
jun.
then out comes Snitsky, who I had never really seen before, other than in that clusterfuck, which he looks totally different though.
He's aged great as
He
Gene
looks
Snitsky.
fantastic.
I'm very happy. I'm very happy that he's doing well.
Do you think he's had work done?
Fucking work in the gym, man. Yes, he's fucking
But like
work
he
done,
looks really handsome now.
Well,
Whereas back then he looked weird.
man. It's probably all that kicking that he does keeps him in
Maybe.
shape, you know?
So anyway, Snitsky comes out with his music and he is carrying a little baby in his arms, and they're making comments like, oh no, this is really shocking, I can't believe he's doing this. And he's like, oh, this is your baby, here I have. And then he's like, no, you can't have him, he's mine, I can do whatever I want to him. And then he punts the baby, kicks it into the crowd, and it goes,
One of the
whee.
most disgusting, despicable things I've ever seen on Monday Night Raw. Like, at this point, were you numb to the indignity? Because I feel like everyone talks about the undignified exit that Lita had from WWE in 2006. But at this point, it's like, fucking hell. Like, this comeback, there's so many indignities along the way from the Battle of the Sexes
But
match.
I don't think this is an indignity.
You don't think
I,
so?
I think this is massively blown out of
I
proportion.
think this is it's so far removed from her at this point.
Yeah.
Like, I think most people would fail to actually remember that Gene Snitsky was kicking a facsimile of Lita's baby.
I think the reason people find this shocking is because he's kicking a toy baby.
Yes.
And there's like, that is a fundamentally like, shocking thing. But like, it's like the Mae Young giving birth to a hand thing. It's like thrown around as this like, can you believe they did this horrible, offensive thing? And like, meanwhile, I was so much more offended by the Battle of the Sexes. Way more.
You actually
upset.
popped when Snitsky kicked the baby.
I
but
love that. I think it's funny as
I thought
hell.
that was just because you're like, oh, that's why you guys were all like screaming at the GCW show that
Yeah.
because there's this like big giant man in a grey beard kicked a baby, and then we're like, yay!
I think the disrespect here is already done by this point. Her
Yeah.
having a miscarriage is disrespectful, I think, within WWE. I think that's... I don't think there's really...
There's no space for it. Like
No.
we had a miscarriage angle in '99 as well. They're not fun.
No,
Like
they're
they're
not
not fun. And like
It's just sad.
If you've known anyone who's even approached anything like that in their life, it's like, it's beyond like fucking toxic, not going to associate with this thing. You know, it's really, it brings up a lot of horrible feelings for people and
That's
stuff.
it, yeah. No one wants to really think about it.
What's the upside, I guess?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
It's kind of like, oh, I don't know, we get to see Kane in a shirt like Tony Soprano would wear. I guess, yeah, that's fun. I guess, you know.
Yeah, it's just rubbish, and I think if anything, it needed this moment with Snitsky just to make it a bit fun again.
Yeah, and it's like bam, because like after that, it's like there's no kind of wow. Can you believe Lita's main event against Trish? However many weeks after her miscarriage, like, because they don't want that to be the story. It's clear like they just kind of did it to be shocking and salacious in the moment, and they didn't have a long-term view of it, you know. And it's wild when you've got such a precious thing, which is like a cool character who people relate to, and you just kind of fucking around and all
but that's
that.
it.
You know?
I feel at this point it's already been kicked down the road. Like the Battle of the Sexes was like the first nail in the coffin for me when they had like, let's literally put the reputation of all women as a gender on the line in this match. Let's see who's better, men or women. Oh yeah, no, men are better, and also let's spank the women as well. That's really fun for women.
At the end of the match, JR was like, I'm proud of my gender, but not because of this.
Okay, great.
Well, I feel vindicated.
Definitely paid off well for Trish and Lita as well. Well done for burying them. So like, it's at this point it's like redundant because like the damage is done. And it gets kind of worse, I think. So
pair of matches with Trish Stratus that were very high profile and coming into 2005, where she had a match with Trish where Trish got a broken nose and a bad injury, and then she had a match right after. They had a main event match, but Lita tore her ACL, and it's another moment where kind of like it felt like she had momentum because the fans are so relieved all that shit was over, that it was like, all right, we're going back to what we wanted to do. Like, Lita going for the title, like having a serious match, main event, all that stuff. And then that torn ACL kind of like, it cuts it right short. And she, around this time, I don't want to say she loses her love of it, but there's a lot of times where I've heard her like talking about this period where like she has a torn ACL and they kind of have her on the road, you know, doing stuff still. And, you know, when I hear wrestlers using the phrase, they wheeled me out there or they carted me out there and stuff like that, it's like, I think she would rather have not been there still.
You need to hang out at home, do stuff you want, recover.
Now, obviously, we talked about this fairly extensively in the Edge episode, so I don't want to be all hung up on the ins and outs of it again.
Yeah, but we did talk about it
from his perspective.
From his perspective. We didn't really talk about it from Lita's perspective.
So what's your understanding of the kind of order of events here after the injury?
So she's off with her injury and ends up hanging out more with Edge because he's had the same injury as well.
Yeah.
And they kind of, they're all really close friends. I know Edge and Matt and Lita are like a very tight-knit group at this point.
And Christian like, and whatnot, they're all part of a kind of a clique, a core unit. Like,
I think it's difficult to tell the story entirely from her perspective because she's actually very mature and grown up about the whole thing. And
she didn't do a recreation on the Lita show about this?
Matt obviously talks at great length about his version of events. And Edge, I think, stands up for himself. So he's talked quite a lot about it as well. But from Lita's perspective, as far as I know, she was off with her injury, bored, lonely, talking to her friend Edge when they hooked up.
There you go.
And that happened, and apparently...
Call me when you get this, I'm gonna kill you, you big-toothed motherfucker.
Apparently her and Matt had been on the rocks for a long, long time. And like, you can vouch for that because you're reading her book and you can see... There's like things happening early on.
There's a lot that you could point at and go... Matt Hardy's first love was the professional wrestling business.
Oh, you can tell.
And his first ever relationship was with Lita.
Yeah.
And the two complex relationships that he had there kind of were at odds with each other. As he tried to grow in one respect, he was not able to grow in another respect.
Yeah.
This is a lady who, for their first Christmas together, got a lamp, a filing cabinet, and a clothes hamper because that's what you need.
Girls like that shit.
Shit, man, I don't know. Why do girls even want gifts? What is Christmas?
And the fact that she mentions that in her book in, 2002, and then he mentions it in one of his weird gun videos he does in, like, 2005.
It's the Matt Hardy show, not a gun video.
Whatever.
When we say us versus them, it's shit like this we're talking about, Joe, right?
My point is like, that obviously hung over their whole relationship.
Oh, yeah.
Big thing.
Oh, she buys me all this fucking shit. I don't get fucking nothing for Valentine's Day. What the fuck's going on there?
And I think because of this awkward relationship that they have, which is kind of, as you say, like baby's first relationship, very emotional, first love kind of thing going on.
Millions of fans paying attention to it. You're kind of... being captured in real time on WWE and also on Matt's MySpace. Like every single facet of it is there under examination. It's not a healthy place to build any sort of relationship.
No, definitely not. And also, Lita at this point, I think, still suffers from something she suffered from earlier in her life, which is this, like, she finds it hard to, I think, have conflict with people. She's a very agreeable person.
Yeah.
And I don't think, the fact that she didn't really break up properly with her earlier boyfriend, and I know there was stuff there.
I know so many relationships that ended in this way.
So messy because they want to avoid conflict.
Yeah, where it's like they had a million reasons to break up for like years, and then it's like, oh, the line was crossed, and because someone cheated on someone. I'm not saying like I'm excusing cheating or anything like that. It breaks people's hearts, it fucks people's lives up, and it's very hard for folks to get over that. I appreciate that, but also at the same time, it's like usually that is more of like a symptom of what's wrong as opposed to what is wrong in itself. If you know what I mean.
The big mistake she made is obviously not just breaking up with Matt.
Yeah.
The way that she obviously should have done, like, immediately. But she
clearly,
didn't.
They didn't like each other anymore.
No.
The way they speak to each other, like, we saw them on, like, Bite This and stuff like that. And they're working an angle and stuff with Edge, because Matt famously got fired after the infidelity was spread, brackets, by him. But, like, the thing about it is that Matt was already on the outs of the company for a number of reasons. We'll get into plenty of those, I'm sure, in the Matt Hardy episode. The plan with the Hardys episode is to do a Matt and a Jeff episode kind of back to back, like we did Shawn Michaels Part 1 and Part 2 to kind of cover them. But like, yeah, it's not as simple as Matt Hardy or any wrestling fan from 2005 would have had you believe. Let's just say.
Definitely not. And I think this is one of those situations where, look, everyone is in the wrong here, and I think if they've grown up enough, they would all be able to acknowledge that. But basically, Edge's wife finds voicemails on her phone from Lita in like random hours of the morning, and she confronts Edge about that, and she's like, what's going on here? He's like, nothing, don't worry, we're all just friends. And he warns Lita, hey, watch out, don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
This is risky, we need to be more careful. Edge's wife then calls Matt Hardy and says, hey Matt, don't know if you know this, but they're calling each other all hours of the night. So he confronts Lita and is like, what's up with that? And she's like, again, no worries, don't worry, we're just all friends, nothing to be paranoid about, just don't worry about it. And then he finds a secret phone.
Dun-dun-dun.
I really do feel for Matt, because like, I think he obviously handled this horribly, but like lying about, like, he gave you the chance to tell the truth, and you fucking lied, and then you double down by getting a secret phone. Oh.
And also as well, on the Edge side of things, a fun detail that I'm sure if we mentioned before, I always thought it was Val Venus's sister that he cheated on with Lita, but no,
he did cheat on her.
Yes, he cheated on Val Venus's sister with another lady who he then married 6 months later, and then he cheated on her 6 months after that with Lita.
Yeah.
So it's like a fucking...
Yeah.
It's like a pay it forward, man. You
Messy.
know? Hey, man, I cheat on you, you cheat on her next, right? Okay, that's just what we do. That's how we do things, like...
So then Matt has a meltdown because he's at home injured at this time, isn't he?
Yeah.
So, of course, he's got like no one really to kind of talk to about it. So he, just being the online guy he is, he just posts every thought in his head online.
And it's a mixture of like hurt feelings and wrestling promo, and you know, maybe it's a new character, or maybe he's working through some shit. I don't know. It's all up there.
It feels like the ramblings of like a very manic teenager.
Yeah, I feel like if you find any teen who was like walking the streets after having a falling out with their friends, like on the holiday or whatever it is, and like, do you want to talk to me about how you're feeling there? But I have a microphone for them. Let me tell you this, motherfucker.
I feel like most teenagers would at least keep it to themselves, because that's the issue.
They don't have the confidence that man has to be like, I'm the angelic Diablo and I'm sad.
And on top of all the weird posts on MySpace he would do, where he'd call her like a fucking whore, and he'd call Edge feces.
I think the worst thing I ever heard from any of that camp was like, oh, she sure put on weight when she broke her neck. Dudes,
nice.
Come on.
Really nice, yeah.
The difference is, right, when people act badly in these situations and all that, and she acted badly, unquestionably.
Oh, yeah.
As did Matt, as did Edge. And as a man who has been fucking triggered by having to rewatch Matt Hardy show clips with you for this, that you put on unprompted, by the way, thanks for that.
I had to watch them.
It's us versus them.
In the clips, he like has this
He's a
cardboard.
fucking gun. He pointed at her.
He has a cardboard cutout of Lita, and then he like cuts this weird promo where he's like, I've kidnapped you in my toilet, and I'm going to take a shit in here every day.
I'm going to fucking beat your ass.
Yeah, I'm going to punch you in the eye, and you're not allowed to eat, and you're not allowed to sleep. I'm going to torture you.
No fucking water.
And then he has a gun, and he points the gun at the cardboard cutout. I think he shoots it later.
He does. He shoots it later, and he runs it over in his Lamborghini.
Yeah, he drags it around the house.
That's going to leave a mark.
And all through this as well, like, weird, creepy thing that I noticed and I've not seen anyone talk about online is how he held her dog hostage.
Jesus Christ.
But it's true. Like,
non-stop indignity.
That's her dog. That's her dog, Lucas. We noted it earlier on in the episode when we were doing research and watching stuff. She brings it on to Raw a couple of episodes. This lovely, cute little dog that looks a bit like Punk's dog, Larry.
Yeah.
And then in these videos, he's got the dog with the fucking gun. He's like, hey, this is my dog now. Oh my God, it's so cruel.
I think she must be made of fucking titanium or something like that, though.
The way she responds to it on Bite This is great.
It's so, like...
She comes off really well.
I greatly envy her ability to fucking temper all of the feelings, the vortex, the tempest in her head, and turn it into a couple of pithy remarks. Because if there's a lad there cutting fucking wrestling promos at you, and then you can give him like a 3-word answer that makes him go, boy. And then I was watching her probably having the most miserable time of her life, turning this thing into an angle for TV on that Bite This show, and I was thinking, fucking hell though, you know what? You're doing a very good job at this. You're very cool. I didn't think that would be it, because after we watched all the stuff with Kane, I was like, oh, is this the point where she stopped being kind of the cool character that I liked?
No, because Lita is always, like, I say Lita, Amy Dumas is always cool, because she is cool. She's a cool person.
She always was cool.
Yeah. So when you have Bite This, and you've got Matt Hardy going on these sad, rambling promos where he's saying these horrible, horrible
and then
things.
she's like, are you finished with
So you finished?
your big your big wrestling promo, Matt? Well,
Yeah.
actually, yeah, it was a big wrestling promo, actually, because I'm a professional wrestler.
And she's just like, look, I'm glad that you're saying all this, because it's just reminded to me that I made the right decision, because you're really not convincing me here that you're someone I should be in a relationship with.
Yes.
Like, I don't think this is good.
When she goes, wow, that's very attractive, Matt.
Yeah.
Fucking hell.
But she does it wow.
Whoa.
That's really attractive, Matt.
There's a fucking nuclear bomb you can drop in the middle of an argument with your partner. Good lord.
Ouch, but fair.
Joe and I have a special arms agreement that if we ever get in a fight, we're not allowed to say, wow, that's attractive. Like, you're not allowed to do that. You know, there's actually a lot of us who are trying to, like, make sure that we don't, like, some people want us to have it as a deterrent to one another, that knowing that the other has that it'll stop either of us using it.
It's like Cold War.
I kind of feel like it's going to end in a situation where both of us call each other unattractive during an argument, which is basically a nuclear winter situation.
And then we just start making out.
That's hot, man. That's pretty.
Yeah.
And then the fans will cheer. They'll love that, man. That's really cool. So her getting paired with Edge then, you know, on screen is this kind of Bonnie and Clyde relationship off the back of Matt's, in my mind at the time, I was like, oh, this is his ticket to the top. It's like, no, it's their ticket to the top, man.
Right, because that's the thing. Matt's weird posts and videos, as much as we laugh at it now, there was a contingent of the fan base that loved that shit.
There was a buzz. We thought he was calling out like Johnny Ace and the Office and WWE. Like,
and
that was unheard
wronged.
of.
And, you know, she sleeps around, doesn't she? She had sex with Kane. God knows. You know, of course she's having sex with Edge.
I'm 15. I also have not had sex. I love you, Matt Hardy.
Yeah.
I have never met a girl, but I would also hate them if they're anything like this one. Jesus.
And of course we know from the Edge episode that by this point in their relationship, by the time they televised it, they were cold on each other. The chemistry was gone. They'd wrung it for everything it was worth.
Beware the wizard's curse. Like, you know, your hot brief affair will lead to an extremely long, not hot affair that you have to play out on live TV. But in many respects, I think that kind of, from her telling of it, it made it easier in a way, because they're able to be like, look, we don't have to go out and just be like passionate because we love each other and keep this fucking spark alive. It's like, how can we make the other one think the other one's gross? Like, how gross can we be? And if you want to talk about heel kisses, Edge and Lita have the market cornered. It's something where you think, oh, wrestling, everything's going to get bigger, stronger, faster, better. No one's even come close to those kisses. Evil kisses. Forbidden kisses.
Yeah, definitely.
The very kisses.
I think the one advantage of making this into a kayfabe angle is that nothing quite cools an audience, I think, than making a real life situation overly scripted.
Yeah.
And so it goes from this like, oh, if you know, you know, like, oh, I'm on the dirt sheets, I'm on Matt Hardy's MySpace, I know the true gossip. And then they're like making it into like a schlocky WWE scripted storyline, like way over the top. It just like, it completely sucked it dry of everything. To the point though, where there are to this day people who think that whole thing was a work. Which is mad.
Sure, why not?
But like, I mean, Sure, yes,
Yeah,
absolutely. Like,
whatever
okay.
helps you sleep at night, I
Yeah.
guess. You know, but yeah, like in terms of like sucking dry, the one thing that sucked dry, I think, was Matt Hardy's momentum, which I think was ultimately kind of the. I don't say a fitting punishment. He's had a great career since, but like I think for the time, it was like, yeah, you catch more flies and maybe fans with honey than vinegar, I guess, because building a movement based on resentment and bitterness and, you know, hurt feelings,
Yeah.
like that's not a stable foundation for. That's not a Bella Army. That's not a Yes movement. Those aren't the real naturally occurring movements in wrestling. But you know, to the point of whether or not it helped Matt, no. Did it help Lita? It depends on your viewpoint. Edge certainly got over a lot more as a loathsome heel. It elevated him above and beyond from being kind of an annoying guy who feels like he should be like a bigger star than he is to like, oh, there's another reason to hate this guy. Lita probably caught the audience's ire in a more personal way.
Definitely. But I feel that's due to Matt publicizing it rather than the WWE making a story out of it.
Yeah, I think as well, it's also a lot of it's going to be like, you know, you're a woman in wrestling and you're a woman in 2006 on like kind of a big TV show. Like the audience are going to interpret your actions and react in a certain way. And like wrestling, by the time we come around to 2006, wrestling had a fucking cache full of she's a crack whore, she's got herpes, Lita sucks dick, whatever, you know, there was an infinite vortex of chance that they could draw upon. Them doing this around the same time they did the ECW relaunch, and there was obviously, you know, a lot of times where Edge and Lita were in front of a quote-unquote ECW audience, where things like, you would only have heard an ECW back in the day, not really, like, I only heard them say crack whore on WWE TV when Lita was near ECW stuff, so I guess it kind of, they were trying to make the product edgy, and then they gave a character that was kind of like a straw man, or woman, I guess, for the anger of the male audience. But like, one thing, shouting things at him at a wrestling show, there was all the stuff like, people would come up to her on the street and tell her, like, you know, she was a bad person. They got, like, their tires slashed all the time.
Yeah.
And, like, I know there's other wrestlers that be like, hey, you got some great heat, brother.
But that's different when it's an angle.
Yeah.
This is not just an angle.
No, it's like, they're not doing that because you laid out Matt Hardy and took the money in the bank briefcase. They do that because you think that you're a scumbag, but primarily she's a bitch.
Yeah.
Fuck her, I'm gonna slash her tires. And she went in very short order from being one of the most beloved, enduring characters of all the 2000s in wrestling to being one of the most hated people in all of wrestling, man or woman. And I was just wondering, like, because we couldn't forward to, like, a retirement match that she's having here now. Did it shock you that the audience gathered that much, like, kind of negativity towards her so quickly? Do you think that was kind of simmering there already before this Matt thing happened? Or was it just all because Matt Hardy waved his wand and made the internet get angry in a very, very enduring way?
I don't know. I feel I don't know enough about this period of time in wrestling to really know the answer to that. I feel you might know because you're doing it right now with the Ashtura podcast.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, I don't think there was any evidence within that period where I'm like, oh, that's why they hated her. Because when we started that period, they already hated her. Like, she was already, like, firmly established as a heel from when we started that season. But I just wonder if stuff like a lot of the indignities we talked about in those few years, and we're like, look, she's still Lita, she's still cool, but if you're chipping away at that like image of her being this super cool, awesome icon of wrestling, and then she does something scummy, I felt like there weren't enough Lita fans there to push back the tide.
Well, yeah, and as well, wrestling as a fandom had changed a lot at this point. Like, I feel at this point, a lot of wrestling fans hate wrestling, or at least hate WWE wrestling.
There was a lot of negativity for sure. Like,
so I feel there's people going to these shows just to be like, just full of animosity, just to tear everything down and fuck shit up.
She seems a lot more comfortable than she would later reveal that she was doing a lot of these segments and stuff like that. But, you know, she said on many occasions she doesn't like talking about this kind of stuff because it's like, it ends up being like kind of interviewers like telling her this was horrible, this is horrible, this is horrible. And she's like, yeah, and like, you know, what's your point? Like, you know, she's lived through it. She just want to dwell on it. But she did reveal that she was under the impression a lot of the time that she didn't go along with this stuff, that she'd be kind of wound down or fired or released or whatever it is.
What I don't understand is that why didn't she at any point look to TNA?
I don't know. I think she was in a good contract at that time, like, you know? But there was never any rumblings that she was like on her way out or that she was like there was never any rumblings that Lita would go anywhere else. And also, I guess at this point, TNA was not known at that point for having a women's division yet.
Gail Kim would have been there though, right? The one woman trying to make a division.
She's knocking around there, but yeah, that real kind of the renaissance that we talked about with Gail and Awesome Kong, that was like 2007 onwards. So literally, like, you know, wrong time. I think at that point she didn't want to be in wrestling at all, full stop. So, you know, I do feel for her a lot having to navigate this being such a huge part, because there's a lot of people who grew up and this is the Lita they know. I think if you're like maybe a slightly elder millennial, the Lita you know is like Team Extreme, cool, iconic Lita. But, you know, I think there's a lot of folks who maybe only know this era of her.
Oh, that makes me sad.
Which is one of the reasons I wanted to bring this up. Like, a lot of the kind of make-believe from WWE over the years and like retelling stories and all that, if there's one I'd give them credit for and I would turn a blind eye to them maybe ignoring stuff, it's like they don't seem to dwell on this era of her career much anymore, and they seem to tell a more story that like Lita was this like amazing icon, force for good, and we kind of sidestep a lot of that shite.
I think that's less to do with Lita and more to do with just WWE in general. Like a lot of that stuff from that time period is just not, it's like redacted, it's just not there.
I mean, I remember we were researching for this episode and we found there's like a Kickstarter. It was her, Christy Hemme, and Gail Kim, I believe it was, and the three of them together wanted to make a TV show based off of all of their experiences in wrestling called Kayfabe. And I'm like, Jesus Christ.
I can imagine.
Those three, if they put it out, that could you?
Try again once Vince is dead, please.
Yeah, it's worth another whirl. Or if someone could find the scripts even, that would be interesting. But I think she was garnering a lot of resentment towards wrestling at this point. She said around this time, this is where she would hear the music and it would be like, all right, clocking in, off to work. It's a job.
I think fans can smell that.
It's a good thing that she was a heel whose gimmick was that she didn't like anyone and didn't give a shit about anything anymore, because when we cut to Survivor Series 2006 and she's planning to retire as the women's champion, she comes out with all the look of a woman who is thoroughly done with everything to do with the sport of professional wrestling.
Yeah.
She defends against Mickie James. Had you heard much about this match coming into it? The shadow of her had you heard about her quote-unquote retirement or anything like that?
I knew it by name, but not that it was her retirement. I didn't know who was, because the name of this, it doesn't include anyone involved. Like, as in, it doesn't describe much. It's so I knew of the wholesale.
Oh, I see.
I knew that was a shocking thing that happened. I knew separately that Lita's retirement was really bad in terms of disrespecting Lita.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that those two things were linked.
So, we cut to her backstage doing a promo before the match. I thought she was a much better promo as a heel.
Yes,
and one of these rare cases again where, oh, you've got a wrestler and like they're on their way out the door. And it's like, great. It feels like you finally figured out wrestling. Off you go into retirement. You know, like where they have honed all of the skills or whatever it is. They have a time and a half on commentary setting this up and about why Lita is disrespected, because she is like basically saying like, I don't know why the fans have turned on me. I don't know why I get so much disrespect. And they're like, well, you reap what you sow, Lita. It's your fault that all of this has happened.
I mean, that's a way of saying it, isn't it? But that's not really how Jerry Lawler said it.
It's as Stone Cold would say, it's the wrong kind of heat that they have here. Because the fans they're not interested in seeing Mickie James beat Lita for the title as much as they are seeing Lita get humiliated in some way. They're chanting ho throughout the whole match. It's very disconcerting. Like,
she's a crack whore chant.
Yes.
Ho chant. She's got herpes chant. Meanwhile, like, my notes for this match are like, beautiful suplex. Oh, amazing arm bar.
Like, and again, another like we come 2 years later and you see Mickie James in the ring and you go, fuck me. Like the women's wrestling is like the standard is raised again.
Yeah,
like,
it's better again. But this is a good match. Like the wrestling itself is really good. Like I think especially for Lita, she's come such a long way. Like her wrestling here is a lot tidier.
Yeah, it definitely. There's a lot less of a But again, I think
still is that kind of big bombastic style.
I think working as a heel perhaps suits her better in that, you know, it's less about high spots and more about shutting down someone like Mickie James, who it's sad to see like Mickie, who's such a spunky kick-ass baby face, and like she's getting worked over. I'm like, you fans should be clamoring for her, and you're chanting she's a crack whore at both of them technically. So, and
like it's annoying as well, because I guarantee if you ask the crowd in general, like, hey, what do you think of wrestling at this point in WB? Is it any good? They'd be like, no, shit. So you've got a really good match right here, and you're fucking ignoring it because you're so sexist.
Yeah, I was trying to ignore that she got herpes chant, where I was like yourself noting, this is actually one hell of a nice little match they got going on, you know? Because I reviewed this one for the Outyear podcast, you know, towards the end of that last season, and I think I was somewhat blinded by the audience reaction. It was, you know, you get distracted as a fan, then you don't. Kudos to you for paying attention to what the women were doing, as opposed to it's one of the benefits of you not tuning out commentators and audiences a lot of the time, because Jerry was trying to get every last bit of material that he had out the door before before she was gone.
The thing that pisses me off as well about Jerry's commentary in this match in particular is how obscure it is. It's not like, a lot of the jokes that he makes in matches with women, fine, I don't like them, they are needlessly offensive, but at least it's like cookie cutter, template jokes.
You can understand.
This is weird shit he's referencing here, like obscure stuff you would only know about if you were like on the dirt sheets or like into certain sexual fetishes. He's being really weird.
Random moments where he will be like, I think she's had a pregnancy test before she had a driving test. And I'm like, just sit down and unpack that for a second. Like, only a paedophile would make that joke.
Yeah.
You bad man. What are you doing here? Hell of a match going on here. Like, the sheer diversity of moves as well from Mickey and Lita alike, I was very impressed with. Mickey has got these fantastic kicks that she busts out towards the end. Her big kind of rah-rah babyface moment, and also kind of like a big Lita's time is over, as Lita goes up and she does a beautiful moonsault, but Mickey kicks out of it, and that does get a huge reaction. Lita tries a DDT, but Mickey hooks onto the rope and Lita lands on the back of her head, which again, it's like, hey, selling the neck. That's she's putting a lot more thought into this than
the fans would
deserve. Care. Then Mickey hits that beautiful big DDT. Yes. Jake the Snake will write a blog about that. Mickey picks up the win, and I love this. I know there's so much about this that is crap, but I do love Lita, like, completely beating on her ass, lying on the ground, pointing at Lily and be like, say I'm the greatest.
Yeah.
And Lily's like, ladies and gentlemen, but find this like pile of clothes on the floor.
The greatest
of all time. And she's like, fucking yeah. I loved. And cool. If she got booed and then she was like, wait, no, why are you booing me? That's a perfect end.
I agree. I actually thought the same thing. I was like, because she cuts a promo then, and the fans are all, again, they're chanting horrible things, and she just grabs the mic and she goes, you know what? I'm glad I'm leaving, because you all suck, you don't appreciate me, you don't know how good I am. And I wish she had just dropped the mic and left. Yeah. And that was it. That was her retirement. Because you know what? That is all the fans deserve. And I think it would have been a really appropriate punishment for them. It's like, right, fine. This is what you wanted. You wanted to ruin it for everyone. Well, it's ruined for you now. There you go. You got rid of Lita, one of the coolest female wrestlers of all time. What fucking phony fans are you? That's it. Go home and feel uncomfortable. Feel uncomfortable.
Well, I want to feel uncomfortable in a different way. Can you send Crime Time out real quick, please?
This is sad as well, because I really like Crime Time and I think they're funny. And I really like the idea of them stealing a cardboard box. That's just really funny. Because we've all done it, haven't we? We love a good cardboard box.
So what do Crime Time do, Joe, when they come out? What's their end game here?
So they come out with the cardboard box they stole earlier, and it's got like a bra hanging out and stuff. And immediately, Lita's reaction to this is bizarre. She starts like having a toddler tantrum. She literally just starts going, no, and it's very uncomfortable. It's like weirdly like infantilizing behavior. And
particularly when they're selling her like sex toys and stuff.
Right, well I wasn't even gotten to that point yet. This is just when they come out. Then they reveal, we're having a hoe sale because we've got all of Lita's stuff and we're gonna sell it. And then she's like, I don't want people to make fun of me anymore. No! And then they sell like her bra, and then they sell like her yeast infection medicine or
that's
something.
That's not mine.
She's like, that's not mine.
The one bit that got a huge pop is when they're selling one random bit and she sees some of the audience. She wants $1. That's it's funny. That's a good line.
And I thought the yeast infection thing was funny. I think within this there are some funny moments. It's just sad that it's her retirement.
Well, like JBL being like, I'm gonna buy her panties.
Yeah, let me smell them first. And then like
don't do that.
Jerry Lawler's smelling them as well, and Jim Ross is like, his reputation is awful. He wants to talk about smelly underwear. And then they throw them into the crowd. And then they have a vibrator. But this is, again, fucking pisses me off. America and WWE in particular. They have, like, a clump of cloth. And they're, like, waving it around. And it's obviously supposed to be a vibrator, but because America is weirdly puritanical, but WWE within America is counterculture and therefore edgy and offensive, they have a vibrator, but they're not allowed to show it or even say what it is. So it's like this weird implication.
It's Lita's friend.
Yeah, friend. And it's just, doesn't that say it all? So you can have an angle where a woman is retired and humiliated sexually, you know, spanked in various matches, clothes torn off, but God forbid you show a vibrator.
Yeah, JTG from Crime Time was like asked about this in some clip we saw, and he looked fucking mortified. He's like, look, she didn't want to do it, we didn't want to do it.
Because it's all they're known for now.
Everyone asked everyone, and end of the day, it was you're a heel, you're leaving, you put people over, this is business, do business, the end. And has there ever been a moment where this woman who fucking broke her neck and endured all sorts of personal strife, mental and physical, you know, tore her body apart? I think, you know, it's just a bit sad that it was kind of
sad. Yeah.
Of course she's going to go ahead and do that. She's a team player, you know, because otherwise you'd have an ego. And like, I would think the worry with someone like her is if you leave and you leave on bad terms as a woman in WWE, like, I don't say they can fucking erase you from history or whatever it was, but like,
kind of could.
You could, like, you know, there's been plenty of women who have huge contributions to WWE over the years where it's kind of like, we don't talk about them. Not because even sometimes where like, oh, like Sunny, they've like got a fucking felony against them. It'd be some cases where it's like, not politically or like,
if they can do it to Chyna and Sable, then of course they can do it to Lita.
Yeah. So I think that her moving off into Plains and You was the best for all involved, because I think even if this hadn't happened with Edge and Matt and all that, it was very obvious that she was burnt out. Like, the way she describes her book, it's like literally like her career, other than the neck break, it was just like non-stop, because you had to do all the Diva shoots and stuff like that. I didn't realize when they did those Diva fucking calendars and stuff that they would be wrestling on pay-per-view the next day.
What?
Like, the amount of random times where like, oh yeah, that was a random Lita match that wasn't particularly good. She's like, yeah, because I came in at 4:30 in the morning from the Bahamas shooting Divas in wherever it was. So like, she worked hard as hell, and I think, all things being said, she would have been given a break at this point, but we can't miss if you don't go away. So she left on their terms, I guess. The one bright spot about this, something Adam that revealed, he found out from the Attitude Era podcast, which was after this, Edge had surprised her. He had rented a bowling alley and invited everyone to have like a retirement celebration for her, and invited all of her friends. So
Stone Cold?
So Stone Cold wasn't there, unfortunately.
Daddy.
He's too busy doing a bit of business called The Condemned.
Too busy saving other people's broken necks. He's
hang on, they're putting the C6 vertebrae sound in the sky. I gotta run.
I gotta go somewhere.
To the neck mobile. But yeah, like, all of her friends were there, like all the, you know, the people who were close to her. Sad to see her go. She got a nice big send off, even though WWE didn't do that. Edge did that out of his own pocket, which I was like, you know what, man, that's a nice thing to do. Not many wrestlers do that because once you leave in wrestling, it's like, bye, I don't know you anymore. That's it.
Yeah.
So this match obviously includes a retirement, a wholesale, and there's a great women's match snuck in there as well somewhere, if you can see it through all the other shite. But rating for this one, Joe?
Oh, this is hard.
I'm allowing you, if you want to just give it a strict bell-to-bell match rating.
Okay, I'll do two. So I'll do whole segment, including the wholesale. I would give 3 out of 5. That's me being generous.
Very nice.
It was tasteless. It was cruel. But there were a couple of funny moments, even in the really tasteless stuff.
There were a few pops from us,
like,
yes.
Well done to Crime Time for, you know, despite not wanting to do it, putting on a good performance. Kudos to Lita for, again, you know, this sucks. It's not fun for her to do, but she gives it everything.
Yes, she didn't half-ass anything, including her own undignified end.
Which is more than the fans ever deserved, but that's what makes her such a cool person and such a great wrestler, I think. Purely in-ring, I fucking loved this match. It was sick as hell. I'd give it 4.5 stars.
Fuck yeah.
It was near perfect. Just...
You not seen much of old Mickie James, I guess, have you?
Tiny bit in the Trish episode, and I loved her in that.
Yeah, she's fucking fantastic.
Yeah, she'll get her an episode soon.
Well, apropos of nothing, at the Elite episode where we're like inspired to do a whole bunch of other women episodes afterwards, it's like, she can't help but inspire, can she? So yeah, she was gone for a good long while after that. You know, it was the Luchagors, her band that she was involved in.
Which, fun fact, she formed that with Shane Morton. This is a fact for Billy, basically.
Was he a fucking serial killer or something? Is that?
No, he's a very famous makeup artist. He actually did the makeup for Halloween 2.
I see.
Mandy as well. So he's like a cool guy. It's Lita. These are cool people that she hangs out with. And
we reviewed some of the Luchagors on the Corporate Ministry of Sound
it's
a while
good.
back. It's perfectly serviceable pop punk,
as
they say. And I'm just happy she got to do it, because it felt like it meant a lot to her. It was the kind of what if road that she didn't travel, and she got to travel it afterwards. And like, she made a fucking stack of money in WWF. I think people maybe don't realize like how well she did.
That's it. And she did really well, and she was smart with the money.
Yeah, she lived her best life. She like moved to Nicaragua.
That's where she's like is now, right? She's like,
I know she lives there now. She still has the house there, but she
Right.
lived there for like 5 years after she
was
retired because she wanted to just kind of cut off from
Yeah.
society.
she was a property manager or something. She owned lots of properties. All I know is that her time in Nicaragua was her favorite thing about it was that she could walk around open carrying a machete, so she'd keep a machete on her hip all the time. Which, sorry, mental image there. Lita with a machete.
How about
is
this?
the coolest thing ever?
Lita learning to weld. That's the other thing
That's
she's
so
into.
cool.
Lita, who also loves aliens. Lita, who also loves sharks. Lita, who
Yes.
loves kitsch. Lita, who is so fucking happy to see that, because she did come back and all that, yes, but she found a life outside of wrestling, and she found like it feels like she connected with her fans on a whole new level. All those fans you thought might have been turned off forever because of how they had her exit, they're all just sitting there lapsed and waiting. She's like done stuff on Twitch and all that. She has a fantastic community around her. For someone who isn't like quote unquote online very much, the fact that she has built that connection with her fans and it's endured is fantastic.
Also, loads of friends in the business.
Yes.
Like, I mean, we were talking
Adored.
about the start of the episode, her being a girl's girl and a boy's boy. Like, she's just friends with everyone.
Yeah, and I think like one of the most heartwarming things is when you see how much wrestling can chew people up and spit them out. When it can take people who are like bright-eyed and full of ideas and where's my life going to go? What am I going to be? I have all this stuff in me. And then they, extract it out of you and then throw the husk away and, you're resigned to indies and obscurity forever. And like to see her have crises of confidence and crises of like, who even am I anymore? Because, being Amy and then being Lita and like kind of you can lose yourself when you play a version of yourself like that. Seeing the fact that she was able to just pick right up where she left off. Oh, she's just wanderlust Amy again, traveling the world, going on adventures, doing cool shit.
Yeah, she has a TV show kind of about aliens, but mainly about kind of kitsch culture, which I think sounds so much fun. I love that she's into aliens as a subculture rather than she's not into the conspiracy. She just really loves side road attractions, which is like, that's so wrestling as well.
But I just think it's amazing that after all she had been through, if anyone had a right to be like, I'm bitter, I hate wrestling, it did nothing for me, fuck it. And it's not as if she's like one of these people as well where it's like, whoa, wrestling is the be all and end all. She like feels like a complete human, unlike a lot of other wrestlers sometimes, who are so like, for it's positive for them, I'm sure, but if you're so focused and in the world of wrestling that you can't see any other outside interest.
It means when you're taken out of it, you're fucked.
She's a shining example for folks about, like, if you leave, what you should do. It's like, well, I don't know, maybe you take all the fucking money that you made
and enjoy it.
And enjoy it. Like, go explore, find out who you are. I think it's fucking really, really encouraging. So when she did come back and, like, she did a few, like, Royal Rumble appearances. She did the Hall of Fame in 2014, I think it was.
And by the time she'd come back, we'd had the women's revolution.
Well, that was it. If you remember, that WrestleMania 31, I believe it was, it began with the big announcement, and it was Lita who they had, because who is the face of let's retcon all the horrible shit we've done with women's wrestling? Yeah, retcon Lita at the same time. And I am very happy for WWE to use its bullshit make-believe retconning to
protect her, I
protect
think.
her
image.
to embellish her to be greater than she was, maybe necessarily in the ring, because you might watch the match and see a few slip spots and all that, but she's been very upfront and said that she wanted to be a character in wrestling who was like in the moment and felt real and authentic. And you wouldn't be real and authentic if you were thinking about all the moves you're going to do and everything being perfectly in all the sequences. So the same way that Sabu is a genuine, one-of-a-kind original article, I think Lita is as well, except she could probably explain it a little bit better. I think her coming back and getting a big Saudi Arabia payday is one of those things where I'm like, oh, talk about the modern trolley problem for the quote-unquote moral wrestling fan.
Oh, God.
It's like, okay, should she take the blood money? Does anyone deserve a big, ridiculous payday for all the fucking shit she's went through more than her? Well, I feel like she means very, very well. For everything she's ever been interviewed and spoken and talked, like, I think she believes in kind of the greater good and trying to do things that are help people out and to be charitable and kind and all that.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people who get very big paydays from Saudi Arabia who'll be like, hey, I think I'm helping because, women need help in Saudi Arabia and I can be on a big feature billboard and be inspirational, all that. Like, no doubt she's inspired many women across the world, including Saudi Arabia. It's like, I'm still though, it's the trolley problem for me.
Yeah.
I don't want to be like, Lita, no. I'm like, go get paid, but can you like not go at the same time. Like, yeah, I don't know. I felt a bit weird about that one. Like,
Well, that's just the WWE trolley
It
problem,
is.
I think.
and I think, you know what? If they did just that, I would be like, I don't know. But that fucking comeback they did like year before last, where it was
Yeah.
her and Trish and Becky and the tag titles and all that. It was just, thank you for taking the time to like show another generation that she's this cool, because she's cool and people should know about that.
Yeah, definitely. And for me, I think my favourite part of the retcon is that once they bring back women like that, and they kind of like, you know, we all know that they've retconned certain parts, that means they're allowed back in the compilation videos.
Ooh, yeah.
And my God, we need Lita in those compilation videos, because she's such a perfect fit. Her moves are so cool. She is so iconic. And when there was still that awkward period, I feel, of like, we don't really like how we treated that woman for a long time, and now we're supposed to be a feminist company, and it doesn't really look good if we talk
No.
about her in that context. So I'm really glad she's back in those video packages.
Yeah, and I think a cool thing about her this time around getting to come back and do stuff was like so much of what we were saying, like it was a constant non-stop grind. Like she said she never was able to take a moment during her original run and go, wow, look where I am, look what I'm doing. Like I'm at WrestleMania, or I'm, you know, performing in this big audience, or doing these cool things with these cool guys. She said she never was able to stop and smell the roses, partly because they were moving so fast all the time. But that whole thing of like, if you get a big head,
Yeah.
if you become a mark for this, or if you become too much of a diva, quote unquote, you're out of here. And she said the first time she ever actually felt truly relaxed and able to appreciate, you know, being in the ring and have fun with it and not be like overthinking things and, you know, on the work mindset, was like when she did all that stuff with Becky and whatnot. It was that, you know, finally after all these years, it's like, hey, you know, this thing you're amazing at, like go and enjoy it.
Yeah.
Like, you know. It's like, I think like times where like people like cook constantly non-stop, like it's their full-time job. It's like, hey, when you get to go make a dish for yourself that you actually get to enjoy this time. Didn't think it would take fucking 22 years for it to get to that point. But good for her, eh?
Yeah.
She earns every payday that she's going to get coming her way from them. Truly an icon in the world of wrestling.
Yeah, truly an icon.
Well, we've learned an awful lot about a very interesting career. A very fucking cool lady indeed. But now it's time to find out what you think. It's time for some of your tweets, your posts, and your messages about How to Lita. Well, here we are now with some posts, some tweets, some skeets, and some Patreon posts as well about Lita. You can, of course, now, if you're a member on our Patreon page, we're going to be putting posts up there for all of our upcoming episodes, so you can add in your 2 cents while listening to all of that fabulous content. Pay-per-view reviews going back to 2016, our big WrestleMania episode, Double Bill just dropped, Pay-per-view Classic, Total Divas, so much more. But Joe, what have the folks got to say about lovely Lita?
First of all, from Museum Walker Ian, the catalyst of the WWF's women's wrestling revival. She needed to break away from S.A. Rios to do it, but by siding with the Hardys, she became a star in the wake of a division synonymous with Sable and the Cat, and had Trish as her perfect foil. Not technically great, but had the aura.
Yes, aura. Aura gets you far in wrestling. It's important to be liked in wrestling, but more important to be well liked. And you get that by having an aura.
Next, from Blue Thunderbomb, she was absolutely the first woman that I saw on WWE TV that I thought was cool. She set the bar for the alt skater genre of woman that would come in the future, and someone I feel absolutely terrible for, as WWE basically ruined her life with the cheating storyline.
So if you're to do the word cloud for Lita, I do believe the law of averages now that the word cool will probably dominate that, particularly at least from what we've received. But I am beginning to think and see, like, just from the amount that she has spoken about it and her kind of matter-of-factness about it, I feel the fans are more sore on that than she ever will be at this point. And I think that is kind of part of our process with dealing with it and part of her securing her legacy, I guess.
Next, from Lil Dilly Willy.
Fantastic.
The first ever women's wrestler I saw girls at school be into. Yes, boys liked Lita, obviously, but don't underestimate how many girls did too. Her being more rough and unrehearsed made me like her more. Really didn't like the direction her character took post-scandal.
Interesting that despite we all having seemingly experience of like girls in the playground were mad into Lita, I didn't see many girls attempting the old moonsault or the Lita Kanrana, unlike some of the boys who are much quicker to emulate the stupid shit they saw on TV.
And related to that, next from Velvet Android, it's telling how brainwashed we were by the WWF's moolah-led enforced mediocrity of women's wrestling for years, all snapmares and hair-pulling, that when I first saw Lita on Sunday Night Heat with S.A. Rios, hissing Hurricane Ranas and doing moonsaults, I genuinely went, I didn't know women could do that. The sad thing is that she still had to spend most of her career either in the shadow of the men she was alongside and or competing with women who were really only there for their looks, not their in-ring ability. And it's a mercy that she did find eventually in Trish one person to have a genuine rivalry with.
Yeah, and I think those two will always be like forever linked together. I do think like their careers stand on their own right without the other, but like I think when you think of one, you think of the other, and I think that's good to see because they did have the chemistry in the ring, and it also seems like from business ventures and appearances and all that, they are genuinely friends, and they seem to have carried that bond long past the point of being active members of the roster. It's nice to see that, I guess, in wrestling, because, like, boy oh boy, friendships seem to be, like, they end very quickly and easily in wrestling through no fault of the wrestlers themselves, just how the business is set up. It's not very friendship conducive, and I would say female friendship conducive in the noughties. It was almost designed to ensure that could never happen. So kudos to both for rising above that.
Next from Refs as Wizards, as evidence of her cultural impact, my cousin is named Lita after Lita. She was one of the top 5 most overperformers in the Attitude Era, and WWE never took full advantage of how much she tapped into, if not even influenced, a huge segment of teen girl culture.
Isn't it wild that we often come back to the Attitude Era when they were making so much fucking money, and it felt like they were doing everything that they could, and then you're left at the end of moments like this, like with Lita, kind of going, I think there was money left on the table.
Absolutely there was.
You know, for them and for her.
That's the thing that pisses me off most is, like, I know that there's a subsection of people involved in the WWE at that time who think, fuck. Oh, where's that voice come from? I don't know where that came from. That's so weird. But women don't sell. You know, they don't make money. But the truth is, marketing to women is like, it makes so much money, and that's why it's just really frustrating to see a company that so pretends to be profit-led and stuff like that, just to like piss away these opportunities like that.
I mean, look, the more we looked closely at Lita at the height of her popularity in the Attitude Era, like, I think the word mishandled was used very often, almost as much as the word cool in this episode. And I always think it is a testament, if you believe that there is such a thing as that intangible that people have that makes them a star, like, you can never argue against Lita having it because she managed to keep that and keep the aura and the ethos of what made her character so unique. Even when they were like, why don't you have her out there and do all these things that Lita would never in a million years do? And that's not just like, I think a lot of people think, oh, that's post-cheating. It's like pre-cheating scandal. We found plenty of instances of them being like, Ara, throw Lita on the bonfire there. That'll warm up the Titan headquarters for another hour or two. Like.
Finally now from Dr. Judge Private Eye. Growing up in the 90s, during the time when it was still common knowledge that men and women just couldn't be friends, Lita was puzzling to me because I just wanted to be around her. Sure, she was gorgeous, but more than that, she seemed like she'd introduced me to cool new music and movies and anime because I was a delusional 13-year-old. And that was a vibe that very few women in mainstream pop culture were allowed to cultivate. But now I see little hints of her attitude and presentation in characters like Karlach from Baldur's Gate 3, or Jack from Mass Effect, or Gwen Stacy from Into the Spider-Verse, and so many more. She's a hero, she's a trailblazer, perhaps a bit overrated in-ring, but underrated by management for her ability to pop the crowd as big as Steve Austin or The Rock could. So it all balances out in the end, except it doesn't. She deserved better than a Vince-run WWE could ever give her, and it's lovely she's finally getting her dues. And come on, Lucha Gauze is just a great name for a band.
What a fabulous message there from Dr. Judge. I think that really is a nice way to encapsulate it all in the kind of the journey. This is another one of these episodes where I think we knew what we were in for ahead of time in some respects, but I didn't see you, at least of all me, getting as kind of emotionally invested in this story, because it's a story that I think most wrestling fans, if they were familiar with Lita, you know a lot of these beats, but I think they've kind of actually taken a pause and be like, let's go through it and have a real think about it. She's had a fucking incredible career, and like, I can see how she can stir that up in people. Yeah. Nothing to do with her abilities as a wrestler. You know, I think that's one thing I wanted you to know, and I wanted people to know from this, is that kind of, hey, like, you know, the people who rushed to tell us that she was a crap wrestler when we put up the post about this, sure, absolutely, but like, that's not really what wrestling is mostly about, and I think we've learned that over the years now. Being great at wrestling is often surplus to requirements.
Yeah, I mean, I still love her as a wrestler. I do think it's fascinating to see an example of someone, because in wrestling, so often the great wrestlers that we love wrestling is all they've ever done and it's all they've ever known. It's all they care about. Whereas Lita, part of the reason she is so cool, as we all keep saying, is that wrestling was never everything for her. She's just like, she brought so many other interests into her character as a wrestler.
I think people do kind of like have a sixth sense for that, where it's like, I don't think wrestling is the absolute be all and end all of every waking moment of your existence. And it's like, yo, having that can make some of the greatest wrestlers in the world.
Yeah.
But goddamn, having a polymath of cool things makes you a very, very, very interesting wrestler as well.
Yeah.
More power to Lita. A firm fave, it feels, in the household, Joe.
Absolutely. And I love that we've all collectively, as fans of Lita, decided to kind of pretend that the era of her character that we don't like didn't happen.
Yeah. I mean, look, if she's managed to move on, I think us as fans can do her a solid and maybe try and process that a little bit ourselves.
Yeah.
Next episode's going to be a change of pace, Joe.
Yeah.
One that I'm extremely excited about, because this man has dominated a lot of our favourite media over the years and has lived as kind of a legend figure in the cloud, like the fucking sun from Teletubbies, looking down on us with a knowing smile. But honestly, I know very little about what they're about in the ring, and I'm dying to find out more, and I'm sure you are as well. The next episode is about the legend from Japan, the one and only, the influential, and the often imitated Tenryu. I can't wait, first of all, for you guys to see the artwork for this one, which I think might be one of Dan's all-time greats.
It's fantastic.
Yes,
I love it.
Fabulous stuff. Bringing him to life. We saw a little bit of Tenryu when we went back and did the AWA World Class Super Show from the early 80s for Pay-Per-View Classique. We have seen a bit of him here and there when we've dipped our toes into Japan. But the main place where you and I know him from, Joe, isn't even wrestling at all.
No, it's Gaki no Tsukai. It's downtown.
And for me, it's Yakuza, the series as well, where he appears on a few occasions.
Yeah, he's a comedy talent.
It's an odd situation where we find ourselves very familiar with someone for being an absolute cultural phenomenon and legend in Japan, but the reasons we know him are for not the reasons that got him to that status in the first place.
Yeah.
We've enjoyed the kind of the DLC of Tenryu's career as a cultural icon. Now let's see some of the wrestling. So this is one of these episodes where the hand is firmly out to you, the listening audience, to say, hey, if you know anything about him or there's anything you do want to know, hit us up on our social media. There will be a post up on Blue Sky, on Twitter, on Facebook, and on our Patreon page, patreon.com/howtowrestling. If you're an aficionado of Japanese wrestling or an admirer or lover of the career of Tenryu, we want to hear from you. Iconic matches, moments, legends, stories, whatever it is we need to know to help everyone learn all about this fantastically interesting individual. How to Tenryu, our next episode. And don't forget, you can check out the upcoming episodes and all the match notes and recommended bonus viewing for Lita and all the past episodes on the home of How To Wrestling. That's howtowrestling.com. But thank you everyone for all of your amazing help for the Lita episode, and we look forward to hearing from you for the Tenryu episodes. Until next time, where we're going to learn all about him, it's a goodbye from me, Kevin.
And a goodbye from me, Joe.
And we'll see you next time on How To Wrestling.
See ya.